Monsters invading Earth through portals is normal, but what about your whole city being sent to another world as a piece on a board? Gods are playing games with the world's population to find the strongest groups, making whole regions collide like chess pieces to find the most resistant races. A whole tribe of orcs versus Seoul, South Korea, Chicago versus Tokyo. To make things fair for humans, when the test began, everyone got a chance to awaken a talent by rolling the 100-face dice. But this was a vicious dice with increasingly low chances of hitting the higher numbers. The 100 was supposed to be impossible, but one random guy managed to hit it, and with that, he acquired the strongest but also the most dangerous item in the server, something called the Greed Book. It allowed him to steal the points of everyone in his region. Theoretically, this was good because his region could have one absurdly strong person to carry everyone. But of course, things wouldn't be that smooth, because at the same time, it means his existence was locking everyone into crumbs of points to level up. So not only did he have to save everyone also hated him for his hoarding. So this is a story of how someone uses the greediest skill in the world to outplay even gods at their own game while being hated by the entire planet. Of course, we have this beautiful baby doll, some crazy aura farming moments, and nice fights, so let's go. It began as a normal, quiet day. A few guys were hanging out, and the main character showed up with headphones on. No one saw any of this coming. Then while he's walking, the ground suddenly splits open under him. He's completely confused. That day would never be forgotten. A blinding light flashes, and people panic, thinking it's a terror attack or an earthquake. But that was the end of their normal lives. The whole city is swallowed by a strange blue light. The protagonist shields his face from the glare, then notices something that stops him cold. He's standing at the edge of a cliff. He can only ask what the hell is happening. His head throbs, and behind him a crowd is just as scared and confused. He wonders if this is some kind of dimension jump like in web novels, but he can't tell if it's real until system windows appear in front of everyone. An announcement says the game has started and tells them all to roll their dice. He has no idea what kind of game this is or what the message means. Then a woman screams and points upward, warning everyone to look. He looks up and freezes. A giant die is falling from the sky, with a 3 on top. The system updates. Pawn 8 will move forward 3 spaces. A path opens ahead of them. Then a huge base marked with the number 8 appears and strong magic surges through the area. Someone shouts that the city is moving, while a scared child clings to their mother. That's when the protagonist starts to understand they've been dragged into a game, but they aren't the players, they're the pawns. So the players must be the ones rolling the dice and moving them. The city lurches forward 3 spaces, then stops, and he realizes the city itself is the pawn. But if the player only needed a pawn, why bring everyone living in the city too? Another system message appears. It says they've entered a defense zone, and the difficulty and defense time are being set. Difficulty level 1. The die rolls again and lands on 1. The second die lands on 3. Defense time, 3 days. Then another announcement appears. A dome forms around the city and the land starts rising from nowhere. Everyone is stunned and has no clue what's happening. Then the system says the defense mission will begin soon, and if all 4 bases are destroyed, the game ends. 4 places in the city are marked as bases. If that happens, the pawn dies. The protagonist immediately wonders if that means all of them die too, and the crowd starts panicking. He calmly takes off his headphones. Making a scene won't help, and if anyone meant to explain things, they would have done it already. So he focuses on the announcements. A new one tells every citizen to roll their dice. The result will decide their class. He watches a 100-sided die appear. Then someone suddenly shouts that something is coming, and it sure doesn't look like help. A huge horde of monsters is rushing in, and everyone breaks into a run. The monsters slam into the crowd and catch up fast. Even the protagonist runs, while anyone too slow is torn apart. The creatures show no mercy. Soon the city is covered in blood. Then the protagonist realizes why humans are here to protect the pawn. The monsters are invading the city and attacking its people. They have to defend the city, the pawn, so it can keep moving toward the goal. This is really a dice game run by beings that might as well be gods or demons. Monsters pour into the city. Many are already dead, but more keep coming. Then a woman appears behind one of them. She's carrying a huge axe covered in flames. She swings and the monsters are blasted back, burned, and broken. Everyone just stares. This is a player character. Her name is Goheiju, level 1. Her class is ordinary citizen, and her weapon is a legendary spear that borrows the power of the Imperial Flame Dragon. The white-haired woman yells for the injured to get to Namsan. The police and military are building a defense line, and everyone needs to roll their dice. One man asks if she means that weird 100-sided die. She snaps back that rolling gives them gear based on the number. If it's common grade, fall back. If it's magical or better, fight. So people start rolling. Just like she said, weapons appear in their hands. More monsters rush in. The crowd panics again, and she screams at them to use their weapons. That day, ordinary life was ripped away and replaced by something else entirely. On the first day of the new year, countless people died. Goheiju fought with everything she had, along with a few others. Just like that, heroes were born. The protagonist was one of the people who survived those first days. He was an ordinary citizen. His name was Yul Choi. On Pawn 8's turn, he rolled his 100-sided die. It spun and landed on 100. In that moment, he became someone different. someone the world would soon know as absolute trash. Then the system showed him a magical text. He was chosen to become the Demon King of Sovereignty. The Book of Krasna, a mythical-grade magic text, appeared before him and opened the library of the Demon King Krasna. It lets the user see item locations, secret events, monster data, maps, objectives, almost everything. As soon as the mission starts, the book opens in front of Yule. Then it reveals one more detail. Krasna is an incarnation with a monopolizing desire. That means any reward earned through knowledge from the book goes straight to the book's owner, and that owner is him. 3 hours after the defense mission began, 3,102 people were dead, and 7,023 were critically hurt. One of the 4 bases had already been destroyed. Out of breath, Haiju says it's finally over. People cheer. They survived the wave. Then a military truck arrives. It's the Korean army. Soldiers get out and tell civilians and the wounded to climb in. They're being moved to Namsan Tower. One soldier thanks Haiju for everything she did, but she brushes it off. He says the time she bought let the police and army get organized, and now they're being sent to other zones. This is Kujay Eon, level 1, class ordinary citizen. He's wearing the Helm of Helden, a heroic item that keeps the user from falling into fear, confusion, or disorientation through unshakable faith. Haiju says that means it really is over. But Kuche says the phones and internet are still dead, so they can't be sure. They're using shortwave radios and should get reports from the other areas soon. For now, they need to head to Namsan Tower, and Haiju agrees, until someone behind them suddenly shouts, "No, it's Yule." Holding a book despite his injuries, he warns them a boss monster is about to appear. He says the book contains the mission details, monster info, and current progress, everything. Then he turns it toward them and tells them to look, but Haiju says the page is blank, and Jaeon says he can't see anything either. She asks if it's one of those books only the owner can read. Jaeon thinks that's it, an information artifact. Yules is stunned that he's the only one who can read it. Jaeon realizes that if that's true, the protagonist is holding a ridiculously powerful item. In a world like this, information means everything, so he tells MC to prove it. MC hesitates, but Jaeon says he needs evidence of what's really in the book. He starts reading. He says the Helm of Alden is a heroic item from a 6-piece set, and its current user is Sergeant Jaeon, with 21 days left. Then he turns to Go Haiju. Her weapon is the legendary Fang of the Imperial Flame Dragon, and somehow, the book even knows her favorite karaoke song is Shilgat Mountain. Haiju turns red and tells him to stop. That does it for her. If it even knows private stuff, the book has to be real. Jae Kian agrees. It's a true data book, which means the boss is probably coming. Jae Kian gets serious and says they've confirmed the artifact's ability and are moving with Haiju. Somewhere else, someone says they think about this from time to time. If the world were a game, they'd probably count as a bug in the system, because everything here feels way too easy for them. It's a guy in stripes with a headband. He says that's exactly why they were made this way, to keep them from going out into the world. Toys and games are scattered all around him. The system found a bug and locked it away. And if they ever get released into the real world, back in the city, someone calls for Yule, and he snaps upright. It's Sergeant J. Aeon. HQ approved the plan. It's risky, but they have no better option and no time left. So they choose to trust the protagonist's information. He looks uneasy. J. Aeon gives him a walkie-talkie and asks for every detail and countermeasure he can provide. Yule nods. He tests the radio and asks if they can hear him. Then he begins explaining the defense mission. It's a defense mission, so they have to protect the bases from monster waves that come every 6 hours. At the end of each wave, a boss appears. This one is a 2-headed ogre. It's level 1 and fights with melee attacks and magic at the same time. Yule says they clear the mission by protecting the base 4 times a day, 12 waves over 3 days, and beating each wave's boss. He has full data on the mission, and if they build their plan around it, they can make it through. After that, he says he'll find a way to get them back to their original world. Haiju is speechless. He's not only focused on surviving this mission, he's already thinking about what comes next. Yule's expression hardens and he says it's time to start. But there was one thing he should have checked first, something he missed while he was unconscious. The fine print in the Book of Krasna, Sacrifice of Sovereignty's Defense. It steals every reward from anyone who receives its information. It began with Go Haiju and Kwon Jae-yong, but it doesn't stop with them. Anyone Yule tells is affected. And it's not limited to people who heard it straight from him. It spreads to anyone who heard it secondhand, even through rumors. So any information that starts with him harms the people around him. That means the soldiers fighting the boss and holding back the monsters could be in danger just from knowing. Even so, they keep fighting and winning again and again under Yule's command. But the more battles they win, the greater the danger becomes. Their lives are on the line and more people get tied to Yule's book. The names listed under the Demon King of Sovereignty, Krasna, keep growing. Meanwhile, Pond 8 has a population of 193,256. The number marked as sacrifices has already reached 176,542. In a single day, 91% of the population was registered as a sacrifice, and that was only the start of MC's sins, which would last until the game's very end. A defense mission works like a tower defense game. Enemies come in from several directions, rushing the bases while the players build up forces to stop them. As the first wave closes in on the population, Yule orders the army to attack. First, use wide-range long-distance weapons. While those reload, start the second round with the other ranged weapons. Level 1 monsters aren't smart, so they're bad at defending or working together. The army fires from behind barricades and unloads everything. It's easy to bait the monsters where they want them. The creatures charge straight ahead, and if they're hurt enough they break formation and scatter. Then they run right into elite troops with top-tier gear that can wipe them out fast. Yule keeps directing the fight, which lines to hold and where reinforcements are needed. The Book of Krasna updates in real time, tracking the whole battle. He only has to think of the info he wants, turn the page, and it appears. As long as he has the book, he can access everything. He uses it to guide the army. What gear works for long-range support, when to hold, when to push, and exactly when the monsters will arrive. By following that plan, they survive. Smoke spreads through the city. Monsters are blasted from all sides. The army keeps advancing. Kavan Jaeyong reports the area secure and orders the third squad to start their sweep. The commander thinks back. At first, HQ made the final calls after checking the protagonist and Wu's ideas. Now the protagonist is basically running the whole defense. He says nothing. Then remembers MC's words that the book only gives information. So if he can command an entire city this well, maybe he could do that even before all this. Unless that's another hidden power of the book. Kuo-ri calls for Sergeant Jaeyong, who turns and asks what it is. The boy says they're almost finished. Jaeyong asks if that means the final boss is coming. Kuo-ri smiles and tells him not to worry. Haiju will end this. She's asleep until she suddenly jerks awake. A huge monster is right in front of her, and she freezes. It's one of the bosses, Billy the Giant. He's a level 1 monster. Huge but born weak and lacking real combat power. Haiju is in a military vehicle. Yoel asks if she's awake. Panicked, she demands to know why no one woke her sooner. Signal flares are fired at the monster, and it goes wild, swinging massive punches at them. Haiju is stunned by the force of its attacks. Yoel shouts that this is exactly why they brought her here. If that thing reaches the city, the bases will be gone in seconds. The good part is that the giant is slow and weak against elemental attacks, so if they keep pressure on it, it'll fall. Haiju looks around and says there are only 2 of them here, but he says he doesn't mean both of them. He means only her. She's stunned as the monster charges, and Haiju wonders what she's supposed to do. Then Yule explains that items above heroic class have hidden traits. If the right conditions are met, the item can transform. It also unlocks a hidden ability. He says those traits only activate under specific conditions, and luckily the book lists every one of them, giving them a huge edge. Standing before the monster, Haiju asks, "Are you really sure about this?" From farther back, Yule yells for her to trust him in the book. Uneasy, she says this feels wrong, but she trusts him. Then she drives her own weapon into her stomach. The ogre raises its arms to strike her. As it lands the blow, Sergeant Jaeyong screams her name, but Yule calmly says she's fine. A red aura starts swirling around both the giant and Haiju. Every condition has been fulfilled. Now the hidden power of the Fang of the Imperial Flame activates. Yule and Jaeyong can only stare at what happens next. An Imperial Flame Dragon is summoned. It can be used only once per mission. It slams into the giant and triggers a massive explosion, visible even from outside the city. Jaeyong says that if this had gone off inside the city, it would have been a disaster. But something may be even more dangerous than that attack. Yule's book, that thing holds terrifying information, and in the wrong hands it could destroy the whole city. Even so, Jaeyong thinks it may be a good thing the protagonist is the one carrying it. Then the system announces that the defense mission is complete. Civilians outside the city will now be moved back in. All survivors will receive rewards. 300 points plus individual bonuses based on contribution, monster kills, base defense, and role in the boss fight. Those rewards will be calculated and handed out soon. The people are stunned that it really works like a game. The point shop opens, letting them buy healing gear and more. Everyone is thrilled to be alive. At the healing shop, points can cure injuries, remove status effects, and even regrow lost limbs. At the hospital, the nurse strongly tells everyone to spend on healing first. Yor lets out a relieved breath, glad the injuries can be treated. But then something catches his eye, and everyone else's too. The system suddenly announces that all reward points are now 0. Every reward has been taken by the sacrifice of sovereignty effect. Panic erupts, no one even knows what that means, and people start shouting for their points back. Worried, Hagi turns to Yoel and asks what's happening. He says he doesn't know either. Then the system explains. Sacrifice of sovereignty scales with the number of sacrificed citizens. The more sacrifices, the bigger the total reward. A new notice appears for everyone, showing who got the mission points. To everyone's shock, Yoel received 9 billion points. The crowd goes silent, then explodes in anger. They yell at MC, demanding to know how he got so many points. Hagi and Jae-hyung move to protect him as the mob closes in, convinced he stole everything on purpose. Desperate, he begs them to listen and says he had no idea the book could do this. Jae-hyung tells him to stay calm. The injured need help first. He guesses points might be tradable, so if Yoel gives them away, it'll show he didn't mean to do this. Otherwise, everyone will think it was planned. Panicking, the protagonist agrees. But when he opens the system to transfer points, a passive skill activates. Demon King of Monopolistic Desire, Krasna blocks all sharing or donation of points and items. MC starts to break down, totally lost on what this ability even is. The crowd screams at him to hand over the points. He tries another way, buying healing items to give out himself, but the system blocks that too. In a panic, Yul yells for Heigi to burn it and throws the book to the ground. After tossing it aside, he opens the system again, hoping something changed. Instead, the book starts moving on its own, like it's alive. Yul cries out in frustration while Heigi watches, clearly scared for him. Around them, people are losing it. They beg for points, and some are even dying without them. The hope from before has turned into anger and hate. Now everyone wants to hunt him down and tear him apart. The crowd tells Sergeant Jae-hyung that the death toll is rising and the citizens are furious. The protagonist mutters that there has to be some way out, something he can do. Then he picks the book back up. But before Choi can do anything, a rifle is pressed to his head. It's Sergeant Jae-hyung. He tells Choi to stop. This is for everyone else's sake. Then Jae-hyung declares that Choi is under arrest. That only sets the whole crowd off. They shout that arrest isn't enough, and call for the scammer to die. Heigi tries to settle them down, but no one is listening. As the mob rages, Jae-hyung slips closer to Choi and whispers for him to run. He needs to get out, find an answer, and fix this somehow. For now, that's all they can do. Choi loosens his clenched hands, still furious and shaken. He opens the system window. The crowd yells that he's pulling something again, but Choi moves first and buys agility. In the next instant, he's gone. The crowd erupts, screaming that Choi escaped. Then the system speaks again. Time until next turn. 23 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. Everyone panics. That's nowhere near enough time to recover. Jae-hyung immediately orders everyone to head for the safe zones. The wounded have to be moved by car. Meanwhile, Heigi looks up, thinking hard about what comes next. The survivors quickly split up between those who will fight and those who will evacuate. They're told to keep checking their system windows and stay inside the evacuation areas. Everyone also has to memorize the temporary bases and safe centers. And if anyone sees Choi, they must run right away. Report where he is, then get out fast. No one is to follow anything. Choi says, if someone becomes a sovereignty sacrifice and hides it from everyone else, that will be treated as a serious crime under the law. Jae-hyung and his squad start planning for the next battle. At the same time, Heiju prepares herself too. Most of the people evacuate, trying to get away before the next disaster hits. Still, fights break out and people's trust starts to crack. 24 hours later, the system announces that a new turn is started. All players, roll your dice. Pawn number 8, their city moves forward 4 spaces. They land on the Demon King's seal square. The system says demonic pillar guardians will appear to protect the pillars, and the citizens must destroy every pillar. If they fail to destroy them in time, the Demon King will be summoned. The die sets the mission time limit at 5 days. There will be 3 pillars, each guarded by its own monster. The first pillar has a level 1 guardian, the aimless fallen angel, a lost being wandering without purpose. The second also has a level 1 guardian, the mad brains. It never stops creating, and the longer it survives, the deadlier its inventions become. But the third pillar has a level 3 guardian, and that shocks Heiju and Jae-hyung. It's a goblin swordmaster, someone who reached the top of martial arts and broke past normal limits. Now it wants to break the seal and challenge the Demon King itself. Meanwhile, Choi hides out in an abandoned warehouse, studying scattered papers and strange symbols. He even smiles, like this mess is going exactly the way he wants. Over the walkie-talkie, someone reports to Jae-hyung that the citizens have already started attacking. They've gone after the fallen angel. The squad tried to stop them, but the crowd is completely out of control. Worried, Jae-hyung says they need to move too, and asks if Heiju is ready. One of the men tells him she already left a while ago. Jae-hyung lets out a tired sigh. Everything is falling into chaos. Their teamwork and clean coordination collapsed after just 1 day. Heiju went alone to face the last guardian, that level 3 monster. She wants to bring it down before more people die because of it. The moment she attacks, flames burst out. But when it clears, she sees she didn't leave even a mark. The swordmaster casually turns its blade once and blasts her far away. Then a strange blue light appears. The swordsman pauses, confused. Something catches its attention. Someone is walking closer with calm, steady steps. That person catches Heiju in midair and gently sets her down. Stunned, she asks, "You're back?" Choi nods and asks if she can still contact the others. He has a message for them. From now on, all the rewards will belong to him alone. Heiju freezes, not understanding, so Choi makes it even clearer. Tell everyone not to stand in front of him again unless they want their rewards taken too. He says there's no way to give everyone's rewards back and no way to get rid of that cursed book. So Choi opens his status window and starts leveling up. With a grin, he says he's going to max out every stat. Heiju is shocked by how fast it all happens. Across the city, people get system alerts showing that Choi is maxing his stats and they lose it. Then Choi rolls for the highest grade gear he can get. If he's trapped in this situation, he'll use it. He's decided to fully use the rewards bought with everyone's blood and tears, along with the Demon King's power. Now Choi stands before the Pillar Guardian, wrapped in a red aura. He's made his choice, protect this city from the game and somehow return to his old life. To him, that's the only way to pay for what he's done, so he doesn't care how much people hate him. The Goblin Swordmaster smiles, thrilled to face someone worthy. Choi shuts that down. He says he doesn't have time to play. Then he activates Airborne Magic Sneakers, a heroic class item that lets him leap and float almost like flying. He tells the Guardian to wait. He'll be back soon. Hiju can only stare. He really just left. The Swordmaster calmly sits and waits. Hiju can't believe it. It actually agreed. That Guardian isn't rushing anything. Choi moves across the rooftops. Since the Goblin won't attack first, it only fights back if Choi returns and starts the battle himself. Instead, Choi slams into the fallen angel's head. His plan is to deal with the other Guardians first. When people spot him, they scream that he's burning through all their points, but they go quiet once they see the battle in the sky. It's Choi against the Pillar Guardian. Each Guardian has a special trait that appears only under certain conditions. Some of those traits expose a weakness, but trigger the wrong one, and the monster can get even stronger, or gain a really nasty ability. The fallen angel throws everything it has at Choi. If this Guardian kills 100 humans, it evolves into something powerful enough to wipe out humanity. At that point, it leaves the pillar behind and starts hunting people instead. Choi picked this Guardian on purpose because its trait is the most troublesome, and he plans to unlock it the right way. He succeeds in tearing off its wings. As the angel drops, Choi reminds himself that the important part isn't just clearing the mission, it's how you clear it. Over the walkie-talkie, Jae-yuan orders everyone to stay at least 500 meters from the pillars until they understand what Choi is trying to do. He can't tell if Choi truly had no way to return the rewards or simply chose not to. Choi never seemed evil, but someone with that much power can't be guessing. A person that smart and strong could probably take over the whole city if he wanted. Even Haeju, who Jaenom thought might help hold Choi back, is slipping too. He starts wondering if this mission can even be cleared. Choi keeps cutting through the sky, fighting as he moves across the city. Jaenom watches from a distance. Then a red flash appears beside his vehicle, and the whole car flips. A soldier rushes over, asking if Jaenom is okay. Still dazed, he looks around and sees the fallen angel on the ground, defeated. Choi is standing on top of it, holding its wings. In his hand is Divine Divider, a legendary sword said to be a fragment of the blade that split heaven and earth. It can turn severed monster parts into items. Jae-yuan mutters that Choi really did take down the Pillar Guardian. Choi just smiles and disappears without saying a word. Jae-yuan notes that Choi didn't explain anything. Maybe it's because of the sovereignty sacrifice, but he still doesn't seem openly malicious. A soldier confirms the Guardian is down, and Jae-on tells them to report it to HQ. Then the angel moves again. It isn't dead. The condition for its special trait had been met. The wings and halo of the aimless fallen angel were removed. That unlocks its trait, corruption, and the angel starts to change. It mutates into a new monster, the Beast of Corruption, a level 2 enemy that lost its faith and fell into sin. Jae-yuan's eyes widen, and he mutters that military life is hell. The soldiers rush in. Jae-yuan thinks about how there are only 3 monsters in this mission, which means each one is basically a disaster-level threat. He wonders if Choi is really going to leave the rest for everyone else to handle alone. The beast swats aside the soldiers trying to stop it. People start running and screaming for help. Their status turns unstable. In simple terms, they've lost the will to fight and are fleeing the enemy. Seeing everyone sink into despair, Jae-yuan starts to worry, so he turns to the monster and opens fire. He has to draw it away from the soldiers until backup arrives. But the beast locks onto him alone. Jae-yuan wonders if he can survive long enough. Then the beast slams down on him. From far away, Choi cheers. He says he finally got control of one. A green light appears under the beast's foot, and it hesitates. Then it explodes. The Helm of Helden has a hidden ability, and its conditions were just met. It activates when the wearer is nearly killed by a darkness or corruption-type attack, while leading a group of 5 or more. At that moment, the Ghost of Helden effect kicks in for 10 minutes. Now all of Jae-yuan's gear and abilities are filled with divinity. His corruption resistance shoots up, and so does his power. The beast stares in confusion, not understanding what changed. Then another effect, Fanatic, activates. The nearby soldiers stop losing their nerve. Their fear disappears, and they fight with everything they have. Watching from afar, Choi mutters that this turned out way darker than he expected. Earlier, someone told Jae-yuan they'd give him a vertical, but after that, he'd be on his own. He joked that it was a lot of trust for just a surgeon. Kim Song answered that he liked his guts. At first, Jae-yuan didn't know what to say. Then Kim Song explained they barely understood the situation. In a moment like this, what they needed was someone calm to watch and judge it clearly. Someone rational. Someone who stays calm. Someone who can think clearly under pressure. A cool, steady sentinel. And now Helden's spirit has taken over. Jae-yuan yells, "Everyone, hit the enemy!" Kim Song was right. Jae-yuan was the perfect choice. With his lead, the squad joins forces and wipes out the corrupted beast. The system announces that the Beast of Corruption, guardian of the first pillar, has been defeated. Top contribution goes to the independent escort squad, led by Sergeant Jae Ellen. Kim Song reads it quietly while Choi grins in triumph. He boasts that he called it. The Guardian's HP had dropped just enough for JL and squad to land the final blow. Even after the corruption change, its lowered health stayed the same, and since the monster evolved into a new form, Choi's damage on the fallen angel no longer counted. That made JL the top contributor, so he gets all the rewards. Fired up, Choi turns to the person beside him and asks what he thinks. It's the Swordmaster, and he looks completely lost, listening to Choi. Choi thanks him for hearing him out. He says he's wanted to say all this for a while, but had no one else to tell. Then he looks the Swordmaster in the eye and asks, "Want to make a bet? If I win and you lose, you break the Demon King's seal." The Swordmaster is stunned. Meanwhile, Haiju is having a rough time against the anti-human machines. They're only level 1, but they just keep coming. She destroys them one after another. After the rescue call, she headed to the second pillar, but the fight feels endless. Even worse, the machines keep evolving. She realizes she has to finish this now before they get any stronger, so she shouts for everyone to fall back. The civilians don't understand. They yell that they need points to save their families, so they can't quit this fight. Meanwhile, the Pillar Guardian keeps making more machines. 2 people hide nearby, waiting to jump the Guardian. They decide to take it down themselves, but before they can move, the creature spots them and fires a laser. At the last second, Haiju jumps in front of them and the impact explodes in a shockwave. She yells for them to run, but they're already gone before she finishes speaking. Haiju gives a faint smile, but the Pillar Guardian still isn't finished. It scans her and starts judging the threat. After a full check, it creates a special anti-Haiju machine. She freezes in shock. Now she knows this has to end. But then the other machines all rush straight at her. She's surprised they're all locked onto her, but that's actually better. She sets off explosions and destroys as many as she can right in front of the Guardian. Then she screams for everyone to get as far away as possible, and fires a laser. Haiju is shocked, but she keeps going and launches a long-range attack straight at the giant brain. The blast is enormous, strong enough to hit nearby civilians too. Even so, Haiju is thrilled because she pulled it off. Letting out a breath, she thinks this world is definitely not easy. Then an anti-Haiju machine appears. It's fire-resistant, carries a Dragon Slayer, and deals extra damage only to Haiju. She's stunned. A machine built just to kill her. It appears behind her in a flash and swings hard. She barely blocks it, but her vision starts to fade. As she slips toward unconsciousness, she sees Choi coming in. He flies at the Pillar Guardian and rips off its head. Right before blacking out, she sees him holding the huge brain and wonders what he's doing. Then she passes out. A huge explosion shakes the battlefield. The anti-Haijuma walks toward where she fell, but only blood is left there. The target is gone, so the machine switches to tracking mode. Even without its head, the Pillar Guardian is still alive. The condition for its special trait was met, destroying the collective brain of the insane brain's host. The new trait is Insane Order. Now it keeps mass-producing the last thing it made with double speed and output. It won't stop unless the main body is destroyed. Waves of enemies pour out and charge at the people. The pillar took too long to bring down, and now many civilians are hiding in fear. People realize the first pillar is much tougher than expected, and they don't have enough firepower. At the same time, the second pillar is swarmed with monsters, and panic spreads. People shout for the wounded to be moved out at once. Then military reinforcements finally arrive. Choi watches and thinks it over. He could wipe them out himself, but that would solve nothing. If he wants to win the whole game, not just this mission in front of him, the whole city has to grow stronger. And for that, he first needs a good commander. That's Jay. He also needs someone the people can rally behind. A champion unit. That's Haijushu. She suddenly wakes up and blinks. "I'm alive?" she asks. She turns and asks if the person there saved her, then realizes it's the Swordmaster beside her. She gasps and screams, but he tells her to keep it down. Haiju quickly apologizes, saying he scared her. Then she gets even more shocked when the Guardian starts talking. He says he treated her wounds, but there's no time to waste. They need to begin. He tells her, "You said something once. After a huge loss, it's always the same. Find a great teacher, train hard, and come back stronger." Haiju just stares, totally confused. Meanwhile, the anti-Haiju machine finds her again and rockets toward her position. The moment it locks on, it starts its kill sequence. It fires a deadly blast at Haiju. But then Choi cuts in. Laughing, he reveals he tricked the machine with the insane brain's head, which is now a heroic class artifact. Since the machine's targeting is locked, Choi redirects its attack onto a different path. A huge explosion follows. A glowing blue blast tears through a building and smashes into the first pillar. The citizens couldn't destroy. Everyone goes still as the pillar collapses. Choi watches and calmly says that much damage should be enough. Then he smirks and thanks the machine for the help. It really saved them there. Meanwhile, Haiju trains with the Swordmaster. He tells her to try using that power. She nods, ready. The swordsman lowers his hat and quietly says not to forget what matters most. That power isn't really hers, so pushing too hard will hurt her. Instead of borrowing too much, she should only use what she can control. As she attacks without draining herself, the Swordmaster reminds her that power shouldn't control you. You should control it. With new resolve, Haiju lunges at the Guardian. But after striking again and again, she drops to the ground, exhausted. Panting, she asks if Choi really bet on her beating that machine. The man says yes. Haiju stares at him. Is that even possible? The swordmaster says nothing. She sighs, saying his silence is not helping. Then he asks why she let him train her, why she trusts Choi, and why she wants to get stronger at all. Haiju slowly gets up. Honestly, she doesn't know. There are too many things she doesn't understand this game, these missions. She's not smart enough to figure it all out just by thinking, so she has to make her body stronger first. Maybe if she keeps going, things will start to make sense. She stretches and says that's just how she lives. The swordmaster smiles. He had thought Choi was using her, but he was wrong. She's different. A martial artist walking her own path. He grins, showing his teeth. Then he says it's time to get serious about her training. 3 days later, the people are still hiding together, tired, hurt, and worn out. Those who got out wonder if they should help the ones still outside. One person says they might lose points if they do. Another argues that if they don't help, they might fail the mission anyway. Then a loud crash. Something breaks into the shelter. It's the anti-Haiju machine, still chasing her. It scans the room and finds its target. Then it starts attacking everyone nearby. Panic explodes. People fall to the floor, trying to avoid the machine. Suddenly, everyone looks up. Someone is dropping in through the entrance. A woman squints and asks, "Is that an angel?" "No, it's Haiju, and she's much stronger now." The system announces that special event conditions were met. Haiju became the Goblin Swordmaster's apprentice and inherited his martial arts. Her reward is heroic class gear or better, and now she's wearing heroic armor. Choi looks over and asks the Swordmaster about her gear. The man says it used to be his. Choi nods and asks her chances. The Swordmaster says it's 50-50. That machine was built to counter her, but Haiju has new martial arts now. The machine charges at full speed, trying to finish it in one hit. The Swordmaster says if the seed he planted blooms at the right time, that thing won't be her enemy anymore. Haiju has gained a new skill, Apprentice of the Swordmaster, and her close-range weapon skill is rising fast. Day 3, 15 hours and 34 minutes into the mission. Only the first pillar has fallen. The soldiers in the van are furious. Day 3, 17 hours and 21 minutes in, the second pillar's guardian is finally defeated. Day 3, 21 hours and 1 minute in, the anti-Haiju machine goes down, everyone is stunned. Day 4, 0 hours and 3 minutes in, Haiju returns, leading a group of citizens behind her. Most of the people have come back to the fight. Day 4, 3 hours and 44 minutes in, the second pillar is finally destroyed. Seeing this, people start to hope again. They begin to think maybe they really can clear this first mission without Choi's help. But that was only what they thought. The Swordmaster tells Choi it's time for his apprentice to keep her promise. The people, together with the military, begin organizing. They gather weapons and supplies. Kim Song radios Jaezong, joking that he sent that guy out to scout and now he's come back acting like a general. Then he sighs and tells him to leave the wounded to them and handle what he needs to do. He's ready to take full responsibility. He even radios again and says if Jaezong pulls this off, he'll promote him himself. But Jaezong doesn't care about that. He just wants to go home. Then Haiju walks over and says they need to move. He asks if she'll really be okay. She nods and says she promised her master that next time they meet they'll be enemies. Jaeta blinks confused and mutters that this feels like a totally different genre now. Jaeta wonders if he can really win this. This is a level 3 monster, even Haiju couldn't beat one. People are going to die. No matter what happens, a lot of them won't make it. Jaeta can only wonder what Troy really is. Then both Jaeta and Haiju suddenly look up. A huge rift is opening in the sky. They don't know what it is, but Troy is flying straight at it. With one powerful move, Troy slams a kick into the giant circle above. A deafening boom shakes the air. Then the system announces that the Demon King's seal is broken, and the mission objective changes. The seal splits apart, and endless creatures start pouring out. A warning follows. New mission, kill the Demon King. Fail, and the game ends. The whole city erupts in panic. People scream at Troy, calling him insane. Jae-on is frozen in shock. What the hell is Troy doing? Even the Swordmaster didn't think he'd really go through with it. Still, these humans are turning out to be pretty interesting. He rushes toward the Demon King's seal, ready to fight. The second he gets there, he attacks. Every fallen angel that comes out gets cut down. He drops them one after another. Jae-on and Haiju can only stare. The Swordmaster calls it both a gift and a task for his apprentice, then warns Haiju to take it seriously. Then he parts with a final promise. They'll meet again when fate brings them together. After that, he disappears into the fight. At the same time, Troy gets a new item. The Angel's Halo, a legendary accessory that protects its wearer in demonic realms. Standing before the Demon King, Troy mutters, "Getting here was easier than I expected." Then he asks, "Hey, are you the Demon King of Sovereignty, Krasna?" The creature stands up and growls that it's never heard that name. Then it asks how a human got here. This is Kidambaba, the Demon King of Authority, a difficulty 6 boss who loves crushing things with his bare hands. Troy is thrown off. He thought the Demon Kings knew each other. Turning his back for a second, he mutters this may take a while. Then adds, "Sorry about this, your real opponent is coming, so just wait." The Demon King scoffs, humiliated, and swings at Troy. Koi gets back just in time to see it and goes wide-eyed. Right then, the Swordmaster arrives and finds something he didn't expect. The Demon King is already bleeding, and Troy is slipping past every attack with ease. The king's hands are ripped up and mangled. Koi just smiles and shrugs. Sorry about that. The Demon King can't believe it. How is a human doing this? Troy gives a small bow. My bad. That was an accident. The Demon King snaps, furious that Troy is mocking him. Nervous now, Troy looks to the Swordmaster and asks if he's going to switch in. But the Swordmaster calmly answers, he's not after me anymore. He's locked onto you. That's when Troy realizes everything has changed. The plan had been simple. The Goblin Swordmaster would face the Demon King alone. That was the only way to clear the hidden event, Martial Artist Fate. In it, the Swordmaster was meant to die taking the Demon King with him. If that happened, the reward pool would explode and every citizen would get huge point bonuses. But now that plan is gone. Coyote crashes hard into the ground. He gets new gear, the Heir's battle jacket, a legendary armor. He lets out a sigh. What am I supposed to do with this? In the end, he decides to wait. Let everyone earn points by hunting monsters and finish the mission before more people die. Meanwhile, the Swordmaster watches quietly as the Demon King keeps trying to crush Troy. All around them, piles of winged monster corpses keep growing. Military squads yell for civilians to fall back. They'll hold off the monsters. Jae-on is exhausted. The monsters aren't that strong, but there are way too many of them. People are getting hurt fast, and Jae-on bitterly realizes that Troy became the whole city's enemy the moment he broke the seal. If anyone dies here, everything could fall apart. Haijo heads for a shelter that called for backup. Halfway there, she takes to the air and burns every winged monster in her way. She shouts to the people, telling them to evacuate, but the citizens are furious. If that maniac Troy hadn't broken the seal, this mission would already be over. Haiju says nothing. Then someone walks up beside her and says, "So you're just letting that go?" He figured she'd blow up after hearing people trash her boyfriend, but maybe she's colder than he thought. The speaker is Kanju Wu, level 1 ordinary citizen. Annoyed, Haiju asks who said Troy was her boyfriend. Kanju only shrugs. Then he tosses her his cookie bag as thanks for saving him and helping escort them. She checks inside and there's only half a cookie left. Suddenly the Swordmaster steps in front of Troy and tells him to get back. Smirking, he asks if Troy's getting attached to him now. Flustered, Troy says that in another world they might have shared a drink. Then the Swordmaster goes straight back into battle. Kaiju feels a little bad. It's already too late to trigger martial artist destiny, and even if it wasn't, he'd still feel guilty. Then the system suddenly announces that his friendship with the Goblin Swordmaster has reached max level, unlocking a hidden ability from Krasen. Troy's confused. He didn't even know that could happen. Looking down at his book, he smiles in shock at what it can do. The Goblin, worn out now, says the Demon King is stronger than he expected. But it's time to use his final move, a technique that could cost his life, all for his friend and his student. But Troy moves first. He charges the Demon King, and defeats him before the Swordmaster can act. The Swordmaster is stunned. Even the Demon King can't believe it. Then the enemy explodes, and the system declares Demon King defeated. Top contributor Troy. The Swordmaster has no words. He can't even process what happened. Then another alert says every summoned monster has been wiped out. The goblin starts fading away, but Troy rushes over, grinning and holding his book. He just unlocked a new ability. Now he can recruit 4 sovereign masters and form a spirit contract with a creature. The system asks, do you want to form a spirit contract with Goblin Swordmaster? After all that, Troy falls from the sky, thinking that humans hate him now, and he's even allied with monsters. Now he's tied to the Swordmaster by contract. Troy realizes he's drifting farther away from being human. A new notice appears. Surviving citizens will receive rewards. The base reward is 800 points, and the top reward goes to Troy, 200,000 points. That only makes everyone angrier. Yul takes a deep breath. Kang watches from afar. Looking at Troy falling from the sky, he wonders if that guy is a golden hero or a ticking bomb waiting to go off. Jang thinks to himself that he doesn't know much about games, but this one feels like a base defense game with huge troop deployment. So he starts to wonder if a maxed out unit was ever supposed to exist here. Can someone really be strong enough to beat a Demon King, or is Troy just a glitch? Then the system suddenly reports, an abnormal unit has been detected. It has max level and max stats. Now a choice must be made. Eliminate, reset, subjugate, or summon. The player chooses eliminate the unit. Something makes Troy pause. He wonders if he's imagining it, but it feels like someone is watching him. Then the system replies, error. Command could not be executed. A full inspection of the chosen unit begins. Koi's profile appears, then his unit is marked hidden. Other players can't see him anymore. From now on, Troy is invisible to the system. The player may now return to the game. Meanwhile, the citizens celebrate and start spending points in the shop. A messenger uses a magic accessory to announce the reward analysis results. There are 7 kinds of dice, each with different numbers depending on the type. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 20, and 100 sides. Most connect to certain classes, and they generate random items, weapons, tools, and gear. Jaeseon, for example, gets a Destiny Spork, a heroic accessory that always comes back, never gets lost, and stays clean. He looks at it and mutters that high-grade gear isn't always useful. Meanwhile, everyone else is thrilled with what they got. They start trading, selling, and making deals. The city begins organizing too. Some recruit attackers for the next mission, while others look for defenders for evacuation zones. Jaeon asks Haiju if she's really leaving. She nods. Yeah, the military just isn't for me. Too many people are still hiding in fear, and she wants to help them. Still, she says she'll keep supporting the missions, so Jaeon doesn't need to worry. Watching her leave, he thinks they're slowly getting used to this insane world. From a distance, Troy watches in silence. The citizens are off to a solid start. The champion they'll need for future missions and the military have both found their roles. What matters now is where they go from here. If Troy's plan fails, the city will be destroyed by its own people. Koi pauses to think, then someone taps his shoulder. He turns and is surprised to see Kang Ji-woo greeting him. She's level 5, a regular citizen. Koi is stunned she showed up out of nowhere. When he asks how she got there, she casually says she just climbed. She steps closer and Troy tenses up. Kang says she thought he'd be sat up here all alone, but it looks like he's already used to it. Koi frowns, asking what that's supposed to mean, but she doesn't explain. Instead, she says nothing can be fixed today, but she'll come back later. Troy blinks, confused. Then why did she come up here to find him? Kang grins and says he won't figure that out by staring at his book. Koi answers that thoughts don't show up in the data. As she turns to leave, Kang adds, "That's fine. I just wanted to see your face. The face of the idiot who could have ruled the whole city and still picked the hardest path." Then she jumps off the building with a rope attached. Troy is left stunned by the whole thing, and her sudden exit really shakes him. Then a citywide notice pops up. The city's experience level has increased. The city is now level 1, and citizen features will improve. People can now customize interface windows, lock or add friends, and message each other directly. Parts of the city's infrastructure will also get physical upgrades. Troy realizes the city's experience rises whenever citizens spend points. That annoys him a little, since his own points don't count toward it. Then he has a new thought. Where are the points I spend actually going? He guesses the points are probably going to the demon inside the book. That makes him wonder if he should keep using it at all. Elsewhere, Jae-young gets a new badge. He's been promoted to second lieutenant. Kim Song is thrilled, but Jae-young looks worn out. Watching from afar, Kang murmurs that they're doing well. Still, she can't help wondering where someone as weak as her fits in a city this dangerous. At the same time, Troy sits quietly with the book. Then a message appears. A new turn has started. They've entered the Golden God's house trap. The city has been taken by the Golden God, and if they don't satisfy him before time runs out, it's game over. His greed level is 2. There will be 4 maps, and the mission lasts 2 weeks. Jae-young reads through it, surprised by how much the system has changed. This time, they need to find treasure on the summoned maps and bring it back. The more valuable it is, the more the Golden God will be pleased. But treasure can only be appraised inside the city. People are confused. No monsters are appearing in the city this time, and they first assume that if someone clears the mission, everyone shares the reward. Then another notice pops up. There is no shared reward this round. Each person gets rewarded only by how much they satisfy the Golden God. That immediately upsets people, especially those without real combat gear. Hyunju watches the reaction. The mission details are long and messy, so she skips the rest and heads straight in. She's set on searching the whole map by herself. Kyungwoo watches from a distance. Their researcher has had insanely good luck with the dice, and if things keep going well, this mission should finish phase 1 of the city's development plan. Until then, he'll keep using the Book of Krasina. After that, he'll find a way to get rid of it. Suddenly, a sword shoots out of the book and stabs straight through Choi's chest. He's frozen, with no clue what's going on. The book falls from his hand and a system message appears. The number of sovereignty sacrifices from the last mission is 0. Choi grabs his chest, overwhelmed by pain. Then the system announces this is the Demon King's punishment. Demon King Krasina scolds him for doing nothing. Until the user offers sovereignty sacrifices, they'll suffer intense pain and keep losing HP. If no sacrifices are made before his HP reaches 0, he'll die, and the Book of Krasina will pick a new owner. Sector A, the jungle. A group finds what looks like an unregistered dungeon. One guy is excited they can keep it for themselves. Another wants to report it to the military and take the 50 points each. The first guy snorts, "What's 50 points going to do?" He's carrying Black Flame Dragon, a weapon that deals medium fire damage and gets stronger in the right hand. Their team is called Kangs and Roses. The leader is Kang Doyop, level 3. There are 4 of them, all trying to build a name in this new world. Then a dark figure steps out of the dungeon. The group jumps back. One thinks it's a gatekeeper monster, and another says the patterns are getting easy to read now. They used to be raid leaders and guild masters, so this world felt like a game until they realized the figure coming out is Choi. He casually tells them the cripple is the boss. Then he starts listing dungeon info and how to deal with the enemies inside. The team tries to block their ears, hoping not to hear it, but Choi keeps talking anyway. Later, Kang vents in frustration. They became sovereignty sacrifices on the very first day of the mission. Everyone is furious at how unfair it is, and one of them says somebody has to stop Choi. But another points out there's nothing they can do. He's max level and has a mythical weapon, so they give up on the mission and stay quiet. Now they're trapped in the sovereignty sacrifice isolation zone. Inside, people compare notes, trying to figure out how Choi kept catching them, one in the jungle group, another in the canyon. They're sick of it. To them, Choi looked like a demon. No way was someone like that ever a good person. This was what he wanted all along. He scared people so badly they almost gave up on the whole sovereignty thing and went treasure hunting instead. But they didn't want Choi to profit, so they came back to the isolation zone. Everyone there is deeply stressed out and tired of being played by Choi like pieces on a board. The system announces that recorded sovereignty sacrifices have reached 2000. The Demon King is slightly satisfied, so the punishment is slightly reduced. Choi notices the pain is a little easier to handle now. None of this was in the item's description. He never expected a punishment like this from the Demon King, which means the book has been hiding part of its nature. Even so, Choi feels relieved. This amount of pain is manageable. It's still within the range he planned for. The Demon King may think this punishment has Choi under control, but really Choi is the one in control. In Sector B, the canyons, a winged monster circles above the Emperor Griffon's nest. The Griffon is level 3, but fighting it in its nest makes it much more dangerous. It suddenly flies straight at Choi. Meanwhile, Hanyeju is battling a different monster, a stone troll, level 2 adapted to live in the canyons. She remembers something her teacher, the Goblin Master Swordsman Jack, once told her. Power wasn't made to be controlled. After killing the monster, she thanks her master. His student has grown even stronger. Then she suddenly notices Kangju beside her, happily opening a treasure chest. Hanyeju stares confused and asks why she's following her. Kangju grins and says staying close to her has benefits. She says it so proudly with zero shame that Hanyeju has no response. Then Kang asks if she'd really leave a fragile civilian alone in a place this dangerous. Hanyeju says she wouldn't, but first she sends someone a message about where the treasure is. High on the canyon, a monster watches them in silence. Hanjo points out that Kangjuo's bag is tiny for someone who's been tagging along all day. Kang shrugs, her style is quality over quantity. Since nobody can tell what treasure really is until it's brought back to the city and appraised, she's just picking whatever looks interesting. Hanjo asks what kind of standard that is. Kang answers simply, her eyes. Hanjo laughs to herself. Kang is weird but kind of amazing too. Then Kang asks about Hanyeju's friends, and Hanyeju says she handled the monsters on the way here. Kang goes quiet, then asks if she really doesn't get it. The real threat in this mission isn't the monsters. This isn't some calm treasure hunt either. It's a free-for-all. Since there's no shared reward, it's basically every person for themselves. Treasure doesn't belong to anyone until it's appraised. So of course some people will decide it's easier to fight other players than monsters. Meanwhile, at a motel the police are gathering. A detective shows up. They seem to have another stolen treasure case. His name is Seo Isaok, and his partner is Kang Dusik. An officer explains that the victim blacked out during appraisal, and when they woke up, all the treasure was gone. Seo Ensuk mutters that they should have handed it straight to the Golden God. Appraising treasure takes time, anywhere from 1 to 12 random hours. It's almost like the system is inviting people to steal it. Annoyed, the detective asks why Kang Dusik hears that, and treats it like permission to rob people. Dusik just shrugs. It sounds like a pretty human way to think. The other officers are shocked by how casually he talks to his superior. Then someone suddenly shouts that it's Choi. They turn and spot him arriving on a griffin. Before Choi can land, Detective Seo Ensuk covers his mouth. He's wearing the Feng back gloves, a legendary item and one of the 3 divine relics. They let him strike with wind and control the air around him. Seo Ensuk attacks and slams Choi hard into the ground. Kang Dusik immediately tells the officers to put out an alert on Choi and clear everyone from the area. He watches, impressed. Charging Choi head-on despite worse gear and a lower level. That kind of professional instinct is hard not to respect. Seo Ensuk glares at Choi. Then he notices something strange. Choi isn't dodging, and he doesn't even look surprised. So Seo Ensuk demands to know what Choi is planning. Soon notices start spreading across the city. Word gets out that the detective has arrested Choi. The citizens explode with excitement. People rush to grab their gear and start treasure hunting. Back in Sector A at the Goblin Village, adventurers are raiding the place and killing monsters for treasure. One soldier, Wang Minwu, level 3, charges in with a heroic grade axe. Another soldier joins him, Li Wujin, using a heroic grade bow. Together they cut down goblins one after another. Then they start bickering. Wang asks why Li brought a bow instead of a rifle when the bow is clearly less accurate. Before the last goblin can run, something sharp strikes it in the head. It was Sergeant Park Shankyu. He grumbles that those 2 idiots better make up for this later. Then he radios the platoon commander to report the area is secure. That commander is Jigan, who says they're finished on their side too. Meanwhile, a goblin starts casting a spell and laughs that his god will soon descend and no one will escape death. He stares at Jingyang and says his end will spread like trees in a forest, but a soldier cuts him off by using an explosion ring, a magic class item. The soldier is Kim Kwang-soo. A huge blast erupts where the goblin was standing. Jingyang watches and says hitting something while it's transforming or summoning feels like cheating, but they're soldiers. This isn't a cartoon. The military pushes into a compound. They report they've found the target, the 18 missing civilians. Most are hurt, so they call for reinforcements. Back at Military Command HQ, Kim Song says backup is on the way, along with the engineering unit. They plan to turn the Goblin Village into a forward base. He then contacts Jiang, mentions Choi's arrest, and asks if he has any idea what Choi is really after. Jiang says the scariest thing about Choi isn't the book full of information. What makes him scary is how well he knows how to use it. Still, he isn't the real enemy. The Griffin wanders around for a bit, then drops in front of the officers totally exhausted. So now it looks like Choi belongs to him too. Choi tears into his food like he hasn't eaten in days. Kang Du-shik watches and jokes that even someone that strong still gets hungry. Then Detective Su En-sok walks in and asks if they're having a friendly little talk. Su En-sok then states that Choi is being processed as a criminal charged with theft, fraud, and even murder. Choi raises a hand and calmly says he accepts all of it and takes full blame. With a smile, Su En-sok says he's worked this job for 20 years and one look is enough to tell if someone is a criminal. To him, Choi doesn't look like a bad guy. What happened feels more like an accident. He says it would be like a Good Samaritan case, except Korea doesn't have a law for that. Still smiling, Su En-sok says he'll clear up the wrong idea people have about the protagonist. Yul sets his spoon down and says he never did any of this to ask for help. That leaves the detective confused. Before he can press further, a soldier rushes in with urgent news. Someone with a heroic class item is out there committing robbery and murder. Since there aren't many strong fighters around, the team can't handle it well. They quickly board a bus and head for the scene. Du-shik says when there's no reward, people don't work together. In his eyes, that's how things should have been from the start. A huge mess giving birth to a new order that suits a world with superpowers. Seju snaps that the guy should try thinking like a normal person. On top of that, he still doesn't get all this other world stuff. But none of that changes. One thing, they're still human. A person is about to die and cries out for help, while the attacker couldn't care less. Then the detective steps in and blocks the strike, warning that he's under arrest for robbery and attempted murder. If he resists, things are going to get rough. Terrified, the man gives up right away. Seju escorts him back to the bus. Du-shik says the law doesn't mean much anymore. The smartest move would be to rule the city themselves, and with Yul's help, that wouldn't be hard. The detective answers that's exactly why he keeps MC close, because the most dangerous person in the city is him. Du-shik thinks something feels off. No matter how much he watches, he still can't read what he is thinking. Then he figures something out. Looking at Seng, he says they're going to be very busy from now on. With the protagonist locked up, this is the perfect chance for others to act. Du-shik believes Yul's true aim is destruction, but Seng insists the kid is good. Du-shik says people aren't laughing. They're hiding. In the cell, the protagonist sits there sweating, saying this is a battle of patience now. Then the system speaks. Christina still isn't satisfied and wants more sacrifices. Yul uses an item to create a copy of himself. Smoke rises around him, and soon his double stands in front of him. Using the invisibility cloak, the protagonist hides and tells the clone to do its best and keep going as long as it can without getting caught. Once the real Yul slips away, the clone takes over. A soldier shows up and asks why MC is taking so long to come out. The clone turns, giving him a cold look that puts the soldier a little on edge. He adds that reinforcements are here, so trying anything would be pointless. All of a sudden, his clone walks out of the cell. He calmly says he won't cause trouble. Outside, the griffin starts acting weird. For some reason, it suddenly takes off. Everyone is confused. Meanwhile, the real protagonist is still invisible. He says the first step of his plan is done. Now it's time for stage 2. The army has been divided into 2 groups, one for inside work and one for outside operations. Citizens can also choose between those 2 roles. Even people without combat skills finally found ways to help. Because of that, the mission has been moving along smoothly. At the outpost built from the old goblin village, Quan says they cleared an area that big in only 2 days. Still, it would have been much easier if people had worked together from the start. The surgeon remembers his superior warning him that the city's mood is getting worse. More treasure is being stolen, and people's greed keeps growing. Those protecting the city are struggling because they don't have enough gear. Quan asks if the army will step in, but the answer is no, it's too risky. If the army starts doing police work, civilians will think things have gotten out of control. Their job is to move only when they have to. Quan goes quiet and thinks it over. Then he says the world may change, but people never really do, and knowing that weighs on him. Later, somewhere else, a man is being overtaken by something dark. A bandit is using him like a test subject for different poison mixes. The item causing it is the abandoned magic pearl. That gear evolves every time it's used. The poison around the victim starts to fade. Grinning, the stranger says he won't kill him yet because he still has more poison combos to test. The civilian begs for mercy, promising to hand over all his treasures. Like a madman, the attacker says experience is the real treasure. Then all that's left are screams. Later, the detective reaches the crime scene. Du-shik remarks that this weapon is pretty useful. Then both of them notice something ahead. Looking over the body, Siu says the killer never even touched the treasure, so they can't tell if this was one person or a whole group. Du-shik says something truly dangerous has appeared. With Demon King Yul locked up, something else has stepped into his place. The detective is glad, saying the boy isn't evil, though he admits this whole mess started because of him. So later, he plans to have a serious talk with the protagonist. Dusik asks if he really thinks the protagonist will tell the truth, and Subiu says in times like this, of course not. Instead, he'll do something smarter, question the people around him. Riding the griffin, the boy suddenly sneezes and wonders if he's coming down with something. The system reports that the Golden God's satisfaction still hasn't reached 10. That worries Yuled a little. As he heads for the desert sector, he says there's no helping it. Ahead of him is a huge sand tornado. The griffin is already worn out from all that flying. Yule says they've arrived, so the bird should rest for a while. No matter what the citizens do, he's already taken all the good treasure. Smiling, MC tells the creature to eat well and get nice and fat. Somehow he's making his own golden god. Elsewhere, the three corporals say to leave the mission to them. Quan tells them to quit being dramatic. He's only going to make a statement about Yule. Acting like kids, the soldiers yell for him to bring back ice cream. Once the surgeon gets a little farther away, the three happily celebrate getting a day off. Another surgeon notices how they're acting, but says taking a break isn't a problem. The three idiots dance around near him, shouting for beer, while the surgeon thinks he really can't leave them alone. Then a hand appears out of the darkness. 4 strikes hit the protagonist, and he drops to the ground dazed. Jack says it's done. Now that all his pressure points have been hit, the pain should ease up. The boy thanks the goblin, saying he's helped a lot. Right now, Jack has become one of Yule's 4 sovereigns. He has plenty he wants to ask, but it's better to wait until things settle down. And for now, he'll use this chance well. That surgeon Quan is back in the city to loot houses in the jumble sector. Then something happens to Quan. He quickly tells the soldier to turn the car around because they've driven into an ambush. The attackers keep drinking potions so they can rush in again and again. Quan can't believe these people are crazy enough to attack the military. Even so, if he fights back too hard, it'll cause chaos because they're still civilians. So the surgeon chooses to retreat until backup arrives. They speed away before the attackers can catch them. Staying calm, Quan realizes the crime problem is even worse than he thought. Stronger people are probably out hunting treasure, leaving non-combatants in the city. That created the perfect setup for criminals. If a powerful bandit shows up, the whole city becomes a real danger zone. Meanwhile, the soldier shouts that something is chasing them, and it's fast. While the city falls into chaos, our boy is fighting a level 3 lizard, and it's not alone. Several more get ready to attack him, but none of them can even scratch him. One hit is enough to wipe the monsters out. Jal says that thanks to Jack, his body feels lighter. At his side, Jack warns him not to push too hard and says this place feels a lot like the demon realm. There, monsters grow stronger, and the boy's pain gets worse too, because Christina, the demon king, keeps increasing the punishment. Jal says he'd rather finish fast, grab the treasure, and leave. His real goal isn't pleasing the golden god. It's clearing the mission the easiest way possible. That means collecting as much treasure as he can and getting the biggest rewards possible. The protagonist admits the chaos in the city is part of his plan to gather treasure. A poison monster attacks the soldier and Quan. Neither of them panics. They've already called for reinforcements. Before this, the surgeon had earned a promotion reward. His superior told him about the mission and also handed items to his subordinates. Quan didn't say much, just that he still wasn't used to any of this. The item is heroic class and gives the user temporary protection. It creates a safe zone with a 3-meter range that lasts 3 minutes. The surgeon tells the soldier to hold on, because rushing in could get them hurt. Before they can act, someone lands on the moving car. That man immediately grabs their attention. Quan tells him to call his boss. He has no interest in talking to underlings. The man laughs and says the surgeon really knows how to insult people. Then he points at himself and says he is the leader, ordering them to obey if they want to live. The whole car gets swallowed by poison. Everything starts melting. The soldier panics, but Quan stays calm thanks to his helmet. He realizes the smoke is corrosive, and the poison spreads over a wide area. If this goes badly, they'll end up just like the people outside. For now, the item is still keeping them safe. Quan says he'll surrender, but only if the man agrees to his terms. Without any fear, the surgeon tells him he can become his subordinate. That way, he might even turn him into more of a human. The bandit asks if Quan has lost his mind. Next to him, the soldier panics and can't believe Quan is acting like this. Then the man notices something behind him, but it's already too late. The surgeon reveals the offer was just a distraction so the reinforcements could strike. A moment later, the bandit gets lifted into the air. He grumbles that he got carried away playing around. With the wind blowing, he can't control his poison well. He doesn't know who attacked him, but he knows he's at a disadvantage. Trying to fight back, he forms a ball of poison and pulls out a slingshot to fire it at the attacker. The shot flies out fast toward its target. Just before it lands, the surgeon yanks Seal out of the way. The poison bullet slams into the ground like a flash of light. At the same time, the wind tornado fades. Where the shot landed, the ground starts melting. The detective moves in to press the attack, but Quan warns him the enemy isn't alone. Seal says they can't just run, and the surgeon tells him to call it a tactical retreat. They start arguing at the worst time possible. While they go back and forth, the criminal slips away. Then several explosions rock the city. On the streets, some criminals complain about being stuck in the outer area. Soon they realize their bad luck they ran into Hiju. Both of them immediately try to run. Hiju yells for them to stop, but one of them throws a bottle at her. Hiju doesn't seem to notice the danger, so the old woman warns her not to get close. Before it can hit the ground, the girl catches the beer bottle. With a quick move, she stops it from exploding. The old woman lets out a relieved breath. Hiju asks who those people were. The old woman says they're bandits, but she's never seen them this organized before. She adds that some carry poison bottles and right now there's no cure. Luckily, Hiju stopped the disaster. Deep down, she remembers what Kang said about humans. That makes Hiju put treasure hunting aside for now because something strange is happening in the city. Elsewhere, someone is watching our boy's clone. It seems Kang already saw through the trick. While eating a cookie, she wonders what Yule is planning. Without him, this city could soon destroy itself from the inside. Somewhere else, Jack warns that a huge battle is coming. The protagonist says he expected chaos, just not people this insane. As they deal with monsters, the goblin says MC could simply cut these people down, but MC refuses. He wants even more chaos, and these newcomers will only make things move faster. Jack admits it's hard to read his mind. He says Jack will understand soon, but for now they need to clear the dungeon. Then a massive door opens for them. Inside, a monster says it's been a long time since a human came this deep. This creature is another demon king living at the edge of the abyss. As he steps forward, Yule asks if the boss knows Christina. The monster says he doesn't like the protagonist's tone. Raizmir rushes him before he can react, but a barrier blocks the hit. The boss calls him a fool for thinking that attack could even scratch him. Then, saying he hates that attitude, he hurls several boulders. Yule is thrown back at once, realizing it's a magic barrier that cancels all physical damage. This demon king is a mage type. If Quan had brought his platoon here, they would have been wiped out in seconds. Jack and Yule dodge the demon king's attacks, but the boss isn't the only danger here. There are cursed items and plagues too. Pulling out a huge axe, he says he'll beat this thing and use it to change the dungeon's difficulty. The monster throws up several barriers to protect itself, but with an axe that turns physical force into magic, Yule kills it and says he'll leave all the dangerous zones easy enough for the citizens. At the West Police Station in the meeting room, CIO brings everyone up to speed. They're discussing the poison bandit called Inuji. Dusik says arresting him is the best option, but with their current strength, they can't do it alone. So the detective plans a joint operation with the police, the army, and helpful citizens. Haiju agrees right away. Quan knows the longer this drags on, the worse things get. If they lose this fight, everyone will die. Since the higher-ups approved this plan, they must understand the risk. That means they're confident they can win this battle inside the city. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, the Demon King still isn't dead and says he has caused pain to countless people. For a long time, no mortal has been able to wound him, but Yule did it with ease. The protagonist asks again if the boss knows Christina. The Demon King asks if this has something to do with the convocations. MC isn't sure if that means the missions, and the creature explains that monsters get missions too, usually to destroy humans. Maybe some monsters receive different convocations, and Yule pushes him to say more. But the Demon King says it doesn't matter. The more he reveals, the closer the owner of that book gets to death. That's when he realizes the monster really knows something. Laughing, the creature says the protagonist won't live to see the destruction this will bring. Yule tries to act, but Jack stops him and says they should leave. Before vanishing, the boss says it's nice to see that look of anguish on MC's face. He yells for him to wait, but it's too late, and the ground starts shaking. A bolt of lightning bursts out and lights up the whole area. The Demon King's voice echoes out, saying he will wait for the great condemnation of Pawn Number 8, brought about by Yule himself. Jack asks if the protagonist is okay, and the protagonist says yes, but inside he's thinking about his situation, and the secrets hidden in the book. Jack asks if he wants to look for answers, but MC says no. It's enough to know a Demon King knows Christina. For now, he'll focus on adjusting the area's difficulty, even if it takes at least 3 days. Jack isn't sure humans can survive that long, so he worries about his apprentice and his friends. 3 days later, the city is in an uproar. So many people are hurt and there isn't enough medicine to treat them. In fact, more people are getting injured fighting each other than fighting monsters. Suwon and Haiju are now trapped under poison smoke. How are they supposed to get out of this? Someone clearly wanted to watch them lose hope. The masked man says even their legendary items won't be enough to bring him down. In his eyes, the soldiers never wanted to give their all in this battle. They only wanted easy rewards. All of this, he says, happened because there was no leader. This world needed an emperor to rule over humanity, and no one else should be as strong as that absolute ruler. Then the girl suddenly says the strongest is Yule, but the masked man claims he stayed away because he knew he couldn't win. He's even disappointed, since he prepared a secret weapon just for him. Then gunfire suddenly targets the man, and he uses his power to stay unharmed. His bullet-blocking barrier works on its own, showing the villain is gaining new abilities as the fight continues. After that, the masked man launches his counterattack. As the soldier dodges, he realizes this man has to be taken down fast. The masked man says that unlike Yule, he can help them clear missions and share points and items. All they have to do is follow his orders. Dark thoughts fill his mind as he tells them to accept it and carry out every one of his wishes, but the detective starts charging his gauntlets before attacking with full force, telling the snake to go raid a dungeon instead. The masked villain blocks the wind and says he's already adapted to attacks like that. But the spearman and the police officer both freeze when something starts coming up from underground. Suddenly, multiple slime snakes burst from the ground and wrap them inside a huge sphere of poison. Luckily, Haiju raises a barrier just in time to protect herself and the inspector. The serpent says Siyu and Haiju's powers are useless against his. Then he says he'll spare the one whose scream amuses him most after the poison takes hold. There's only one kind of painful scream he wants to hear, and then the snakes shatter the barrier. So Inspector Siyu covers Haiju and uses his own body to block the venomous bites. The dragon warrior says she's the higher level one, but the police officer refuses to listen. Protecting her is his job as a police officer, and as the older one. The serpent says the sight annoys him. He's just about to say what he really wants, when a sudden gust of wind blows all his poison away. The dragon, the bear, and even the serpent are left confused. As he puts away his sword, Jack says he expected better from his student. He's disappointed that Haiju is struggling against someone this weak. Both Siyu and Haiju are shocked to see the goblin swordsman. The serpent recognizes him as one of the monsters guarding the pillars in the last mission and can't understand why he never disappeared. Jack wanted this to be a lesson for the young one, but they're running out of time. Then an emergency notice appears in the system. A rumble rises near a huge pile of gold and what looks like an empty pig shell. Another golden deity competing for the top spot has been found after reaching adolescence. With that, the city's mission changes. Now the citizens can choose which golden pig gets their treasures, and the one with the most wealth will win. Everyone reads on as another notice appears saying those who back the winner will get great rewards, while anyone who picks the loser gets nothing. Seeing that the desert's golden deity has way more treasure than the city's, even with only one follower, the citizens start blaming Yule. Even the serpent's underlings begin saying this might be the protagonist's doing, which catches the masked man off guard. After all, getting the whole city to unite against one villain is an old trick. He said a fool who only leans on an epic item could never take that spot, and Yule showed up on his griffin to say it himself. The civilians started murmuring that MC would never turn himself in, and just seeing him made him look like the villain. One man wanted to run back to the city, but another argued the serpent was still here. That hardly mattered now. Compared to the servant of the demon lord of greed, even the serpent was trembling. So the masked man attacked him at once. He sent a massive poison snake straight at him. Siyu and Haiju were stunned when the giant serpent swallowed their friend. The serpent moved to kill the book wielder for mocking him, but Yule looked completely calm, unlike his nervous griffin. Then the beast snapped up the serpent's attack with its beak. The masked villain froze when he saw it devour his power. He couldn't believe it. The Emperor Griffin had survived creatures full of venom. It had even swallowed the special poison bomb he made to kill its master. A moment later, Yule was suddenly right behind him. The serpent jumped when the protagonist asked from behind if he knew why his poison wasn't working. MC wouldn't explain. He told him to figure it out on his own. Then he flicked the guy on the forehead and told him to stop picking on innocent people. Siyu and Haiju could only stare in shock. Just like that, the serpent went down. Afterward, Yule claimed the desert's golden deity for himself, and warned that anyone who offered treasure to his giant pig would be targeted by the demon lord of greed in every mission. With a fake evil grin, he challenged the whole city to stop him before the mission ended. Then he flew off on his griffin. Everyone was left wondering how he could be such a terrible actor. Even Jack had to cheer him up after that weak performance. By sunset, a huge tornado had appeared in the desert near the city. At the urgent treasure hunt meeting, everyone discussed how to gather enough treasure in 1 week to beat the book wielder. Haiju asked the citizens to work together with them. Siyu agreed. Yule was the city's biggest enemy, but said they had more urgent problems first. The inspector suggested handling it the same way they would back in their old world. The answer was simple: cooperation. Haiju said teamwork had always helped humanity survive every crisis. Right now, they needed to defeat the book wielder, clear the coming missions, and find a way back to Earth. She lit up her spear and called for everyone's help, firing the crowd up. Elsewhere, a blonde person sat behind bars. An orb had been planted in his hand, and his mind was full of rage. Morning came again over the trapped city. The city union got the first mission guide ready. First were lairs, homes of hostile monsters that didn't live underground. Those were easier to handle since the monsters could be seen from far away. They usually didn't have much loot, but sometimes held a rare valuable item. Second came dungeons. A dungeon was any area you couldn't find without going inside. These places had the best loot, but they were too dangerous to enter alone. People were told to bring an experienced fighter from the army or police before going into a dungeon. Meanwhile, an old man sorted treasure and helped move the loot back to the city. Soon several loaded trucks headed toward the city, when a swarm of flying monsters came down from above. The adventurers fought them off while trying to reach the gates. They were almost home, where more adventurers were waiting. From inside the city, the others joined the fight to protect the trucks. The third location was the Treasure Evaluation Center. Inside, loot was appraised while the city's forces kept the adventurers safe. One hunter found an epic item, the idol of the true god, modeled after the deity himself, and worth 1,000. He was thrilled by the find. At the same time, someone kept updating numbers on a board. Utroy was still much richer than the city, even after they had cleared most of the jungle and canyon. Only one region was left unexplored, the desert where the book wielder was hiding. People had stayed away from that dangerous mystery until now, but they finally had the strength to search it. A strand of shiny hair lay on the table. CU had just learned it came from the fake Yule they were holding. His partner said that if he had mentioned the desert deity from the start, most people would have stayed away because they were afraid of him. So the book wielder chose to act like the villain and push everyone to move past that fear. That only made the angry inspector slam the table in half and reject the whole idea. At this rate, the mission result wouldn't matter because that poor kid would still be remembered as a villain. His partner stayed quiet, turning it over in his head. He was finally starting to understand how Utroy thought. Frieren wasn't just trying to clear this mission. He was planning for the rest of the game too. He knew the city had to unite, keep growing, and keep leveling up. He probably already had a plan to help them win the treasure hunt, by pushing them past simple teamwork and toward hunting truly valuable loot. In the jungle, they found a giant stone tablet covered in writing. The blonde woman studied it closely. She realized she could make a big profit and had found a new way to win the treasure hunt. A major battle was raging in the desert near the tornado. On the treasure hunt's final day, Detective Sayo faced Yule, who blocked his punch while his golden deity held 38,552,895 in treasure. But then the protagonist was suddenly blasted up into the air. Sayo declared that no matter MC's level, he'd always be heavier. Once airborne, he was attacked from both sides by the serpent and the dragon warrior, part of the city's side, whose deity had gathered 1970. Still, the book wielder swiftly dodged every strike aimed at him. And now the race for the top deity would end in less than 25 minutes. Yule pointed out how little time the city had left to defeat him. He called them the city's allied forces and said they need to do better than this. 4 days earlier, Haiju learned the serpent's real identity. The feared villain was actually a level 24 teenager named Sungwoon Kang. The cocky boy told Haiju to leave him alone and said he'd call when he needed her, which only made the hero watching him even madder. But just as the serpent was about to act, something shot past him. Haiju's spear, faster than the orb that set him apart from normal people. The dragon warrior had gotten that intel from Sungwoon's own gang, who sold him out right away and made him look like a lousy leader. Still, the serpent didn't blame them. He believed they'd come crawling back after he taught them a lesson. The high schooler said that was just human nature, making the hero call him an edgy teenager. Sungwoon Kang's wishing orb was also an epic item, and he claimed the only reason he lost to Yule was because it hadn't reached full power yet. Once it did, even the protagonist wouldn't be able to beat him. Haiju grew uneasy when the serpent said he'd rule the city someday. He had a point. The wielder of the demonic book was the only reason he'd lost before. That made the dragon warrior think the city needed to prepare for this boy before his power fully awakened. At Treasure Evaluation Center 4, 2 hunters were talking about one of them entering a dungeon for the first time. Nearby, a police officer was looking for a hunter carrying a sheathed sword. Jiayu was frustrated. She needed some chaos if she wanted to make real money from her information. So she called someone, saved as Miss Jackpot. That turned out to be Haiju, who admitted she was worried about her friend. While Haiju spoke on the phone, the villain quietly adjusted the settings on his power-hungry serpent orb. Gio asked if she knew anyone willing to buy information, but instead, Haiju gathered all the key people together. Before the meeting started, the man in the helmet asked why the young villain was there. The man beside him said he had invited the boy because the high schooler was talented. In times like these, it was a waste to keep Haiju stuck as his guard. But while the inspector angrily argued back, his tone changed fast when level 1 Tu-Lun Li cut in. Based on the blonde girl's data, a golden deity could be killed before it reached full adulthood. So even with Yule in the way, they still had a chance to win, which meant they needed someone's help. Just as he predicted, the city would one day cry out for him, and he offered a deal to everyone at the table. Meanwhile, MC and Jack sat on a rooftop near the huge tornado. Jack asked if his master needed more victims for the demon lord of greed. He also noticed Yule was still suffering demonic punishment, but he said he wanted the people to collect as much treasure as they could, because he'd already found a way to save the victims. This time, he was targeting people about to enter deadly dungeons or pick up cursed items. The protagonist said he had to isolate certain people for this mission, leaving Jack curious. Then someone approached them. A team made up of a lieutenant, the inspector, the high schooler, and the spear maiden was coming for him. A truck full of soldiers came too, ready to help fight Yule. Jack wanted to take them on, but MC stopped him, saying it wasn't his turn yet. First, he should send his weakest servant. A huge shadow fell over the military trucks. The Emperor Griffin attacked the city's allied force. Siyu and Heiju were shocked when poison started spreading around them. The serpent told them to get out, and the young man chose to distract their first enemy himself. That move really irritated his 2 teammates, so they rushed the beast from above right away. At the same time, the lieutenant told the troops to find cover and support the heroes with gunfire. The soldiers followed his command at once. Meanwhile, the serpent stayed hidden. He didn't want to fight Yule's servant, because the griffin wasn't his real target. He wanted to trick the people who tried to use him to kill the golden deity of the desert. The gray-haired man watched from a distance. He figured he wasn't interested in the deal he had suggested, so he and his men started moving. Killing the golden deity of the desert had only been a decoy. The mission could be finished by killing the giant pig, but that goal was far out of reach. Their real plan was to enter the desert and grab as much treasure as they could. That meant sending in as many units as possible, because they only had time for one trip. That's why they used the serpent as a distraction, keeping him busy with the desert deity since leaving him in a weakened city was too dangerous. Then the car stopped. The man was stunned by what he saw. In the middle of the desert, he and his men found a ruined city from Earth. The soldiers looked over the place in silence, and he realized theirs might not be the only city trapped in this game. Still, he never expected his guess to be proven like this. The city had been destroyed by its own people, not by some monster, and it was packed with treasure. The bodies had started decomposing a year earlier, so the soldier guessed that city had years to clear this mission, while they had much less time. Then the man with the hat shocked him by suggesting both cities began at the same time, but time moved differently for each one. They couldn't prove it, but if he was right, the ones behind this game could even control time. Claws tore through the air. CL ended up face to face with the Emperor Griffin. The inspector struck back with a fast chain of punches that badly hurt the beast. Then something made it flinch. Kanju had slipped onto its back, ready to finish it. She apologized to the Griffin. They had no choice but to win, and burn the beast with her power. Jack was impressed. CL and Hiju used some of the best weapons in the game. Those weapons boosted stats and gave huge firepower, which was why they stood out from the start. But their attacks covered too much space, making them dangerous to allies nearby, so Yule made them work together to learn control. And to train them right, he needed an experienced team that already knew how to fight as one. The Griffin was finally beaten, so the Inspector and the Dragon Warrior were shocked when they felt it move behind them. It was Yule, carrying the creature and praising them for clearing the first stage. Sil wanted the act to end. He said he wasn't there to kill the desert pig. The protagonist was surprised when the man said he had come to save him. Hearing that made the protagonist smile. Then MC challenged Seal to arrest him before flying off, leaving Seal and Hiju behind. Then something caught her eye. She jumped in front of the Inspector to protect him, and Kanju knocked away a powerful attack. She managed to shield all of her allies. Jack said only his student had ever pushed back one of his attacks. That made him realize he had to hold back, or he might kill one of them by accident. The lieutenant recognized him as the strongest of the 3 Pillar Guardians from the last mission. Even weakened, those pillars had taken huge numbers and countless hours to bring down. So he had to wonder how this small group could face the Goblin Swordmaster, especially with the serpent gone. Meanwhile, at the Emperor Griffin's nest in the canyon sector, Yol praised his weakest servant and told it to rest while it healed. He also apologized for using the creature like that, even though it could recover fast. To make up for it, he used the legendary Weather Orb, a one-time tool that changes the weather in a small area. He called down a thunderstorm to guard the Griffin's nest until the mission ended. After that, he sped back. On the way, he remembered the Inspector's kind words. He had expected the city's strongest fighter to come after him, not try to help. Yell could read people's actions but not their thoughts. Smoke rose into the sky. Only Seo and Haiju were still standing before the Goblin Swordmaster. The Inspector couldn't think of any way to beat Jack, who seemed impossible to hurt. Pedro begged his master to let them pass, but Jack said they wouldn't earn it by talking, only by fighting. The lieutenant, who was still alive, suggested they retreat. They still had time, so they should step back and plan, especially since the goblin only attacked after being challenged. Jack stood on top of a ruined building. When Yule arrived, the Swordmaster said Jae Yongguan had fought wisely. Meanwhile, inside a military tent, the 3 of them studied their enemies. A strong party needed brains as well as power. Yule wanted to use this mission to make them better at clearing dungeons. It was also important to teach different groups to work together so no single force could rise and control everything alone. As for the serpent, the protagonist chose to watch him for now. After all, he was still just a boy growing into a man. Someone said the sandstorm ahead made Seo look helpless. The plan was to kill the golden deity of the desert while the others distracted its guardian and pushed through the storm. Meanwhile, back in the city, the young man was surprised by the result and asked the Inspector how he figured it out. The Inspector said Yule never followed mission rules in a normal way. He bent them to gain as much as he could. So the man asked himself what MC would do in their place, and that's how he learned how to raise a treasure's value before turning it in. Now the city had to gather more wealth than the desert deity, or hope the serpent killed it first, which left him wondering which path Yule had chosen. Upgrading and sorting the city's treasures was going smoothly. A police officer and a soldier worried that the desert sandstorm would slow the trucks and that they lacked equipment, but the Inspector quickly settled them down. After that, they moved fast to carry out their orders, though both were surprised to hear themselves call him boss. Inspector Seo was asked about his partner. Haiju guessed he had to be strong if Seo left him in charge of the citizens, and Seo agreed. But Dusuk was known more for being resourceful, and that's what made him dangerous. Seo would never have left him alone if things weren't this serious. That thought crossed his mind as he swallowed his food in one bite, surprising Haiju. The serpent was fighting with everything he had, but he was still getting crushed. He was beaten and thrown far away by the massive sandstorm. The boy was confused because his wishing orb didn't level up after being used, even though it should have. Yul watched with his book open. He thought the serpent was wasting the chance he had been given. To master the wishing orb, the boy needed to fight someone stronger every time. Instead, he had only used poison on weak monsters and humans while hiding, so of course it didn't work on elite monsters. Yul chose not to tell him. He would have grown faster by fighting beside the city's heroes. Even so, the immature serpent was still useful for now. Something raced forward at incredible speed. It was Jack, landing on a rooftop, and the building exploded under him. The soldier gave Seo the go-ahead. The detective poured all his strength into one punch, and while the swordsman was blinded, the soldiers opened fire. They had to dive for cover as a missile flew into the tornado's eye. A huge explosion followed. One soldier started celebrating too soon, but the other shut him up, saying that kind of talk brought bad luck. Hiju stood in the rubble. Her master had used her as a shield, and said the attack still wasn't enough to break his barrier. The lieutenant realized they needed more power. Still, the goblin was impressed and chose to let them pass. He said they had learned how to fight in this world. Jack then looked at his student and said teamwork was one of the many ways to grow stronger. The lieutenant was still amazed, thinking those two were living in a story of their own, while the master added that he had expected more from his student. With that, the city's allied force moved on. Jack watched with a smile as the city was torn apart. That made the man with glasses wonder if the enemy had been training them or testing them, and wonder too what would have happened if Jack hadn't liked their performance. He then told his troops to stay alert, since Yul was clearly waiting for them. The allied force talked over ways to get through the tornado, but the detective seemed to have an idea, so he decided to test it. In that moment, he pushed himself to the limit to open a path through the tornado. Everyone was stunned by what he did, but then someone pointed out that those gauntlets alone couldn't give that kind of power. Yul said that meant Punbake had started to respect the detective. Kiju was shocked to see him, then she and the detective suddenly vanished. It was him. Using the heroic tool free warp tickets, he announced the final act and teleported them away. The item could force a citizen to warp as long as that person wasn't stronger than the user. Kiju and Seo assumed they had been sent far from the fight, when suddenly someone came up behind them. It was the serpent. Impressed that they had survived the griffin, the two stared at the villain without a word, but the serpent felt something was off about them. In just one day, the pair had changed way too much. Haiju asked if Yul had warped him there too, but he said he just woke up in that place, leaving her unsure. The serpent guessed the protagonist sent them away because he was scared they might kill his giant pig. MC said that wasn't the reason at all. He explained that the last battle was always meant to happen in a special place. The serpent mocked him for that ridiculous idea, but Yul slipped past his strike and said he learned it from the people the serpent used to bully. The deeper someone gets into their role, the more perfectly they play it, and he remembered that well. That was why he knew the serpent was the perfect villain. The soldiers had lost contact with the others and were running low on ammo. They did get the high schooler out of the city, but they still didn't know if the citizens could earn enough points in time. So they went back to the plan and chose to find the dragon warrior first, with only 2 days left in the race. There was no time to change plans. They had to stick with the one they had. Haiju and Yul clashed, but he still wanted to talk things out. Instead, the protagonist warned that the serpent's pride would ruin him, just like every other villain. Baal then said anyone there could kill the deity in one blow, because it had full health but zero defense. Laughing like a maniac, he said whoever hit him first could go through and kill his pig. While the serpent sank deeper into the role, Siyu and Haiju were amazed he had somehow become an even worse actor. Still, the boy understood the mission. But one strike alone wasn't enough to satisfy his bloodlust, so he attacked Yul from every direction. With one swing, MC knocked the poison away and flicked the teen on the forehead. Just like before, the serpent lost again to another hit on the forehead. After that, Yul asked Suyu and Haiju what they planned to do next. There was nothing to debate. Even though they stood against the serpent, the bear and the dragon warrior chose to face the book wielder. The truck was packed up. A soldier said the vehicles were full, so there was no room for the adventurers. He told the old man to head home with the guards and the non-fighters. The rest would carry the remaining loot on foot. If they met in the middle after dropping off the treasure, they'd save time. Before leaving, the soldier turned back once. He looked over the ruined city and silently honored the people who died there. Back in the fight, Yul dodged Haiju's flames with ease. Then Suyu tried to catch him off guard, but the book wielder vanished in an instant. The anti-hero reminded them he was stronger than their monster ally and told them they'd need to do better. He still wasn't taking them seriously, and his air shoes made his movements hard to read. Haiju was trying to remember the goblins when someone called for her attention. Guan had to shout through her earpiece to get through. She apologized, saying she was busy, but the lieutenant said it was fine. They had found them. Then the line suddenly cut out. Since the call dropped, Haiju tried to ring Guan back, but a text popped up first. It was from the man in the helmet, telling her to just listen when he called again. The lieutenant wanted to discuss what Yul said about the golden deity. He believed those words were the key to clearing the mission. That would mean all of them were victims of the Greed Lord, which only left Haiju more confused. Guan, though, cared more about getting a full report on the battlefield. He wrote down every detail. Then he ended the call and told her to stall for time while he worked out a plan. Haiju already doubted she could keep up with him, so she stopped overthinking and jumped back into the fight. By then, the sun was setting. The serpent had finally woken up. Seeing all his allies knocked out only made him laugh just as expected. Then he went after Yule again. He said the serpent had abandoned his weapon for power, and that was what made Havoc grow stronger, the most important part. But if he kept using it recklessly, it would corrupt him. The serpent ignored the warning and charged at the anti-hero. Even after being warned, he only cared about beating Yule. Someone kept trying to reach the Spear Maiden. At last, the lieutenant had a plan. By nightfall, the city's golden deity had nearly reached 16 million in treasure. It had been a brutal trip back for the people crossing the desert on foot. But at last, the old man came to pick them up. That brought the city's total close to 27 million, with 116,554 people taking part. Now it was the final day of the treasure hunt. The desert's golden deity had 38,552,895, about 1.5 million more than the city's. The serpent was annoyed and couldn't wait to level up. When the mission ended, Suyu suddenly got a message with 21 minutes left. He told the Spear Maiden to get into place. The last move was about to begin. Yule quickly got out of the rising tornado, but the detective still wasn't finished. It was getting harder and harder for the book wielder to avoid them. As the pain returned, the protagonist started losing control of his power. Seeing that, the serpent went in to kill him, but he was stunned when the detective suddenly dashed out of the battlefield, and even more shocked when the soldier gave the signal. He froze as the tall Tsuyu landed right in front of him, and told the soldier to hang on. They were about to leave. Confused, the teen leaped after them before forming a poison claw to strike the boat. The soldier wanted to know if they had gotten away from Yule, but Tsuyu told him to watch the road. They didn't have much time left, only 15 minutes. MC cut through the tornado with his sword. He was about to chase them, but Haiju, chugging recovery potions, stayed behind to stop him. She reminded Yule that he was the one who told her the Fang's hidden power. She really could use prominence, but only under certain conditions. Haiju said that if full health meant full power, then all she had to do was stab herself with the Fang. He tried to stop her, warning that one crucial condition was still missing, and what it could do to her. But Haiju was ready to stab herself anyway. Using that power now would only cause her death. Her spear was a weapon holding the Fire King's power. Once every condition was met, it could grant its abilities and summon the Dragon of the Sun, prominence. But that power could only be used at dawn or sunset. Yule knew Haiju already understood that, but she said this was the lieutenant's idea. He had said the protagonist's strategy was impossible to predict, but that didn't make him unbeatable. It was still easy to guess what kind of soul he had. At that, Yule admitted defeat. He could still chase them, but there was no point. His goals were already done. 7 minutes remained as they prepared to face the enemy. Sayo drove the boat forward, at crazy speed, creating an opening for the others to enter the storm. But the detective was shocked when the serpent burst out from behind, laughing wildly. His snake nearly struck the soldiers in his path. The villain was trying to grab the desert's golden deity. He yelled for the pig to quit struggling. Then the serpent pulled the golden deity out from the tornado's eye. Wong and his squad opened fire with their rifles. At the same time, the gear was being upgraded. The armor had been fitted and was ready to be offered to the giant pig. Less than 5 minutes remained, so the lieutenant used a grenade, dealing more damage to the desert's golden deity. At the same time, the city's golden deity rejected his goofy-looking shield while the child kept crafting. At last, the new item was done, though he still thought it looked ugly and not good enough. That changed fast when it began to glow. Only 1 minute and 35 seconds remained. Yule then asked his friend for one favor. He said the citizens would soon turn on each other and fall into chaos, because that was human nature. Haiju was stunned by that. Time was almost out. Everyone was giving it everything they had when the golden deity suddenly started to change. Only 4 seconds were left. Jayu watched the people with admiration as they kept working with just 2 seconds remaining. The giant pig looked ready to explode, but at the very end it suddenly looked relieved, and the mission was cleared. The city's golden deity had won the race, while the serpent cackled on top of its corpse. He thought he was about to level up, only to learn the Greed Lord had stolen all his points. Everyone outside the city was then warped back. Su and Guang congratulated each other and said they'd grab a drink later. Then they were teleported back to the city. The citizens' reward points were doubled. Haiju arrived back in the city, confused and wondering where Yule had gone. As for the top scores, Jabrieku Kang placed third with 33,442, right behind Gyeongseon at 45,455, and in first place was Wong Park with 324,432 points. The citizens tossed the old man into the air in celebration, but the top scorer humbly said Hyung and her treasure haul deserved the credit. Even so, he celebrated by inviting everyone to dinner on his tab, which earned even louder cheers. The city celebrated under the bright sun. Then the lieutenant got a notification. It said everyone in his party had earned the golden deity's item, 12-faced dice, for killing the rival deity. Those dice raised their odds of getting heroic items. Wong thought the rewards were generous, even if luck would still decide the final result. The golden pig also gave the city a bonus. Until the next mission, everyone would gain 10% more experience. After that, the golden deity happily left the city. They now had 1 day before the next mission, and Yule was pretty happy with how things turned out. He had managed to stop the Greed Lord's punishment with only a tenth of his strength left. With barely a tenth of his health left, MC heard Jack say the city saw them as enemies, but MC shut that down. The swordsman sneered under his breath while his master proudly called himself the sea's greatest disaster. Yule was glad the citizens got through this trial on their own. Now it would take something huge to crush the city's spirit. Still, when Jack said he had led them to victory, he noticed his master's mind was somewhere else. The city now had enough points and plenty of momentum. After the break between turns, city number 8 was set to rise even higher. Before long, a crowd started to form. A lot of citizens were offering to work for Wong Park, but the top scorer stayed modest, saying the real hero was Haiju and his company had only backed her up. That only confused him more when 2 red-faced men said they wanted to join him because of that. To the citizens, the Spear Maiden was a flame angel, someone who kept fighting for them even after falling victim to the Greed Lord and the most beloved warrior in the city. No wonder those 2 were desperate to work with the Dragon Warrior. Haiju watched the crowd without a word. It brought Yule's words back to her. He had asked her to become a light of hope when darker times came. At the right moment, Haiju would become that hope for the city. At last, she stepped toward the crowd. She said she wasn't as special as they made her out to be. But Kiryu called on them to fight beside her by creating a guild. Back in the Middle Ages, guilds were groups of merchants or craftsmen in Europe. But in games, a guild is a team built by people chasing the same goal. That made the detective compare them to social clubs. Dusik agreed and added that guilds came in many forms. So Sue asked whether the system had a guild feature. It had been there from the start. No one had made one yet because it cost 100,000 points. Even so, 3 official guilds were formed, along with a few smaller unregistered ones. The first and most popular focused on missions and protecting the city. It was the Delanex Guild, led by Haiju, with Wong Park as deputy. At first, they wanted to name it after Haiju, but she got so embarrassed that they used her favorite flower instead. Because Detective Sue trusted the Flame Angel, he figured her group wouldn't cause trouble. The second guild was built around the colonel's leadership and the lieutenant's skill in the field. That guild was the Armed Forces of City Number 8, usually shortened to Armed Forces. CU respected both men and expected good things from their guild. As for the third one, he was stunned to hear about the Serpent Guild, also called the Kingdom Guild. Even after his defeat, the Serpent used his wishing orb to attract all kinds of people, mostly greedy criminals, into his guild. Their goal was simple: kill the city's biggest enemy and take control. Cedric said they needed more power to beat that arrogant serpent, who would stay hidden until they could kill the book's wielder. The police still couldn't make their own guild because they were too busy hunting criminals and guarding the city. If that kept up, the police would lose all influence. Looking out the window, Cedric asked Dusik if this was his answer. A group of men greeted them at once. All of them said they wanted to serve under Dusik as police officers. That made the detective wonder what his partner had been doing while he was in the desert. Dusik quickly said he wasn't building a force to take over the police, so CU thanked him for bringing all his people together in one place. The tension between the fox and the bear rose again, until an officer cut in. He reported something odd while going over the latest Greed Lord victims. CU chose to inspect it himself. Most of the victims had been listed as criminals back in their old world. That made Dusik understand why the serpent was the only villain bold enough to show himself openly in the city. He again pointed out how weak the police were right now, and that finally made his partner snap and agree to accept his followers. CU then walked off, flipping him the middle finger while warning the recruits to follow police rules. The serpent wasn't the only problem staying out of sight, because of Yule. Dealing with all this would take a long game, the kind the fox was best at. Flyers suddenly filled the air. They were calling on people to join the armed forces and return to military service. The colonel couldn't understand why nobody wanted in. Wong said the word re-enlist was what scared them off. Still, that meant the few who did apply were serious adventurers. Then it seemed the lieutenant had something important to tell his superior. The guild was running low on fuel and ammo. Food was getting scarce too, even though they still had electricity. That meant they would soon have to depend on whatever items were available, and go back to living without much technology. Still, with morale this high, the citizens probably wouldn't complain. The colonel then tossed something onto the table and called it an asset. It was a set of records from City Number 4. Before the desert city died out, its citizens left notes behind. These notebooks summed up their past adventures. By combining that knowledge with City Number 8's experience, they could build a new mission manual. Meanwhile, Yule was deep in thought. Someone beside him said he looked pretty pleased, and the protagonist agreed. He jumped when he noticed just Fu sitting next to him. She offered him chips and said his move had helped her earn points too. Then she asked if he planned to start a guild. Yule said no, any members would just become Greed Lord victims. She leaned in closer and told him to promise she'd be his first recruit if he ever changed his mind. Then she suddenly got up, leaving even the city's greatest villain a little shaken. With her mind made up, Jiyu offered to help MC. Her idea was to become a victim of the Greed Lord herself. Then she leaped from the top of the tower. Jiyu really was a strange girl. All she left behind was a bag of chips. Yule began thinking about how the Demon Lord's punishment and the Greed Lord's victims were getting in the way of clearing missions. So on this mission, he had started pushing back against Krishna while also making things easier for the citizens. The Greed Lord got no reward this time since the protagonist earned no points after betting on the losing golden deity. It was MC's warning to the Demon Lord, don't get between him and his goal, so the protagonist decided to keep using that same move until the entity finally answered. And thanks to his Greed Lord title, Yule felt that answer would come soon. Krishna clearly knew he could get him what he wanted, and then something suddenly caught the protagonist's eye. He found himself in a huge white empty room. Inside stood a strange figure with books floating around him, and the protagonist felt he knew him. The moment he recognized the man as Krishna, the Demon Lord of Greed, Yule rushed him with his sword. But in the next instant, he was sitting in a chair. Krishna was behind him now, holding a plate of fruit. MC tried to attack the book's owner again, but he was sent right back to the chair, this time dressed in formal clothes at a table. Just like that, Yule was having tea with the Demon Lord of Greed. Krishna felt different from every other Demon Lord. For the first time, he felt helpless before Krishna, the Demon Lord of Ultimate Greed. The entity quietly sipped his tea. The protagonist forced himself to stay calm since Krishna didn't seem openly hostile. He tried to speak with him but was shocked the moment he opened his mouth. No sound came out. Then Krishna said he had answered Yuli's call out of curiosity. The Greed Lord offered him a choice: become someone important to him or remain only someone interesting. MC struggled with that for a short time. Then a smug grin spread across his face when he realized Krishna needed something. Krishna told him not to get arrogant. He could replace him easily, but he could never replace him. That made the protagonist wonder if the Demon Lord could read his thoughts. Now the protagonist had to choose, stay a curiosity, or take the better path and become someone Krishna actually needed. The books in front of him looked the same, but they would change to match whichever choice he made. MC wanted to know if this new path would stop the Greed Lord victims and the Demon Lord's punishment. Krishna said no. He was only offering him a chance to become useful to him, and even then, Yule might fail at the task. The protagonist said nothing. Then he pointed out that being needed like that would put pressure on him, but that was exactly why he had aimed at Krishna's curiosity from the start. The cost would be worth it. If he accepted this new mission, Yule could change the fate of every captured city. That revelation left the anti-hero stunned. By now the city had reached level 3. It jumped 2 levels as the citizens began spending their points. While the city was partly restored, the player started choosing a reward, and Jaya realized the player had more options than the dice alone had shown. This entity had barely done anything until now, but the player of city number 4 had led that city to ruin. So either the player of city number 8 had been lazy and passive, or simply didn't care about the city. This time, the player chose to summon an NPC called the Summon Helper, whose appearance and gear were generated at random. The citizens were warned to be careful around it, since it would treat anyone who attacked as an enemy. When people saw her high stats and level, some who had liked her looks quickly ran away. Jayu compared the new ally to a very strong village guard. Since the player had finally made a choice, that meant he was active, or maybe he had just decided to take things more seriously. Then the player got a notification. After a detailed check, Yule was judged to be a perfectly designed unit. Still, since an error was possible, the player had to pick from 3 options. The player chose the invasive analysis, but that option turned out to threaten MC's life. At last, the giant hand made its choice. Yule fell into a deep sleep. The protagonist wondered if Krishna meant other cities when he talked about units. The Demon Lord confirmed it, and he realized he could speak again. That changed everything. The book's owner could affect the whole game. Krishna stood far above the other Demon Lords in power. Now it was the protagonist's turn to decide. Before choosing, he wanted to know why Krishna had come, but Krishna said he hadn't been summoned. Instead, Krishna said he wanted to take everything from the player, every last thing they owned. That made Yule realize just how deeply the demon hated the players. So once again, MC had to decide. He remembered that the other Demon Lords treated players like gods who called on them as tools for the mission. With that in mind, Yule reached for one of the 2 books. Krishna smiled at his choice. As he vanished, he said his chosen one had picked the right and obvious path. He was stunned to hear he'd forget this meeting because it had to stay secret for now, leaving him frustrated. Krishna said things had to remain unchanged for the moment and the protagonist started to fall. Then he began to wake up, thinking he had simply fallen asleep. Yule let out a disappointed sigh, believing the Demon Lord never answered him. Then Krishna's voice said the book would lead him. Evening came over the city. Someone was sprinting at full speed. Jayu was clearly in a rush. She wondered if she'd finally lost whoever was chasing her when a hand suddenly slammed against the wall. Jayu tensed up. The voice behind her sounded way too affectionate. Haegyo had tracked her down just to ask her to join her guild. Jayu turned her down and told the Angel of Flame to quit acting like a kid. She worked alone, so Haegyo should go recruit someone else. Haegyo lunged at her anyway, calling Jayu a little kitten. She wanted to keep close, and she still wouldn't stop pushing Jayu to join. Meanwhile, the armed forces kept training for the coming battle. They were told to use the recovery function, which cost 10 points and worked after 30 minutes as long as they weren't hurt. It also mattered for teamwork since it could restore their stamina for the sake of everyone else. Recovery didn't just heal the body. It let someone perform at their best, like they'd just gotten a full night's sleep. That one function massively boosted how hard people could work. With recovery, they could use all 24 hours and keep going without rest. Yell trained alongside Jack, The master swordsman fixed his friend's stance. Elsewhere, the serpent told his followers to entertain him with a bloody riot, since 10 points could restore them completely. He even promised the strongest subordinate the spot of second in command. A function that could replace sleep would be huge for surviving the next mission. So when the next turn came, the player rolled the dice again. It landed on 4. City number 8 had reached the cannon tower square. Since the challenge was called Joint Mission, Heiju guessed the citizens would have to work together. Yell's book started reacting as the system searched for a partner city. Any 1, 2, or 3 cities landing on the same kind of square could be teleported together at random. This time, city number 17 appeared. Heiju guessed that if its people were still alive, then that city had also been pulled into the game. City number 17 didn't seem human at all, and if it was, its people had clearly gone through a lot. This strange game piece stared back at theirs in the dark. City number 8 and city number 17 now faced each other. Then the map generated, linking the two cities together. At first, the map was nearly empty except for a small cannon in the center. The mission's difficulty depended on the player's total dice rolls. For the cannon tower, that difficulty was 11. Then something started rising from below. With that, the cannon tower took shape, ready to fire at either city at random. The mission would end when time ran out or when the cannon tower was conquered. Yell counted 11 floors, 1 for each difficulty level. The mission length was also based on the dice and came out to 1 full week. Then the cannon tower started moving. Its cannons turned toward the cities and fired the moment the mission began. Cannonballs started raining down on city number 8, and Heiju and CIA moved to stop the huge shots. The Spear Maiden tried to break the first one, but the cannonball was nearly impossible to destroy. Even Heiju couldn't burn it up. CIA warned her to be careful. If the cannonballs couldn't be destroyed, then their job was to keep people safe by changing where they landed. Each impact caused massive damage. Heiju worried about the city, but CIA reminded her that people mattered more. Dusik disagreed, arguing that the mission was to protect the city, not the citizens. After the city lost 1/10 of its health, Eula realized they'd lose if it was wrecked, so the book holder chose to watch first. He wanted to measure city number 17's strength. Its people began to murmur, and soon it was clear they were praying to their player like a god. With that, the people of city number 17 asked their player for protection. Yulu couldn't believe what he was seeing. A spell called Hardened City formed a shield around city number 17. Because of that, their city barely lost any health. The colonel recognized the card from the records left behind in the fallen city's archives, so players could either roll dice or use cards to affect the game directly. But seeing that happen for real was a harsh reminder that they were only pieces in someone else's game. Then the small cannon at the top of the tower started turning. The ultimate cannon locked onto Yul's city, but it would take an hour before it fired. Since the barrage had paused, city number 8's military moved toward the tower, but strange objects were moving ahead of them. Smaller towers were rising from the ground, so they sped up to avoid getting trapped. Their vehicles swerved hard to dodge the incoming shots. The lieutenant lost 2 vehicles, and 1 man was injured but still refused to quit. The soldiers told their commander to press on while they handled the trap. Wang ordered them to come back alive no matter what. He finally understood why the map had started with only one structure. It could reshape itself and create towers or monsters whenever needed. The driver said the Angel of Flames should have come, but Wang shut that down. If Heiju left, the city would be left exposed. So she and the detective had to stay in the city for the entire mission. The soldiers needed to study the tower and figure out a plan. Just as Wang said they should work with city number 17, the lieutenant spotted the serpent flipping him off from the window. Then he saw the villain riding a fast red sports car and talking about making a great first impression. The serpent and his guild charged straight into the obstacles, and the masked man used his power to open a path. His venom smashed through tower after tower. The soldiers watched the young madman race ahead of them, laughing like a maniac. Wang could only hope that kind of recklessness wouldn't start trouble with the other city. There were 47 minutes and 30 seconds left before the ultimate cannon hit city number 8. More cannonballs were fired into the sky. Each cannon had its own cooldown, and the Kingdom Guild was already inside the tower when someone called out to the soldiers from behind. The newcomer guessed city number 8 was still first generation based on its design and the citizens' clothes, which immediately caught the lieutenant's interest. The stranger was a level 62 elite citizen who introduced himself as Robel von Lexus. Robel was the head of his house chosen by the Divine, and he asked the lieutenant to form an alliance to protect his city. Still, before agreeing to anything with this medieval city, Wang explained that he only represented a guild called the Armed Forces, not the city itself. The knight understood at once. City number 8 still hadn't united, just like his own city once hadn't. So von Lexus put off the alliance for now, but asked Wang to pass along a message to his city. Robert proposed a peace pact. Neither city would act with violence, and if one side attacked, the city that was harmed would decide the punishment. That meant killing would still be allowed in self-defense. Robert made it clear he was offering this only to keep his city safe, and as a sign of goodwill, he handed over a guide for clearing the mission. He said the cannon tower had been the first mission his city ever cleared, so his city had passed through the same square more than once. After that, he silently signaled his soldiers. Wang thanked the knight for his generosity and offered useful intel in return. who might help them and who could become a problem. Satisfied with the first meeting, Robel suggested they meet again at the same time tomorrow. Wang was curious why the knight didn't care about scouting the tower, but Robel told him there was no way to force the entrance. It was. The sealed door was driving the serpent crazy, so they would need to prepare first, especially since city number 8 didn't have their player's blessing. Yahello was shocked to hear that city number 17 had been playing for 150 years. Jack found it strange that MC was just sitting off to the side. The anti-hero was trying not to make himself easy to get. Then the book's power activated. That made Yael smile. He was given a task, trade an item from this world to spare 100 victims of the Greed Lord. He found the side quest strange and felt the reward wasn't enough. Still, this was a personal request from the Demon Lord. The protagonist figured Krishna, who he imagined as some ugly monster, might finally meet him face to face. Then the anti-hero suddenly slapped himself. He knew the job would be hard, but he was still glad Krishna had answered his call, so he decided to carry out the request. Yule was sure that if he kept this up, he'd meet the Demon Lord someday, and if not, he'd force him to appear. The citizens grew alarmed when they saw their threat moving through the city. Everyone went on alert. Then the NPCs started acting strangely. Yule had become the target of an invasive analysis. The time ran out, and the ultimate cannon fired. Kiju threw herself in front of the blast to stop it. The flame angel slammed into the massive cannonball. For a second, Kiju remembered her master's warning to use her power with care. But now she had to go all out to protect the city. Sia couldn't do anything here, so Yule pulled out Taflum, the legendary throne weapon said to have pierced the demon god's eye. It could be used 10 times in one mission, and the fewer shots spent, the stronger each one became. MC only needed a single throw to break the giant cannonball. He poured all of Taflum's uses for this mission into one attack. Cracks spread across the cannonball. Then it blew up in a huge explosion. Sia praised Kaiju, but Kaiju said it wasn't her. Yule had stepped in again. The blast made the Spear Maiden realize they never could have stopped that attack alone. Then the ultimate cannon started to turn. Its next shot would hit city number 17 in 1 hour. After firing, the map began to change. Walls rose from the ground, giving the soldiers new cover. The lieutenant finally started to understand the map's pattern. Using the info from their new ally, Wang came up with a plan. He told his men to regroup and board the vehicles, but the rising walls had wrecked the engine. Annoyed, the jealous man wished they had horses like city number 17. A red line suddenly streaked across the sky. Yule cut through the defense towers with ease. The book had led him to the right spot. There, he had to remove a 16-square-foot section of ground. The book even gave him exact instructions for the cut. Once it was done, Yule had to place that shaped piece on the book. The moment he did, the chunk of ground vanished. In return, he got a small reward. Still confused, he watched the carved piece appear in the Demon Lord's hand. Krishna crushed the gift at once. He looked pleased. Now the demon held a piece of the key tied to massive destruction. Because of that, he chose to protect his useful servant until he no longer needed him. Then the NPC appeared behind Yule to begin the executive analysis. Its presence outside the city caught his attention. A second later, it attacked, and the protagonist thought it was malfunctioning. That changed fast when it adjusted to his power and jumped to level 600. For the first time in a long while, Yule bled. The NPC announced the first step of invasive analysis, a physical checkup. MC was stunned by how high its level had risen. Then both of them were dragged into the quarantine zone. He fought back desperately, doing everything he could to escape the zone. But just before the exit, the NPC grabbed his leg. It told him he was banned from joining the mission. Until the invasive analysis ended, Yule would stay detained. That made him even more curious about this analysis. The NPC suspected the protagonist was a system defect or a hacker for having that much power at such a low level. Angry, MC snatched the floating book, repeated the accusation, and blamed the system for giving him the Demon Lord's book before hurling it at the NPC. The NPC said he would be tested. If he failed, he would be killed on the spot. That cold answer reminded Yule of the people from his old world. Everything was ready. Then the new adventurer guild, the Raiders, set out. They rode bicycles to save the city's last rare fuel. They weren't heading out to fight. The Raiders were there to scout the new map first. Meanwhile, cannonballs kept hammering the city. Its health had nearly dropped by 20. Sayo pointed out the non-stop damage, but Kiju said it wasn't a real problem, which left the detective curious. The Flame Angel said this wasn't the same city anymore. The police officer smiled and agreed. The old man stayed calm. Dusik explained they only had to defend the part under attack, and the Spear Maiden could even use the wall as a platform while it was still rising. One raider urgently called for help, while his guildmaster just stared at a wall in amazement. At the same time, Wang kept barking clear orders to his men. Some citizens wanted to turn the cannonballs into gear, since they were so tough, but that same toughness made them useless against Kiju. Nearby, a hooded figure studied the cannonballs. It seemed to discover something important. Ju decided to sell that new information to the highest bidder. Still, Yule the Serpent, Dusik, and many more unknowns remained wild cards. And on top of that, someone was spying on Sibu and Kiju's talk. The spy wore shadow-fit, heroic gear that turns the user invisible in darkness. City number 17 still hadn't even lost 1% of its total health. Robert was impressed by City Number 8's growth after only a month in the game. Hank Sif, a level 33 elite citizen, worried the knight had shared too much information, but level 47 Emma Hilt felt it was better for City Number 8 to grow stronger. Level 50. Kane Bjork figured they could have wiped everything out already if this weren't a droid mission. Robert told them to stay patient. Everything would happen according to their player's will. The Squiff Citizen card activated, boosting City Number 17's speed for a time decided by a 6-sided die. They got a 3-hour blessing, and Robert ordered the charge. City Number 17 rushed into battle behind him. To the knight, his city was the player's chosen people. He believed that higher being truly favored them. In his hand was the legendary one-handed sword Stormbreaker, a relic that could call down lightning. He used chained lightning and destroyed the defense towers in his path. Without their player's favor, City Number 17 could never win this giant game, no matter how strong their gear was or how high their levels became. Back in the quarantine zone, Yol struggled to break free from the NPC. It dodged his sword without taking a scratch. He guessed it had reached the max level 2, but fighting someone on his level made him face the truth. He was actually a terrible fighter. He was still a rookie, even if he'd started learning swordplay from the Goblin Swordsman just in case. That was why this fight was going so badly. It also made him wonder how long this invasive analysis would last. The NPC said it was almost certain Yule was cheating the game, so it would keep trying different methods to find the bug inside him. That was when the protagonist understood the City Guardian didn't care if he lived through the test. Left with no choice, he tried to call his only overlord for help. Nothing happened. The quarantine zone blocked all outside assistance. That made things worse. Yule had to face this monster alone. Still, he was set on getting back before the ultimate cannon aimed at City Number 8 again. The NPC kicked him in the face and resumed the invasive analysis. MC knew one easy way to beat it, but first he had to actually win the fight. Another heavy kick launched him into the air. Yulil began to lose hope. Then Brit of Karashina stepped in to help him. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Since he was still alive, the NPC moved on with the physical checkup. It charged straight at him, only to be shocked when they collided. As Yulil blocked its claws, the system told him he had gained a new skill from Brit of Karashina. He unlocked Overlord Possession, which let one Overlord take over his body in exchange for being unsummonable for the rest of the mission. That gave the protagonist the Goblin Swordsman's refined combat skill. The swordsman clearly didn't like the book's owner. Even so, Yul was now ready to thank the Demon Lord instead of attacking him on sight. At last, MC and the NPC could fight on even terms. With his new power, both sides got ready to clash again. Now he could finally keep up with the guard. A unit's true strength doesn't come from stats or gear alone. In games, low-level players with awful equipment can still crush others through pure skill. By that logic, the Goblin Swordsman's technique should be near perfect. But as Yule imagined what those skills could do with his maxed stats, the ghostly swordsman told him it was pointless. That sudden spirit form startled him. The protagonist figured it was normal for Jack to appear as a soul while possessing him, but what he said was more surprising. MC worried the NPC might simply be a better fighter than his overlord. Jack shut that down right away. He wasn't weaker. Yule was just that bad. Then he was given the choice to let the overlord control his body. His expression changed at once, and even his eyes shifted color. Then he raised his stance. The NPC braced to defend itself, but superior wind movements sliced off its arm in an instant. That movement skill let the goblin burst forward in a straight line like a storm. The NPC tried to counterattack, but Jack slipped past its claws and knocked it off balance. Then the Goblin Swordmaster moved to finish it with Celestial Wolf Fang technique, Wolf Claw Moon Strike. At the last second, Yule stopped him from killing the NPC, so Jack switched to 3 waves of Sword Aura instead. The NPC was badly damaged, but still intact. Jack snapped at the protagonist for not warning him sooner, though the protagonist never even got the chance to speak. Once the goblin spirit left his body, Yule focused on the biggest problem first. By spending 50,000 points, he could use Make Peace, a function that forgave accidental attacks on an NPC, sent it back to its spawn point, and removed its hostility. First though, the NPC had to be calmed down. That made the book holder wonder if he had cleared the first step of the invasive scan, but the silence only made him more nervous. Then a strange voice finally spoke up and said he had passed the physical exam. After that, the system moved on to the last check. Yule started wondering if more tests were coming, and if that voice was speaking from the void itself. At the same time, the lieutenant looked through the books Robert had given him. Then he chose to review the intel inside. Wang summoned his shield and said he and Minyu would lead while the others gave cover. The soldiers stared in awe at the item their lieutenant had received from the Golden Deity. Some items stayed out all the time, while others could be called in like Wang's shield, which he was clearly pleased with. His holy shield, the shield of Helden the Inquisitor, could perform miracles, but its size made getting into a car a real pain. Then Minyu and the lieutenant rushed ahead. The shield of Helden formed a divine barrier in front of them, and its strength rose with Wang's bond to his party, blocking the gunfire. With that, they pushed toward the first step of getting into the cannon tower. To reach it, they first had to enter through the side door of a mini-tower. Inside, the lieutenant found a goblin running the tower. The goblin was shot almost at once. A bullet to the head dropped it, and taking over its desk gave the attacker a low-level ID card. 100 of those could be turned into one high-level ID card. Then Guang realized the scale of the mission because it took 100 high-level cards to make a single master card. But that card could let a team of up to 10 people enter the cannon tower. So the goal was simple: make as many master cards as possible to get enough troops inside. The irritated serpent stood helpless before the main door. Then someone walked up to greet the villain. Ju had come to sell her intel to the serpent. Solju Wu, a level 17 ordinary civilian, recognized her as the runner-up from the last mission. The team wanted to skip the bargaining and go straight to threats, but Ju didn't flinch. She said this deal would decide how they treated each other from now on. To prove her skill, Ju reminded him that she placed second in the treasure hunt, and even found the heat intel on her own. Since she dared approach someone as dangerous as the serpent, Solju Wu agreed to hear her out. Pleased by her nerve, he heard her condition. If her information was useful, they would spare her. Ju then remarked that Solju must be wise, given his age. That line instantly made things tense between them. With the serpent stuck in the middle, even the great villain felt uneasy. Elsewhere, someone had gathered a pile of low-level ID cards. They started glowing in Rubble's hand. A high-level ID card was created. City number 17 now had 12 high-level ID cards, but the cost was steep: 42 dead and 123 wounded. The troops were told to stay careful, yet they were still eager to fight for their player. Even so, City number 17 now held more cards than City number 8. Suddenly Rubble started to pray. Seeing that, his archer friend did the same. The Royal Knight didn't want the citizens dying for the player. He wanted them giving their lives for him. Then they pushed forward again. Rubble thought back to how Yule was supposed to be the strongest unit in their city, yet he had been missing from the fight for far too long. To Rubble, that meant MC was refusing to help his city despite all his power, so in his eyes, he didn't deserve the strength he had. Meanwhile, inside the quarantine chamber sphere, the system removed all active effects before the next test. Yule was left unable to move by those strange rings. The inspection began, and the protagonist started to panic. The system carefully examined his memory to see if he really was a defect, who had met some unknown entity. It dug into Yule's painful memories tied to the victims of the Greed Lord. That alone made him cry. But finding nothing, the system pushed even deeper. Next, it started checking MC's life before the game began. To his shock, he found himself back at his desk. It felt like neither he nor the city had ever left. He was on the phone with his mother while using his tablet at the same time. As he asked about his father, the genius had also just reached 1,000 straight online chess wins. Then he picked up his phone to handle one more task. Yul had just earned $150 before telling his mother he was fine. Then he asked about a certain mysterious person. His mother's answer seemed to worry her son, though he insisted that person would be okay. After all, Yul believed he had always been the smarter of the two. With that, he headed off to his part-time job. Then the memory suddenly started glitching. Angry, the protagonist flat-out ordered the system not to look into his old life on Earth. To avoid damage from the rebelling unit, the system stopped the scan. In the end, it decided Yule had never met any strange entity and marked him as a normal unit. Just like that, he was sent back into the game. MC returned to the Cannon Tower map. The whole encounter had drained him. His injuries were healing again, but he hadn't expected the system to shut down his recovery, which normally only drops by half in combat. It left Yule in the same state as when he had been punished by the Demon Lord. In the end, his great power was only what the game allowed him to use, so he decided he would rise beyond the power given to the game's pawns. Then the ultimate cannon fired at City number 17, but the Black Steel Knight's shield blocked all physical damage and part of the magic damage once. Because of that, City number 17 took no real damage from the blast and kept most of its health. Yul swore that one day he'd rival or even surpass the players themselves. When a group of hunters passed by and saw the overpowered unit on the ground, they figured he was just lazing around. One citizen quickly suggested they leave before his curse hit them too. But one quiet hunter disagreed. Kim raised his sword and walked toward the protagonist. Then, to his comrade's horror, he drove the blade at Yul's throat. MC wasn't hurt at all, and he demanded to know why Kim had tried to kill him. Kim threw the accusation back, calling him a fraud. He said he had trusted the protagonist's book completely, and had even been ready to die for him. But now he had nothing left, not even the 10 points needed to save his daughter, he cried, raising his sword again. The blade snapped as he shouted that his dead child had only been 7 years old. Unharmed, Yule chose to remind him what happens to people who cross him. Kim's terrified teammates begged MC for mercy, but in an instant he used the Overlord's power and froze the man with pressure point nerve paralysis. Then the protagonist told Kim to come for his head after maxing out his stats. After that, he turned them into victims of the Greed Lord, while the father's eyes still burned with rage. Yul also warned that he would curse other innocent citizens too. Soon, the new victims of the Greed Lord were locked inside a truck. Kim apologized to his teammates, but they understood his grief. Still, they reminded him to level up and improve his gear, just like MC had said, before trying again. At his current level, Kim had no chance of avenging his daughter. So level 9 Yujin Kim swore he would grow stronger and kill Yule with his own hands. From then on, he could only picture revenge. Meanwhile, he watched the new victims from a distance. The Goblin Swordmaster couldn't understand why the protagonist punished those men instead of just leaving. MC explained that if he had walked away, Kim's rage would have boiled over and put his teammates in danger. But that wasn't his only reason. Suddenly, a huge robot burst from the ground. Yule wanted to save the men from the boss monster called Doom Machine Octopus, made from several mini-towers fused together to boost all its stats. The monster opened fire right away. These fatal boss monsters appeared on a regular cycle during the mission, but killing one with raid boss strength would give him a master card on the spot to enter the cannon tower. That was far easier than collecting 10,000 low-level cards, but the shortcut was much deadlier. So Yule called on Jack's power and drew his sword. Then he charged straight in. His target was the giant robot octopus. Using the celestial wolf fang technique, Descent of the Black Wolf, the protagonist cut through the monster with ease. Just like that, the level 5 threat fell to his blade. But Jack scolded him for wasting energy on extra moves with no focus. He warned Yule to stay sharp, or his hunger for power would drag him into Precipitation's flaws. MC thanked his overlord for the advice. Even so, he wasn't ready to use the master card yet, because once someone entered the tower, the only ways out were victory or death. So Yule chose to deal with another problem first. Jack was stunned. He hadn't expected him to break into City Number 17's castle. The king called him arrogant for storming in and demanding to meet their player. But the protagonist had come to threaten the king. He already knew City Number 17 had betrayed them, though the king kept denying it. Yule told him to stop pretending. He knew the state of the citizens, and all across City Number 17 they had already taken up their weapons. Also, Yule already knew City Number 17 had spies all through his city. Their king planned to turn on his allies right before the mission ended. The old king rose from his throne and said he could always replace his people, but none of that mattered against the book's all-seeing power. So MC gave him one last choice: help or die. The king sneered that Yule's strength had made him cocky. He said he still hadn't faced a real player. Then he activated a card duel, forcing a one-on-one battle between their units. Inside the Colosseum, the higher level was brought down to match the lower one. Level 99 City Mayor Remulos von Lexus declared that once Yule was dead, his player's plan would stay secret. Wielding Uptor, the epic greatsword of the sky god of lightning, the king rushed in and blamed the book for his downfall. To Lexus, the protagonist was just a beginner. Once his huge level was gone, he was sure he'd win now that they stood at the same level. But then MC dodged his sword with shocking speed. A second later, he struck from behind. The city mayor was launched into the air. Unlike his enemy, Yule didn't depend on raw level alone. His attack tore through the old man like a dragon, bursting through him. He said Romulos von Lexus's defeat should warn the rest, while Jack admitted the old man was still strong. Then both the protagonist and the beaten king were sent back to the palace, leaving the guards in panic. The soldiers drew their blades, but Yule told them they should be working together on this mission. Even City Number 17's player trembled after seeing his king lose. Then every soldier suddenly tensed up. That strange reaction caught MC's attention. A wave of bloodlust hit the guards all at once. The same men who hesitated before now rushed him without pause. Even the lieutenant out on the field had no idea what was going on. He watched City Number 17's units pull back fast toward their city. It was under Frenzied City now. A card that boosts all the players' units and makes them attack any outsider. An explosion suddenly ripped through the castle. You'll guess this was the trump card they meant to use later against City Number 8. To get Peter's power activated again, he quickly dodged the lightning bolts. He hadn't expected City Number 17 to play that card this early. When he landed, Yule froze in surprise. Someone was there waiting for him. In the end, those citizens were never valued units to their player, just obedient puppets. So the Green Ham used cards to raise his citizens' stats and send them all after the protagonist at once. Clearing the mission by taking the cannon tower would take a full day, and sparing City Number 17's units meant leaving City Number 8 to fight them. Jack offered to handle the bloody part for him, but Yule refused. Instead, he summoned his sword. Citizens rushed him from every side. MC chose to bear that sinful weight himself. Soon after, a massive magical blast tore through the city, and the frenzied units were cut to pieces. There was no undoing that slaughter now. Yule looked up at the sky. City Number 17's player started to panic when the system couldn't identify the attacker. Then more explosions tore across the city. At the same time, lightning bolts came crashing at him, but he blocked them easily. Then father and son charged him. Yule didn't know if they could still hear him, but he swore to avenge the city's 150 years of slavery as he killed both prince and king. Romulus couldn't believe it. His severed head gave one last look toward his player. By then, the streets were soaked in blood. Yule slaughtered City Number 17 citizens alone until nightfall. By the end, he was drenched in human blood. Jack checked on him, and the protagonist admitted he wasn't okay. He had prepared himself for this massacre, but the guilt still hit hard, so he forced himself to move past it. City Number 8 couldn't clear the mission alone, which meant Yule had to do it himself. Then a system message appeared. Player Number 17 had lost all his units, and if they couldn't be brought back, he would be reduced to a City Eater, a max-level boss. That revelation stunned MC. It made him realize players weren't the highest power in this game. Number 17's player was now cast out of the system, stripped of his rank, and turned into a City Eater. His eyes flashed red as the final notice came in. Then the City Eater raised a massive hammer to crush City number 8, while his former player hesitated. He looked through his deck of cards. One could roll a die and move his city away, but it would cost every reward from this mission. Yule charged the giant monster. Meanwhile, their player was about to use that card. Hagyu and Seo tried to save the city too. Hope was almost gone as the giant hammer dropped toward them. Then a golden hand stopped. In the end, he chose not to use the card, and the hammer smashed down on his city. City number 8 was torn apart, but Yule survived, his book glowing red. He couldn't believe he was still alive after his city fell, but what shocked him more was the figure standing before him. He attacked at once, and the demon lord stopped him with one finger. Then Yule began remembering their first and last meeting. Now he remembered everything. The book's owner had judged him worthy and decided to keep his promise. A cold silence filled the white room. The protagonist's first thought was for the other citizens. The demon lord told him they were all dead. At that, the lone survivor dropped to his knees. Krishna explained that normal units could never beat a city eater. Their city had been doomed from the start, because only players could stop one. Yule exploded in anger and demanded answers about the game and its players. He also asked why he alone survived. The demon lord said he knew the answers, but this wasn't the time. MC had little time left if he wanted to bring his city back. That shook him to his core. Krishna summoned a glitched item to prove it. Reviving city number 8 was possible. That caught Yule's full attention. He stopped questioning the book's owner. After all, he had already lost everything. Glitching fragments began wrapping around his sword. Krishna gave Yule his power so he could kill the city eater, and only then would the greed lord bring everyone back. He watched his sword glow purple. Even so, beating that giant thing with one blade sounded absurd, and then he found himself in space, face to face with the fallen player number 17. The city eater swung its giant weapon at once, and actually landed a hit on Yule. The blow triggered a huge blast that hurled him away. Even after surviving, the protagonist could still feel the impact deep in his bones. Krishna told him city eaters were the strongest beings in the game. Even players avoided them. By pushing his own power to the edge, he had raised Yule to that same level. That only made MC angrier, since the demon lord was basically saying the loss would be all on him. Then he saw the fallen player activate another card. It used summon meteors, calling down a number of meteors based on a 12-sided die. The protagonist still managed to dodge and parry every rock flying at him. According to the book's owner, Yule now stood equal to that player, and even his gear and skills now matched the power of player cards. MC had fused with his overlord and slammed a crushing hit into the city eater's face. The fallen player's mask cracked. The monster crashed to the ground, but Yule was thrown off guard. Giant tentacles burst out and tried to crush him. He cut down 2 of them, then asked the greed lord something. It was about players. Yule wanted to know if they all looked this monstrous. Krishna said no. Players all differ in appearance, thinking, behavior, and cards. Then the city eater used thunderstorm, filling a wide area with lightning. Bolts started raining down from the sky. Thunderstorm struck the protagonist. In that moment, Yule realized there were city eaters even stronger than this one. That thought disappointed him. As he knocked aside the lightning, he figured things would be a lot easier if every player was like this city eater. That caught the demon lord's interest. Using telepathy, Yule called the king's and prince's swords from city number 17 and took control of them, boldly saying their former player was weak. Even with plenty of cards left, the fallen player kept staying far from him. That meant the creature feared close combat with a unit. Then it used city-like bombardment, which calls down heavy shells to wipe out a small target like Yule. The protagonist started moving his fingers to control the other 2 swords, as he realized something important. This thing had never fought anyone head-on, which was why it wasted strong cards so carelessly. It had a huge body and a deadly stack of cards, but little else. Yule slid to the right, and a huge blast went off behind him. At the last second, he used a free warp ticket to escape. The demon lord noticed MC was taking his time getting close instead of charging straight in. He was trying to shake the monster mentally and force it to burn through its hand. Mindless non-stop attacks were useless, the greed lord said, as Yule prepared to finish it. Then a heroic sword stabbed the fallen player. Right after that, he activated chain lightning. The creature convulsed as lightning tore through it. Yule asked if it enjoyed copying the divine. He had been using the weather orb, a legendary item that can control the weather in a small area for a short time. The protagonist answered with Jupiter's skill Overcharge, which absorbs nearby lightning but hurts the user if it takes in too much. The creature started to shake. MC wasn't even holding the heroic sword. He was moving it with telepathy. That let him use a different kind of attack. Yule then fired off a huge bolt of lightning, dealing massive damage to the abomination. The hit became 4 times stronger thanks to Overcharge, Jupiter, and Electric Shock. On top of that, Rage of the Thunder God let the heroic blade release all the power it had stored at once. That finally brought the battle to an end. The player was left with its insides spilling out. Even so, Yule was shocked that the monster was still alive. He wanted to study it like a test subject, but to restore his fallen city, he had to kill it. So he drove his sword into the city eater. The creature immediately began to crack apart. But Yule didn't expect the monster's remains to gather around his sword. The owner of the book told him to step back a little. he still had one more job for the protagonist. Then the city eater's flesh started to shift and twist. A confused MC soon found himself staring at a perfect round egg. Then it suddenly began to hatch. A horned man came out of the egg, and Yule wondered if this had been the plan from the start. The man started breathing again after he emerged, and the greed lord Krasina said he smelled just as foul as ever. He, though, only cared about him keeping his side of the magic deal. So Yule got ready for combat, until the ruins of his city suddenly began to move. Piece by piece, everything came back together. Just like that, city number 8 was restored. The protagonist could hardly believe what he was seeing, but the streets were still empty. That made him suspect the greed lord was hiding something, but the entity simply told him to wait. The power taken from the city eater could rebuild city number 8, but bringing back its people would require Krasina to absorb more. Yule still believed the demon lord was hiding his real strength, especially after everything he had consumed so far. The entity looked genuinely surprised. MC figured the city gains experience when units trade in their points, pushing it to the next level, which likely gives players the currency they use to buy cards. To him, that was the only explanation for how resources kept cycling through the game, and how players got plans and cards. But then Yule wondered where all the points he had spent had gone, if the city never evolved. In his mind, there could only be one answer. That made the demon lord burst into wild laughter. He couldn't help admiring his sharp mind. Krasina was stunned that, after losing everything and fighting a fallen player, the protagonist could still see the bigger picture. That led Yule to guess the entity had met their player before, when his glowing sword suddenly appeared right in front of him. The demon lord admitted he had the power needed, but said he was saving it for later. Still, he asked MC to trust him, and promised he would keep his word. Then released a huge blast of wind. It threw him off. A moment later, he was floating above his restored city. Then the demon lord told him to look closely, pointing out what the game really looked like. Yule was shocked. None of this had appeared while he fought the city eater, but there was a simple reason. The game only lets you see what you're meant to see. Then a new sense opened inside the protagonist, and he found himself facing another giant being. In front of that mountain of flesh, Yule looked like a tiny pebble. The demon lord explained that he still needed to consume 3 more fallen players. Once those 3 were dead, every unit in city number 8 would return, just as promised. Then the city would fully re-enter the game, and the demon lord of greed would become its new player. The city eater then used a card to give itself flight. That let it rush straight at Yule. Its speed caught him off guard. Then several heads burst out from the city eater. The creature split itself into multiple bodies. Yule worried he might have to fight 3 fallen players at once. What shocked him even more was that they used one card to create 3 non-elemental shields, sharing protection and damage between them, which meant the 3 were really one. Suddenly 2 of the monsters smashed toward each other, with MC trapped between them, struggling not to be crushed. The third used a card to arm itself with a blade. Yule found the strategy interesting. The 3 bodies shared buffs, but not the longsword. The demon lord said that, just like humans, every player has different abilities. Then he warned him not to fail, because the city eaters had already lost the game. If the protagonist failed to kill them, nothingness would be waiting for him too. But Yule, busy fighting for his life, snapped back and told the greed lord to revive the citizens. So Prekshinate told him to relax. Everything was already set. Jayu and Haiju were confused, since they were supposed to be somewhere else, when the demon lord suddenly spoke to them. At the same time, every citizen felt an unknown pressure pressing down on them. The entity introduced himself as Krishna, the one who had brought them back. No one could stand as he declared himself their new player. The serpent figured he had to be one of the game's top bosses, but when the greedy teenager declared he'd kill him to gain ultimate power, he suddenly froze. No one knew whether he stopped on his own or was held in place. It felt like time itself had stopped. The new player ordered them to listen in silence. Their lives, he said, now stood between survival and ruin. They could enter the white gate and keep living, or walk through the black gate and pass on peacefully. Once the gates opened, each human would choose their own fate. Some thought Krishna was asking them to kill themselves, yet the idea didn't seem entirely awful if it meant escaping this cruel game. Still, one person raised a hand to ask a question. The demon lord allowed it. It was the dragon warrior. While she, the detective, the inspector, and the lieutenant forced themselves upright under the pressure, she asked when the gates would open. Dusik, the colonel, and many others also wanted to return to the fight. The new player watched them quietly, then snapped his fingers and summoned a screen showing Yule battling the city eater. Everyone was stunned to see him on the screen. Hiju focused on MC's enemy, as the greed lord explained that the gates would open once MC won. He then showed the city eaters clearly and called them the disaster waiting for everyone, if they chose to return to life. So the humans had to think carefully, because the greed lord had no use for people who feared the impossible. Yule slammed into the giant charging barrier while the other 2 came at him from behind. Then he activated Gravity Ball, a skill that pulls everything in range to one point with intense force. All 3 city eaters were dragged together at once, and they crashed into each other. As Yule cut through the city eaters, he emerged from beneath their piled bodies. Then he lifted his sword for the last blow and split the monstrous wall of tentacles in half. The 3 city eaters were finally killed by him. Exhausted, Yule then planted his sword into the second fallen player, and the tentacles vanished into nothing. That battle taught the protagonist he wouldn't be able to heal while fighting these monsters. It was one more reminder that time was against him. Calling on the Overlord's power, he asked for the next fallen player. Something suddenly began to emerge from the fog. This was the fourth enemy. If this city eater died, every citizen would be brought back. To improve its odds, the creature used several cards at once, before charging at its tiny target. Hiju feared for Yule, while the lieutenant was stunned by the power of the enemy they might soon face. Watching even small units struggle against it, pushed the citizens into despair. The monster's axes slammed down. Since this fallen player only fought at close range, MC could think of many ways to beat it, but he was running out of time. He even managed to block the giant weapon with his own sword. So in the end, Yule chose to let Jack possess him, handing the duel to the true fighter, who instantly struck the giant creature. The city eater bled and screamed in pain. The master swordsman was amazed by the insane battles he kept throwing him into, including this one. But when Yule tried to give advice, Jack refused it right away, because the goblin could already see the path of his blade perfectly. Before long, blood covered him as he carved through the massive monster again and again. The citizens watched in silent awe. The last city eater fell to the protagonist's blade, and so the humans were free to choose either gate. Every unit could face a brutal life ahead or accept a peaceful death. Yule returned to city number 8, but its streets were still empty. Krishinev told him he had kept his promise. As the citizens made the choice only they could make, the city itself was still outside the game. Yule asked if the cannon mission was still active, and the new player said yes, the mission still wasn't finished. But city number 8's original player had abandoned them after his game piece was destroyed. Krishinev had stepped in at that moment, yet he had been powerless to stop the city's fall. In other words, even the great demon lord could do nothing, because he was still only a beginner. Before losing the game, players were given a countdown, and Yule used that time to kill the city eaters. Then a hard glass object appeared in the new player's hand as he explained that the other units used the countdown to choose between life and death. City number 8 then began rising from the empty square. Just like that, the city resumed its place in the game. The cannon mission would start again in 1 hour and 6 minutes. Yule was happy with the time they had left. The demon lord also said no one would fall victim to the greed lord anymore. He claimed he didn't need victims, now that he owned city number 8. But Yule shut that down. As far as Yule was concerned, the city belonged to the people who came back to fight for it. Now every unit was back in the game. That included the angry serpent and his followers. Yule and the raiders returned to the cannon map too. The odd one liked how things turned out. But then a massive blast went off. The Angel of Flames had destroyed too many towers. As something moved toward her, the ground suddenly began to shake. The difficulty 5 boss appeared, the Doom Machine Earthworm, built from countless towers. Hiju quickly told everyone not to catch the boss's attention while the Earthworm chased her across the map. At last, the giant enemy moved into place. The trap hit hard, and the huge machine beast lost its head. The Spear Maiden praised her partner's aim, but Yule gave the credit right back, saying her strength made it possible. Then he asked her to guard the city since the mission was almost over. Using his MasterCard, Yule entered the cannon tower, a place he couldn't leave until the challenge ended. With that, he stepped inside the tower. On the first floor, the city of minor goblins, Yule was let down by all the wasted resources. The player told him to think bigger. Then he used the headhunt card, which sends one of his units in the same dungeon straight to the boss. Krishna said it was all for the final win. A goblin in a giant machine suddenly attacked Yule and tried to bury him in bullets. Yule vanished from sight, so the goblins thought he was dead and started celebrating. That ended fast when they learned their boss at the top of the cannon tower had been killed moments later. Yule had already cut down the level 6 boss, Multi-Brain. He ignored every other monster and went straight for the one kill that secured victory for city number 8. After that, Yule was teleported back. Everyone outside the city was sent home as well. All eyes turned to the man who used to be the greatest villain. Yule ignored the stairs and kept walking until someone called out to him. A mysterious container was handed to Yule. It was a small gift, the people's way of showing their thanks. Yule accepted it politely, and then flew away. As they watched him disappear, Eugene Kim said they weren't brought back by hope, but by their strong wish to see Yule as a rotting corpse. The city now had 24 hours to rest before the next mission. The book's owner and its wielder stood alone atop the tallest tower. Yule was glad everyone had returned and that no one would ever be used by the Greed Lord again. Then Yule suddenly tried to cut down the Demon Lord with a sneak attack, but Christina was curious why the blade never reached him. Yule already knew this Demon Lord was only a projection. He then said he still had a use for the Greed Lord, which caught the player's interest. Yule was surprised when the player who wanted him to reach the end of the game let him choose their next move. He was also a little embarrassed when the Demon Lord pointed out that Yule knew city number 8 better than anyone and clearly had something planned for their new player. Even though it wouldn't be easy, the Greed Lord agreed to grant the request as a favor to his new game piece. Then the whole city began to shake. Buildings started floating into the air, leaving everyone confused. A unit training center was a building a player could make in their city, so units could train against fake enemies. It gave no rewards, but it did let them gain experience without risking their lives. Still, this training center was different. because it could send units to real maps where they could earn rewards by putting their lives on the line. The book's owner and wielder were now in the control center of this new structure. The setup was finished. Yuul made special training plans for the city's strongest units, but he needed the right maps to use them. With the special training center, top fighters like the Spear Maiden could finally start their training. Speaking through the mic, Yuul told her they only had 18 hours left. Making the program took time, but thanks to the Greed Lord, time would flow differently for Hiju. She would spend a full year on the training map, and if she needed to retreat, or if something went wrong, the Dragon Warrior could break the hard glass to bring her back. Still, this wasn't the only way to grow stronger, so Yuul told her to stay careful out there. For her special training, the Angel of Flame was sent to the land of the dormant sun. Determined, she set out to finish her training. Her goal was to earn the respect of Prominence, the owner of the weapon she used. As for the two detectives, in the Forsaken Mountain of the Old Kings, Seo and Dusuk had to find the vessels of Wonsa and Wusa. The lieutenant and his team were sent to the Mausoleum of Dormant Demons for their special training, where they had to fight terrifying demons while trying to awaken the master of that map and inherit his will. For the next training, the insolent serpent asked to be released from the unit training center while flipping his middle finger, but he paused when Yuul offered him one last chance. The wishing orb the teen carried could turn toward light or darkness based on his karma. In simple terms, it could become a righteous dragon or an evil serpent if he chose hatred. Usually that choice took time, but making it now would save them plenty of it. He was free to leave the training center, so the young man stopped to think. He didn't care about the others' training, but he hated how Yuul judged him. So he chose darkness for his wishing orb, and his training began. The young man couldn't believe what he saw. He had been dropped into the deadly map called Venom of the Wishing Serpent, where his only goal was to survive. With that, the main units began their training, and Yuul made virtual spaces for the rest of the citizens to improve too. The Raiders Guildmaster wanted to run the Ogre mission again, but his crew was far less eager after getting crushed last time. Meanwhile, in room 306, Kem wanted to simulate a fight against Yuul, so the system asked if he wanted to lower the target's absurd level. Kem refused. He wanted his prey at full strength and started an impossible training session. While MC watched the key unit's progress, he turned to the most important questions for the Greed Lord. First, Yuul wanted to know what the Greed Lord really was. Since he wasn't exactly a demon lord or a player, Christina brushed the question aside. To him, the only thing that mattered was getting City Number 8 back to Earth. He assured Yuul that he spoke only the truth. Yuul wasn't shocked that the entity dodged the question, but he had his own theory that caught the Greed Lord's attention. Yuul wanted to learn more about the city's first player. He asked if abandoning the city instead of losing everyone was a way to avoid becoming a city eater. But the new player said the old one still controlled some units. That realization stunned Yuul. The former player of City Number 8 had another game piece that explained why he never cared much about them and abandoned the city so easily. The Golden Hand had used City Number 8 to farm resources for his first game piece, and because the Greed Lord's victims kept his gains low, he had no problem throwing City Number 8 away. Yuul's guess was right, though not every player gets more than one piece. The Golden Hand, now over game piece number 43, was a special kind of entity. The units had been slaughtered, with only a few still standing. 3 cities had joined forces to bring one enemy down, and still couldn't get close to beating it. Then someone walked toward the wounded man. The terrified units feared the figure nearby. The old samurai answered with Thousand Blossoms in the Sky, a battle art that unleashed a storm of powerful strikes. But with a single swing of his sword, the old samurai was stabbed through the heart and died. Even at the end, he couldn't understand how the blue-eyed knight read his moves. Seeing that, the cowboy raised his legendary rifle, Pioneering Spirit, once used by an explorer who conquered a continent, and known for dealing huge damage to non-human foes. He used the battle art Spaghetti Western, letting him fire without wasting bullets and cutting down reload time. But the bloody sword knocked the shot aside. The bullet came back and killed the cowboy instead, driven by the monster sword straight through his head. Then the masked knight tried to strike from behind, but the blue-eyed knight simply kept walking away, leaving his sword buried in the last warrior's throat and the dying man utterly confused. He couldn't tell whether the blue-eyed knight had seen through his plan or lured him into a trap. The masked swordsman was lost and terrified. Even after fighting them for a week, this army had never spoken, not even to each other. With that, the masked knight took his final breath. City number 99 was called the White City of Silence, and its strongest unit was Yun Choi, its maxed-out, unbeatable mayor. As the rest period ended, the player rolled the dice. The city landed on the Dungeon Rush Square, where the random dungeon mission was to kill the boss inside. When the countdown hit 0, the dungeon gates would open and unleash a wave of monsters. Dungeon Rush was a joint mission, so another city landing on the same kind of square would also be called into the map. Yuul noted that this was their city's first time being summoned to another square. So City number 8 joined City number 32 for a 5-day joint mission, and the challenge began. Yuul decided to use his main item. He combined the Red of Karshana with his status window and made every dungeon's info public, ranking them from D to A. Then he went to City number 32 and asked to work together. Its agreed lord said his units could handle the mission without help. But Yule didn't see the citizens as Karshana's property. He wanted to send as many people back to Earth as he could, so he was set on helping them. So the agreed lord thought back to what happened with city number 17. If one disaster had been enough to stop him, he never would have made it this far. Amused, the player wanted to see how long the protagonist would keep believing that. Then in game piece number 32, the book's owner was caught off guard. Even after Yule shared data on the mission, the other side still refused to cooperate. Carlson Bounder, the drunk level 97 mayor, had already given up on his city ever winning the game. City number 32 had lost its best units, lacked gear and supplies, and was down to only 1,000 citizens. With no hope left, he told MC to focus on his own city. Seeing how broken the man was, Yule knew talking more would change nothing, so he chose a different plan. Carlson Bounder was sure city number 8 would end up just like his city. After he reached the White City of Silence and its terrifying mayor, meanwhile, inside the top-ranked dungeon called a Fragment of the Abyss, the level 5 boss sealed Fenrir, the giant wolf that hated the gods, faced the Angel of Flames. The Spear Maiden had gained new skills after spending a full year fighting the owner of her fang. Then draconic wings burst from her back. Before Haiyu could only borrow the dragon's power, Fenrir felt a huge threat coming from that one girl. Now the Spear Maiden could even take on dragon traits herself. The giant wolf started casting, raising ice spikes across the dungeon, but a small light shone behind the thick ice. The monster didn't have time to react, and Prominence's flames swallowed the great wolf, clearing the A-rank dungeon. Most of the credit went to Fenrir's slayer. Krishina was pleased by his unit's sudden growth and said he was right to leave her training to the protagonist. Still, the Greed Lord grew curious when he saw Yule deep in thought. The protagonist was troubled that he couldn't win over the other game pieces, but player number 8 was happy enough that they weren't getting in the way. MC was sure city number 32 would not survive this mission without their help, so Krishina told him to say what he wanted from his master, which irritated the independent young man. Yule wanted to conquer their city. That idea pleased greedy player number 8. At that moment, someone stepped out of a dungeon. The ruins collapsed behind the Angel of Flames, who was already wondering about the next one when something caught her eye. A giant entity was fighting a strange figure in the air. The player used a card that launched magic missiles, which never missed, but Yule easily cut through them. According to the Greed Lord, a player only leaves their astral form after becoming a city eater, after losing the game, or after being challenged by another player to a one-on-one fight. Player number 32 accepted the PvP match. Usually both sides had to agree, but Krishina could force the other side to accept the challenge. Player number 32 started bleeding after taking a critical hit. Yule gathered all his strength into his palm and drove his blade even deeper into the creature's flesh. With that, player number 32 was defeated by him. Then the Greed Lord, who normally took resources by tearing cities apart, was asked to decide what would happen to the defeated city, but he chose to keep the fallen city intact, as a favor to his strongest desperate unit. Yule said he wasn't desperate, so Krishina reminded him that he was the one who asked. The Greed Lord usually absorbed the fallen player's essence, but that hardly mattered. That energy was worthless compared to the lost fragment of the key. The protagonist then remembered how the Greed Lord used those fragments to get around the game's strict rules, which made him think of it as a hack. After winning, the player told his unit to handle all the dungeons transferred to city number 8 after city number 32 fell. The Spear Maiden was stunned as the system flooded her with dungeon alerts. The colonel said the number of active dungeons had now doubled. Even so, Yule looked completely calm. He believed the citizens were skilled enough to clear them, and with his guidance, the mission would be easy to finish. But the Greed Lord asked if that included everyone who hated him, and MC quietly made it clear it didn't. This game piece seemed headed for a bright future. Meanwhile, someone used the card called Observing Eye to gather intel on it. But the cunning Greed Lord used his power, stopping the Golden Hand from spying on his city. Old player number 8, who turned out to own the White City of Silence, seemed to have a plan. He wanted to reveal Karshina's personal information to every other player, and soon his city landed on the Cache Burglar Square. A goblin got punched hard in the face. Even so, the greed monster grinned and mocked the detective, because he still had to catch all the other goblins. If not, the monsters would keep every point and item they stole from the city. With so many places to hide, the goblin felt confident, but then a huge, scary man with a torch stopped him. The first confused goblin was caught by a police officer. The second was pinned under Jeyu's foot. The goblins couldn't understand how the units kept finding them so fast. It was all thanks to Yule's power. Things started running smoothly. The city units, his plans, and the Book of the Greed Lord let them clear missions on their own. After each mission, they used Karshina's player rights to improve the city, creating things like the Cornfield of Resilience. They also collected items that could bend the game's rules, and tracked down fallen players to make their own players stronger. During joint missions, the units from the magic city of Butchin could hardly believe what they were seeing. They watched their players get killed and defeated. City number 8 hunted the other players in joint missions so their cities could be merged together. They even got the units to train between missions. Because of that, city number 8 grew fast. From then on, the units no longer needed Yule's plans to clear missions. After that, the next disasters came only during peaceful times. City number 8 landed on a battle square, so 4 cities were thrown onto the same map and told to wipe each other out. The lieutenant feared missions like this. Dursuk asked whether the fight would be between units or between the cities themselves, but Seth didn't care. They were being forced to kill other human beings. Eiju had dreaded this day coming, but the young villain welcomed the fight. This kind of mission suited him best. Yul stayed silent. Karshina said that even with the protagonist's strength, he couldn't fight 3 players at once, and suggested killing them one by one. The protagonist took that to mean he was supposed to stand by and watch the slaughter. The Greedlord found that ironic, but MC reminded him this was before they reached an agreement, so he chose to deal with the enemy units first. But Yul was left confused when all 3 cities moved at once and charged together at city number 8. The 3 players had apparently decided to team up, so player number 8 used Wall of Stone to protect his city. A massive stone wall rose from deep underground, shocking every enemy unit. Yul knew they couldn't stay on defense forever, so he had to kill the 3 players quickly. The amused Greedlord had expected that answer. He summoned another fragment of the key, and the other player accepted a one-on-one battle. The Greedlord chose to grant his strongest unit's reckless wish. The 3 players threw their cards at Yul, but he dodged them with ease. After landing the first hit, he said the first blood decides victory. He was racing against time. He needed to kill one of the 3 players as fast as possible. Then the player suddenly vanished from beneath him. Karshina realized the players weren't actually working together. They had used the card called Shrink, trading health for greater speed. With that boost, one player rushed straight at Yul. The protagonist struggled to shove the giant creature away, and got smashed into the ground. Then the player flew off. Yul had taken heavy damage and could barely believe it, when the second player suddenly appeared and dashed at him. Meanwhile, the third creature carefully watched and planned its next move. It kept observing as a huge burst of energy went off. Then the players saw a bright light behind the thick dust. The first player had been slashed. Yul's rescuer looked surprised. Jack was amazed that his attacks worked on players, and MC explained that Jack's skills and gear were on the same level as a player's cards. That included the Overlord's skills too. Even so, the Goblin Swordsman still couldn't match him or a fallen player, according to the Greedlord. Then all 3 monsters attacked at once. Karshina thought it would be better to let Jack possess his strongest unit, and that made him curious about what Yul would do next. The stones started to break apart. Everyone got ready to fight when the Greedlord's wall began to collapse. Wong saw the soldier beside him shaking with fear. The lieutenant told him he could fall back, since they were about to fight other humans. But the man stayed where he was and refused to abandon his team. At last, the wall came down. The 3 armies charged in to wipe out the people of city number 8. But as they entered the breach, they found one man waiting for them. It was the serpent, ready to spill the first blood of the battle. The front line suddenly froze. Those in the back were confused when they saw them running to the rear. The villain had activated his terrifying power. His poison drained people down to bone bags while he stole all their experience. Anyone left alive was either screaming in pain or begging to die. The teen's orb gained evil karma when he chose not to end the suffering man, and that gave him enough points. That was the start of the Merciless One's evolution. At the same time, Jack was dueling the players with his sword skills. All 3 opponents were strong, but a real enemy can teach more than time ever could. So the Overlord stopped holding back in this battle. As he clashed with a player, a huge bolt of lightning formed overhead. One player raised an elemental shield that blocked magic well, but physical attacks could still break through. Yul started gaining ground against one of them, but the third player used a card to protect his ally. Krishna watched a huge blast erupt right in front of him. He could tell the Overlord was close to breaking, and city number 8 couldn't stand against 3 cities at once. Even so, Yul looked like he was waiting for something. That caught the Greedlord's attention. Then a man dressed like an Italian gangster stepped through the wall. Old Man Park was surprised when the stranger greeted him in Italian, and even more stunned to learn Jung and Kim was actually South Korean, which made the outfit even stranger. The newcomer said the look matched his player's taste. Then he told them to surrender, saying their player clearly didn't value the city. The old man was taken aback. As he promised them a painless death, the serpent suddenly appeared behind Jung and Kim. The vicious teen who loved hearing people suffer drove his venom claws through the man. Blood splashed across his face, and he enjoyed every second of it. Then the serpent went wild and started slaughtering the enemy forces, but his poison gas was hurting city number 8's citizens too. The blood-crazed high schooler didn't care at all. So the Angel of Flames had to step in, reminding him they were on the same side. To her shock, the serpent casually blocked her fang of prominence. Then he let out a beast-like scream that alarmed everyone. After stacking enough evil karma, the high schooler evolved into a corrupt serpent. Seeing that, Kaiju told Park to get the citizens out. Things were already bad enough, and the young villain had somehow made them worse again. The Wall of Stone had protected the city from 3 armies, but the corrupt serpent tore through it with no trouble. The crazed monster then tried to devour the Angel of Flames. Mayors Miyamoto Kojiro and Sanctual Don Carleo mocked city number 8, thinking they had destroyed their own wall on purpose. Then the old samurai summoned his own dragon, and the 2 giant reptiles squared off. Miyamoto Kojiro was sure his beast would win, but before he could finish boasting, his lizard's severed head dropped in front of him, leaving both him and sensual Don Carleo speechless. Yule had stepped in at the last second and cut down the green reptile. He had waited calmly for the young villain to evolve. After that, he told Haiju to go back and protect the city. She hesitated, worried about how badly he was hurt. Then the beast tried to strike him from behind, but Yule smashed it away with one heavy blow. With a strange look on his face, he finally decided to deal with the villain properly. Krishna urged him to hurry if he really had a plan, because their decoy couldn't keep the players busy much longer. Then, as the red player destroyed one of the copies, the Greed Lord threw 3 javelins to wound all 3 enemies. Still, his strongest unit wasn't answering him. Nearby, several enemy mayors could only stare in disbelief. Yule kept hammering the corrupt serpent with brutal punches. As he beat him into a mess, the protagonist admitted he was glad the villain became a serpent instead of a good dragon. That sight terrified the invaders, while MC explained the wishing orb turns its user into either a corrupt serpent or a dragon based on their actions. He had been afraid the villain might regret his evil and become a dragon. Luckily, the serpent had been rotten both in the game and in the real world. That sent the beast's fear to its limit, which let Yule make him his second overlord. And just like that, the high schooler Sun Wong Kang was absorbed into the book as his most dangerous familiar. The invaders were left speechless. With a wild look, the protagonist turned to them and asked if they still wanted to fight, sending them trembling with fear. Meanwhile, Jack was exhausted from battling the broken blade. The overlord muttered that his master had taken long enough. Then the red player suddenly took heavy damage. Yule apologized for the delay, saying recruiting the new evil overlord had taken longer than expected. Once players reach a certain point, they start building setups made to fit their own skills and style. It's basically how main characters make unique builds. Then the serpent bit his master on the neck. That move gave huge power but put the user's life at risk. Yule let the second overlord's venom infect him, choosing a high-risk, high-reward style. His new familiar possessed him at once, and MC activated Avatar of Self-Destruction. The skill poisoned him, so he would take damage over time, but his stats would rise enough to butcher the player. Krishna was glad to see the enemy fall. Then the old man vanished from the battlefield. The Greed Lord had just gained a new game piece. The serpent's passive was wrecking Yule's body, but the worse it got, the stronger he became. For him, this was the biggest gamble of his life. He struck the second player from behind, making it shriek in pain. His blade even pierced the creature's shell. Then Yule used his new power to form a spike from a different poison, not the villain's own, but the third player's barrier suddenly smashed into him from the side. The Goblin Swordmaster looked stunned when he saw the corrupt serpent's poison completely freeze the player in place. It didn't just stop the creature, it weakened it badly too. He then told Jack to look up. The first overlord now held another sword. Just like that, the master swordsman gained a heroic class blade. The poison on the red player would wear off soon, and Jack was also shocked to find Yule standing on his shoulder. Poisoned or not, the goblin felt his strength surging as his stats doubled. The red player was about to move again, but Jack used the new sword to kill him on the spot. That had been far too close for the first overlord. But then the goblin coughed up blood. A strange poison mix knocked the green warrior unconscious. At the same time, Yule turned to face the third player. This was the final enemy. The ugly creature stacked several shields to strengthen a barrier that would keep repairing itself unless those shields were destroyed. So the protagonist had to break the barrier and the shields at the same time. The serpent's passive made casting harder by damaging Yule and raising the harm he took, all in exchange for more stats, but he still needed even more power. The Greed Lord watched from afar. Krishna realized that even though MC usually chose the safest plans for everyone else, he never hesitated to risk his own life. That made the player wonder, was it guilt, or just who he really was? He wanted the young man to use his mind to the fullest, so it disappointed him to see Yule holding back his own potential. The protagonist was buried under negative effects now, but each one gave him more strength. Then the last player rushed him head-on. The collision sent out a massive shockwave. Yule lost plenty of stats from all the status effects, but he accepted that cost to keep Avatar of Self-Destruction active. The shaken monster tried to run, but MC told it to stay still. He was right at his limit, and with one cut, he split the barrier and sliced the creature in half. Just like that, the wielder of the book killed his final foe. Then the people of the defeated cities were teleported away. Now the Greed Lord held the fate of city number 28, city number 77, and city number 90 in his hands. With that, 3 players were defeated, and Yule was finally free from the second overlord's power. Jack came over to check on him, and he said he'd recover soon. Then he chose to give his first overlord a petter as an apology for making him risk his life. Jack gladly accepted the heroic class sword. He also noticed the spirit of the new overlord, and even with his awful nature, Yule believed they would need him. But that wasn't the only reason the protagonist took this second overlord. A corrupt serpent that failed its drive couldn't keep the wishing orb. In other words, that epic item was about to get a new owner, and that person was none other than the vengeful one. The Greed Lord looked confused. Dusik wore the same expression. Jawido thought it was strange too. To Yule's surprise, the mission was still active. Then player number 8 got a notification. A new game piece had entered the field, and it was the White City of Silence. Yule couldn't believe what he was seeing. Even the Greed Lord hadn't expected this reunion so soon. Krishna was now facing the former player number 8, the one he both hated and admired, the one who reached the end of the game with him. The new player number 8 wanted MC to defeat his old enemy. He quickly noticed how restless the Greed Lord had become, so he decided to finish this as fast as possible. But to Yule and the book wielder's surprise, the player versus player auction was shut down. That was because of Sanctuary's effect, a card that stopped one-on-one battles between players, followed by Absolute Seal, which temporarily sealed the Greed Lord. The speed and combo of those cards were incredible. The 3 defeated players had only been bait to make City number 8 reveal its methods. Now Yule and Jack had their hands tied. They would have to risk their lives in direct combat as player number 99 stood face-to-face with player number 8. Krishna pointed out that the Golden Hand always plays it safe, so he used cards to erase his old city for good. Still, he never thought they'd find him this fast while his setup was still in progress. The Greed Lord's eyes burned with hatred and bitterness. He might have to abandon City number 8 himself. At the same time, Jack and Yule hurried to deal with the city mayor as fast as they could. The hack could only be used by players and their fallen versions, but the protagonist didn't care. He believed he was strong enough to face City number 99 without it, so he asked Krishna's writ for a list of that city's units. Yule went straight to the list's strongest enemy unit first, and what he saw left him stunned. Down below, the lieutenant and his platoon moved quietly, until arrows suddenly rained in, and Guang barely blocked them with his shield. The lieutenant was shocked that the enemy had already read all their plans. At the center of City number 8, at that very same moment, a tornado formed and revealed the epic one-handed sword Homosu, the Sword of Wana, a divine blade tied to the being who founded a nation after reaching Earth. Its power could block lesser gods' abilities, leaving the detective stunned. Then Dusik grabbed the weapon straight out of its wielder's hand, only to realize the hand was empty. The sword had already passed to another unit. As enemies pinned him down, Dusik understood they could share equipment. Xiaobru panicked when he saw his partner smashed into the ground. Dusik could tell the enemy struck with perfect timing and accuracy. Even after getting the upper hand, the detective felt like they were fighting one shared mind. Meanwhile, Naogi and his partner stood back-to-back, surrounded by the White City of Silence's units. Seeing his partner under attack made Xiaobru furious. Dusik suggested retreating because they were outnumbered, but Xiaobru warned it wouldn't be easy. Then the enemy units raised their swords, and Xiaobru with Dusik braced for a long fight. But out of nowhere, a wall of green poison shielded them. The 2 policemen were confused. That move belonged to the Gone Serpent. The caster opened a path through the poison. Kim, the Wishing Orb's new owner, struggled to hold the spell and told them to run. The policemen were stunned that a total stranger was using an item that powerful. As the sun set, Haiju fought hard to protect her home. But with a single swing, the blue-eyed knight easily wounded the Angel of Flames. The Spear Maiden couldn't understand why her attacks never reached him, while his slow blade always landed. This was more than just reading her moves. Haiju felt like the city mayor was controlling her actions. Even so, she used elixir to fully heal, then activated the Fang of Prominence's hidden skill once every condition was met. When the dragon appeared, one blast caused a massive explosion, but the figure still standing behind the smoke shocked the Angel of Flames. To her surprise, the city's strongest unit had arrived. She had countless questions, but the young man ignored them and told her to retreat to the city. When she tried to argue, her master firmly insisted. Haiju was left uneasy when he said he'd stay behind as backup for Yule while she returned. So the Angel of Flames rushed back to City number 8. She noticed her friend and his overlord were both tense, and she also felt she'd only get in the way by staying with them, but she brushed it off as her imagination. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, the blue-eyed knight was surprised to see Yule wearing such a grim look after so long. After all, the 2 of them were brothers by blood. Even so, MC smiled for real and said he was relieved to see his brother healthy again. Then he said they didn't need to fight each other, but he was shocked that his brother already knew about his plan to return to their homeworld. That was exactly the kind of thing Yule would try. Still, the blue-eyed knight said he was doomed to fail, because to do that, the protagonist would first have to beat him, something he had never managed before. Suddenly, Jack sensed danger and shoved his master aside. To Yule's shock, his overlords started vanishing, and his brother attacked with an empty expression. The confused MC was run through by his own brother's blade. The blue-eyed knight wanted him dead for a while and promised that when he woke up, he'd finally be happy. Yule's blood now coated the sword, but he still tried to catch his brother from behind. The blue-eyed knight easily slipped past the punch and drove his blade into his ribs. The pain forced Yule to use his powers, and he fired powerful lightning bolts at City number 99's mare. The blast burned the body completely, but it wasn't the blue-eyed knight, just one of the allies he had teleported in as a shield. Then he stepped into a magic circle. It was an explosive trap, but he quickly erased it with magic dispel. The blue-eyed knight could predict every move his brother made. Then he said it had been a long time since they last played together. In simple terms, the real problem was cerebral hyperactivity. Neurologist Dr. Mingyu explained to their worried parents that in this condition the brain works faster than the body can keep up. The doctor confirmed both brothers had the same cerebral hyperactivity. The mother looked curious, but the younger one clearly had it worse than Yul. So the neurologist explained that the protagonist's body had found a way to live with his brain by handling several tasks at once, which reduced the strain from his brain's extreme speed. Young MC listened closely as the doctor said his brain was always decoding, predicting, and analyzing everything around him at once to keep itself from overheating, and that this was the best way for a hard-to-control boy like him to survive the condition. His brother, on the other hand, had a more fragile case because he barely seemed to notice what was around him. That alarmed both parents, and the doctor said the younger boy would need some kind of distraction to live with his unusual mental ability. Both parents immediately thought of the same thing. They knew Yen loved games. Back in the present game's final battle, the Greed Lord was tied up in front of the Golden Hand. Christiana finally understood why his enemy had abandoned someone as gifted as Yul, because he already had his brother, a similar unit who outclassed him in every way. The protagonist then told the Greed Lord to start their escape, but the Horned One laughed and said he had no power right now. That only made MC angrier. Christiana could use cheats so easily before, which made it seem like the Greed Lord planned to leave him behind. The entity answered with a long silence, and that set Yul off. The Greed Lord admitted he had considered sacrificing him, but decided to save him after all. Even so, Christiana insisted he was truly powerless now, then hinted that he might have won if he could still use his overlords, if not for the legendary card Dimensional Disruption, which cancelled all summons. The protagonist answered by creating clones despite that bad luck and charging his brother with a swarm of decoys. But Yen spotted the real one right away and blasted the original away, saying Yul would still lose to Yen even with summons. Even then, MC charged in with the clones again. Christiana then asked what he was planning with the plot in his hand. So the struggling book wielder said humans have a saying for moments like this. Just then the chains holding Christiana were about to run out. The instant the seal broke, he tried to use his cards, but the Golden Hand blocked him at once with cards of his own, refusing to let him escape. Christiana answered with a demonic grin because he wasn't trying to run. He was activating Armageddon, a card that would devastate both their cities. Yan looked on as meteors started falling. Huge explosions tore through the arena, killing people and leveling structures. In an instant, piece number 99's units were wiped out. The Golden Hand panicked and tried to react immediately. Christiana knew this move wouldn't truly injure his opponent, but when the rogue players arrived, the Greed Lord said his avatar likes extreme answers. The Golden Hand watched the crazed entity tear into the arena. This had been Yuol's plan all along. Not to win, but to drag Yan down with him. Then the protagonist teleported himself away, hoping the plan would work even if it couldn't hurt his brother. Meanwhile, player 99 quickly tried to calculate his next move. Christiana knew how careful the entity was and could already guess what the Golden Hand would do next. Then Yan called out to the entity, saying it had been shaken by their enemy's little suicide play. As he threw his sword, the unit said he was disappointed to be serving a coward like the Golden Hand. At that moment, Yan looked at the opposing player and realized he wasn't playing fair. That forced the Golden Hand to use the card Grand Escape, letting him retreat by giving up all mission rewards, which caught Yan's interest. With that, Yul Choi got out of the battle. He was glad his genius brother was only a unit, not a main player, but then Yan's thrown sword pierced him and slammed him to the ground. That blow pinned him hard. At the same time, Christiana used his cheat codes to call off the rogue players. With that, the Greed Lord claimed victory. Afterward, the badly hurt Yul lay suffering on the ground, leaving him no choice but to use the system's recovery function. That stopped him from bleeding to death. But MC still couldn't understand why his brother was in the game at all. Christiana asked if he could defeat Yan, so he simply asked the same thing back. Both answered with an uneasy silence, so they changed their strategy, knowing the road ahead had gotten much harder. After that, player number 8 activated emergency evacuation, which moved his citizens into a bunker safely, as long as he actually had one, and it had limited space. With the danger gone, the citizens slowly came back up. Yan counted the losses from that short fight and learned they had lost 30 units. Now he truly understood how terrifying his brother and Piece 99 were. Christiana chose to rebuild the city first, then rethink their next move. Before he left, he shocked the protagonist by reading his thoughts. MC was starting to understand how the unit thought, especially when Christiana guessed he wanted to make the city stronger. Christiana then said there was a way to do that without breaking the game's rules. Yang froze when the player reached out to the system. A new structure rose beside their city. The bookholder was stunned to see that happen during intermission, then noticed multiple maps appearing at the same time. The Greed Lord explained that every player gets one chance to take a special mission, the open-world mission called Abandoned World. Then Ober got smacked right in the head. After that, the military secured the area and moved in to gather the target plants called Sally Flowers, a strawberry-flavored ingredient used in recovery potions. That kicked off the harvest. Abandoned World was packed with treasure and resources, making it great for getting rich. But if they failed the mission, Abandoned World would become a prison for their city. There was another catch: any unit left outside the game piece when they departed would be trapped in Abandoned World forever. The old man grew uneasy as some citizens used the chance to run. The thief pointed out they were probably terrified after seeing their city's strongest force get crushed by Yule's brother, and the spear maiden stayed quiet. Meanwhile, at the police station, Dusuk was handling paperwork when something stood out to him. It had been 4 days since Game Piece 8 entered the abandoned world, and the book wielder, who had vanished from sight, kept posting strategy guides, making the inspector wonder where he was. At the same time, the Greed Lord silently watched Yule sketching out plans. Then he snapped. After running countless battle simulations, they still couldn't find even one possible win. He started to sink into despair, convinced his brother could not be beaten in a one-on-one. Seeing that, Christiana told him not to disappoint him. The protagonist pointed out they had time, since one turn in abandoned world lasts 100 years, and the Greed Lord confirmed it, even saying someone could in theory live there forever. Yule started thinking there were only 2 reasons a player would choose this open world. First, to farm resources and improve their assets like Player 17, and second, to give up. Any player who wants the fighting to stop without turning into a city eater can hide in this world until the game ends. After hearing the name Abandoned World, Yule paused for a moment, and to Christiana's surprise, admitted that plans meant nothing against his brother. In a fair match, he was simply unbeatable. That meant they needed an unfair edge. To get it, MC had to become more like a player than a unit. Christiana realized he wanted knowledge units were never meant to have. Even so, the player agreed to help his strongest unit, which caught Yule off guard. His quick approval surprised the protagonist even more, but the player was eager to see how far he'd go. MC got annoyed when he realized the player could still abandon them if they failed and save himself. Suddenly, space started twisting, startling the wandering hero as he and the Demon Lord arrived somewhere unknown. Christiana explained that the promise of returning a game piece to its original world wasn't completely false. Countless cities were spread out before them. As he showed the game's true form, the Greed Lord said the promised universe would already be part of the game. Any planet caught by it was fated to be absorbed. Realizing how hollow victory would be, Yule began wondering who created the game. At the same time, someone was looking for player number 8, and that someone was Yen. The unit learned that player 8 was actually a top-class monster, a demon lord like the ones he had killed. Standing in a pool of blood, he wondered how a monster could become a player. Then Yen understood that he might be able to force his way into playerhood too. The victorious Golden Hand took the cities of the players he defeated, leaving their ruined game pieces in his hands, and he chose to break them down to strengthen his own game piece. After that, the players celebrated their victory and tried to find city number 8, only to learn it had become untraceable, either hidden or under protection. Meanwhile, at the top of the tower, Yule decided to start a broadcast. Nervously, he introduced himself and thanked the citizens for all their hard work over the last 3 months. He praised how much they had improved their game piece and how it was still growing stronger. Then Yule revealed he had forced himself onto every unit's screen, meaning even the deserters had to hear him. He was about to reveal the truth about the game, the players, and his plan. Quietly sipping tea, the Greed Lord listened in silence. He admitted his plan was risky, even reckless, and said the safer choice would be to stay in the abandoned world. But once they heard everything, they would understand why he chose otherwise. Then he began telling the truth about the game. It might look like a blessing from heaven or a cruel curse meant to torment mortals, but that was only the Greed Lord's old view, and Yule wanted to know what the game really was. Christiana had explained that all intelligent life foolishly longs for something greater to worship. To him, a perfect being that needs nothing, does nothing, and has no reason to exist is a silly idea. In other words, the universe is like a jungle, where every creature seeks others so it can exist with them. The game is part of that jungle too, feeding on planets and stars. Even though it targets worlds with intelligent life, no one knows exactly what it consumes. It also uses the game itself to choose its prey, which fascinated the young man. Yul was especially confused by the idea that it hunted through a game. So the Greed Lord explained that intelligent beings adapt to games easily, because they find them fun. And games are the best way to push self-aware beings to their limits. Since everyone naturally wants to win, the protagonist pointed out that victory would still mean nothing if they all ended up as the game's meal. Once it finishes devouring a whole planet, the game just drifts through space looking for another one. Overwhelmed, Hiju tried to sum up what they had just learned, saying the game was basically a monster that eats planets and monsters. Yule agreed, though they still didn't know whether the game itself was alive. Then Jaeon burst in and said their planet was doomed to be torn into game maps no matter who won. MC confirmed it, adding that they would become the monsters attacking new units. The crowd broke into worried chatter, and Dusuk asked about the players a question. Player 8 answered himself. He said players were former units who grew so strong they threatened the game's balance. So the entity changed their roles and gave them more authority, turning those units into players. While the Spear Maiden struggled to follow, the thief handled it well and asked Yule about his plan. He took a deep breath, then shocked everyone by saying they would be the ones to hunt the Star Devourer. He wanted to use its power to restore their world and everyone it had consumed before. In short, his real goal was to kill the game itself. Yule saw the game as a hunter and said they only had 2 ways to survive: live alongside it or fight back. He chose resistance. He was far too angry at the Star Devourer for all the deaths it had caused to ever accept it. Now the choice was theirs too. They could fight beside him and try to kill the entity, or stay peacefully inside the game as part of it. That night, Yule's player's curiosity stirred, and the hero decided to ask him something. The protagonist wanted to know if the Greed Lord had once been a player, and he said yes. Christiana said he had lived as a player, a demon lord, and even a unit. But when he tried to rise beyond players, the game-worshipping Golden Hand defeated him. His power was sealed and he was forced back down to a demon lord. That made Yule curious about what Christiana really wanted. MC asked him not to drop any scary spoilers, and Christiana said he wouldn't know until he got his full power back. So the two were set to fight together until the end of the game, making the Greed Lord let out an evil laugh until he told him to cut it out. When morning came, the city was silent. At the tower, Yule headed inside and walked to the door. He checked on everyone when he entered the room. The soldier reported that preparations were going well. Temporary shelters were ready while homes were being rebuilt, and the units were getting stronger. Still, some unsure citizens were debating whether to run or fight after seeing the huge gap between them and City 99. Yule said everyone needed to focus on training first, because they weren't planning to beat City 99 in battle. They planned to finish the game before them. When Dusik asked what happened if they faced them again, the protagonist admitted he would have to rely on them, because he could never beat Yen himself. That made everyone think again about staying in the abandoned world. Meanwhile, as the former demon lord sat with his thoughts, Christiana found it strange. Christiana thought it was strange that he was more worried about a unit like Yen than his old enemy, the Golden Hand. That felt even more bizarre. Meanwhile, in Game Piece 99, the units were already prepared for battle. Then Yen realized everything that happened before came from a bug in the game. Some bugs could create situations even the game's makers never saw coming. Since the Greed Lord had found and used one of those errors, Yen pulled out carefully chosen items and paired them with the right skills at the perfect moment to tear a crack in the game's reality. That let Yen grab a glitch crystal. While player 99 was planning its next move, it suddenly froze in shock when its strongest unit appeared right behind it, taking in a player's point of view. As the young man's blue eyes turned purple, he said this sight wasn't new to him. The Golden Hand rushed to play a card, but it was too late. Yen struck in an instant and used the system error he created on the entity. After a brief pause, Yen broke into the player's secrets and learned the truth about smart units and players. Then, by driving his sword in deeper, he uncovered the truth behind the game itself. Yen noticed he had something in common with the Star Eater. It had chosen him because both of them wanted to survive, and no one else could hope to kill Yule. Then the genius suddenly went on alert. He jumped back, saw the Golden Hand shaking, and guessed this was the game's response. Right after that, space began to split apart, revealing player 99's true form. But the entity looked confused when it appeared without weapons. Yen then spotted a scarlet light in the sky and guessed the Star Eater wanted to watch who deserved the title of player most. Meanwhile, in the abandoned world, the old protagonist stood firm after 2 centuries had passed. Yule asked for it again, and the Greed Lord used his cheat codes, restoring MC's youth for the 4th time. He wasn't alone. The military returned to their prime too, while keeping 200 years of experience. The same thing happened to everyone in City Number 8. Krishna was curious why the units wanted to keep the city's old earthly shape, and Yule said it was symbolic. Still, the inside of the buildings had completely changed. Feeling weird without his beard, he pointed out that even after becoming young again, the game had kept moving, so 2 turns had passed since they got here. The protagonist wanted to stay in the abandoned world for 1 more turn, but the player called it a waste. MC insisted their extra time here would pay off. Silence hung over a square in the game until piece number 8 came out of the void. Back in the game, the Greed Lord had to roll the dice. Player 8 used several cards to gain more time and move much farther across the board. To Yule, moving little by little would only waste time and let Yen get even farther ahead. After 3 turns in the abandoned world, our heroes had to rush for the goal before Yen reached it. Their piece landed on Capture the Flag, where the mission was simply to steal the enemy city's flag. Game Piece 62 was randomly chosen to face City Number 8 in a 1-on-1 match. The level 271 mayor of City Number 62 bragged that the cannon tower blueprints had helped their city evolve fast, and mocked City Number 8 for still keeping its earthly form. With their giant cannon, he thought taking the flag would be pointless, so they fired at once, trying to destroy the enemy piece in a single shot, and a huge explosion followed. Dust filled the air. Then a laughing figure stepped out of it. City Number 8 had rebuilt itself with top-grade materials and 300 years of tech experience, creating a shield around the city. The enemy cannon couldn't break through. Then they deployed heroic gear, the K2 Peregrine Falcon, loaded with spells the 300-year-old city had learned to craft. City Number 8's weapons had improved a lot, since they could now make their own gear. And that wasn't the end of the flying beasts coming at him. They got lucky too. The abandoned world, which usually gives random maps, sent them somewhere they already knew. The nest of the Emperor Griffons, whose winged beasts had helped them on an earlier mission. The mayor started fearing for his life, and the next moment he was getting beaten down. Even after losing, he laughed and told our heroes they should have finished the mission faster. He warned they wouldn't easily escape their player's wrath. But right then, the entity controlling City Number 62 was taken down by a dark unit with demonic-looking eyes, leaving the mayor and his crew ashamed and humbled. Hiltroyd started thinking about how to sharpen his new powers, then looked to the Greed Lord, who already knew what to do. As Christiana finished absorbing the latest prey, the player held the special magic card, Second Wind, which let his piece skip intermission and roll again in exchange for only half the rewards. That added another defeated piece to the Greed Lord's collection. Second Wind was activated, and our heroes moved again. Meanwhile, in the city of White and Silence, the Golden Hand was using the system. This time, though, its owner had been corrupted, while his controller sat proudly on top of his head. After winning the fight, Yen rose to player status and turned the former player into his servant, even making a throne on his head. Then the young man looked to the far distance and saw a bright light ahead that marked the end of the cruel cosmic game. 5 turns had passed since the abandoned world, and our heroes kept winning again and again. Their advanced technology kept them on top through 13 turns, and by the 25th, city number 8 had gathered a huge collection of game pieces. They just kept playing and winning through countless dice rolls. Then the system praised city number 8 for becoming the first to reach the final part of the game. Yahello said his plan was working perfectly. The last square could only be reached by clearing the final mission, where they had to climb 3 floors, each one harder than the last, before taking on the mission waiting on the 3rd floor. So the Greed Lord chose to begin the end game, not just to win but to kill the game itself. Then the dice were rolled. There were 4 stairways to the 2nd floor, and our heroes realized that without the right number, they could waste turns going in circles, so all they could do was trust luck. But then Yule started scolding their player after he passed the target square, where city number 8 was supposed to destroy every corrupt pillar after beating its guardians. That brought out the strongest demon lord, the level 10 Tumbaba, demon lord of the ultimate fist, when someone suddenly appeared to face the 6-armed demon, catching him off guard. Tumbaba praised the unit's courage, but before he could enjoy the fight, the demon lord of the ultimate fist was sliced to pieces. His killer, the master swordsman, apologized for ending it fast. He was short on time. Tumbaba couldn't believe a pillar guardian had become this strong, but Jack, now a level 12 demigod of the blade who had reached the peak of his art and entered a divine domain, said that power came from 300 years of training. Yul pointed out that they couldn't use movement cards, so Krishna explained, the final mission gave off huge emotional energy. The Star Eater loved that, which was why it took its time. Then a new turn began and the Greed Lord rolled his dice. City number 8 kept moving across the final game board while Yul prayed for a 5. At last they reached the next floor. He was relieved to arrive at floor number 2, but then he noticed the player react to something. When he saw city number 99 arrive, the former demon lord said their real rival had shown up. The book wielder said their cheat codes had given them 4 more turns than the city of White and Silence. Then both of them felt a chill as a shadowy figure on a throne started to appear, and they realized the Golden Hand was no longer that city's player. Player 99 now belonged to Yen. The young man's glowing purple eyes told them he now had cheat codes too, and Krishna pointed out that this genius learned and mastered them in a short time, while it had taken him 1,000 years. Then a new turn began. The Greed Lord watched closely as the die was rolled and landed on a 6. To Yul's surprise, that made the protagonist ask Krishna if he had controlled the roll, but the player said it was just luck. Krishna also guessed the game itself was helping Yen, then came up with a plan. A being began rising from the cloudy void. It was a city eater, and it went straight for player 99. But then it was stopped by the controlled Golden Hand, who stabbed the creature. Yen used his pet to infect the bug, letting the new villain absorb the monster. Then the former player started growing legs, making the Golden Hand even stronger. Yul asked what kind of genius plan this was, but Krishna brushed it off, saying they now knew city eaters couldn't beat Yen. Just then, the young man got a notification as the system flooded him with messages, but he calmly reassured the monster and said he would definitely defeat his brother. After that, the last 2 cities made it into the final 4, setting up one final showdown between them. The Spear Maiden was stunned when the other city arrived at the exact same time, and Yul questioned whether his brother had played fair. The Greed Lord said cheating probably wasn't possible, since players weren't allowed to interfere. That left MC shocked. Then the system announced the last mission, War Without Borders. Both cities had to fight until their final unit fell, but every unit could choose which city's banner to fight under. Heidi Ju thought that was ridiculous. After everything they'd survived together, no one here would betray their city. The others agreed with the Spear Maiden, but then a system window suddenly opened in front of her. Jan had started a live broadcast. He called out to all the units allied with his brother and told them to surrender. According to Jan, this was the only mercy he was willing to offer, because the whole battle was just a waste of his time. He reminded them they couldn't beat him even when he was only a unit, and now he'd become a player. That was enough to make the uneasy crowd start arguing. Yul went on, saying anyone who wanted to keep the power given by the game should join him. Then he coldly added that their opinions didn't really matter. His brother's city would fall no matter what. After that, everyone got 1 hour to choose the banner they would fight for. Yul waited for the answer without a hint of emotion. Everyone paused to think, then made their choice. System alerts rang through the city, and within 2 minutes they all rejected Yul's offer. They chose to stay loyal and fight for their city, while some decided to remain behind and build a city of their own. Others chose a long sleep, leaving just one kind of people in the city. Soon the only ones left were warriors, all ready to fight to the end. Yan quietly read the situation. Then the final countdown began. The young player got ready for the battle ahead, and both cities gathered their forces. As the masked troops spread their wings, Haiju and her men prepared on their flying mounts. At the same time, both brothers started forward. The moment the final battle started, Yan and Yul crashed into each other. Their fight was brutal. Yan slipped past his brother's thrust, making him lose his weapon. Yul followed with a punch, but that missed too. Yan kept dodging every strike with ease. Then suddenly the protagonist was skewered by a glacier. The ice launched MC high into the air, where he noticed a blinding light behind him. A massive attack came down at him, and Yan watched as a huge explosion went off, waiting calmly to see what was left. But when the dust cleared, his brother was still standing. Yan noted that he seemed to have gained new powers, and he answered that he'd only shown the beginning. Wearing his new armor, Ragnarok, the protagonist said he still had plenty more to show. The system gave Yan no data on the armor, so player 99 guessed MC had forged it himself. As he rushed him, Yan figured there was only one reason his brother had made something like that. Yul's attack exploded with raw energy, and though Yan barely dodged, he realized Ragnarok was built to boost the protagonist's physical ability. MC was frustrated. He'd expected that first real punch to land. Yan told him more speed wouldn't help because he could already predict every attack, leaving him silent. Then the protagonist called him out and made it clear that wasn't his only trick, putting Yan on guard. Elsewhere, dark storm clouds started to gather as the umbrella of Unsa opened an epic staff that controlled storms and matched its power to its range. Dusik made the first move, while his partner charged his gauntlet ready to protect their home no matter what. Together they combined the gauntlet's power with the umbrella of Unsa and unleashed a giant tornado packed with thunder and storm energy. At the same time, Hiju was surrounded in the air, but the dragon avatar refused to back down. She flipped her mount and tore through the masked soldiers around her. Then Hiju sensed danger as 4 spearmen came at her from behind, so the Maiden of Flame struck back at once, cutting through every one of the winged attackers. 2 white masks were burned away in her path, but Hiju knew this fight wouldn't be easy. Her enemies carried the legendary Ice Spear of Dragon Slaying, a weapon made for dragon-slaying knights, and especially deadly against fire dragons. At the same time, the inspector held his ground while the enemy defended themselves from the thunderstorm with a special weapon, the Sword of Huanun. Desig praised their quick response, but his partner said they already knew this fight would be tough. He and Hiju were both set on crushing their enemies, even with special skills being shut down. Meanwhile, the brothers' fight kept raging. Yul tried to reason with Yan and begged for help destroying the game, but Yan said nothing. Instead, he quickly realized his brother was only stalling, and that someone else was the real key to the plan. Christina was stunned when player 99 suddenly appeared right in front of him, ready to kill him. Yul was furious. He had wanted to beat his brother himself, just this once. Yan was caught off guard when his rapier was suddenly blocked, and his brother's new power immediately grabbed his attention. Einarjar's tactical jacket had a special skill called Berserk, which drove its wearer into a wild rage that attacked friend and foe alike. As the outfit started to consume him, Yul realized his armor could strengthen Berserk. It didn't calm the madness, but it pushed his physical stats to the highest level the game allowed. Yan was left speechless by the beast-like form in front of him. MC tore off part of Yan's armor and shattered his rapier. Then he let out a savage roar and slammed into his brother, sending Yan crashing to the ground. The impact shook the city, and many soldiers thought it was an earthquake, but the lieutenant knew better. This was the start of the final clash. He reloaded his gun as the enemy closed in. Then a huge force of riders charged at them. Jan immediately called for an attack and sent over the enemy's position. Once the data came in, the Cardinal ordered ice ammo and a spell to tell allies from enemies apart. Ice magic missiles fired at once, tearing through the charging riders. Next, the lieutenant ordered Air Force 8 to begin their strike and get ready to drop thunderbombs. But enemy air units suddenly appeared. Winged spearmen rushed the flying beasts and their riders. The bombers were told to continue the main assault, while the rest of the Air Force engaged the flying masks. Men leaped from their mounts and a full battle broke out between the silent masks and the army of City Number 8. Jones summoned a warhammer and smashed into the enemy hard. Then the lieutenant threw a digging grenade made by his city, opening a huge pit and dropping masked soldiers into it. He knew City 8 was at a disadvantage, but he was still ready to use everything they had to push back the invaders. Then the ground shook under him as the white masks that survived climbed back out of the earth. Jen didn't care about the power gap, because their goal had never been to win outright. He and his troops kept fighting anyway. Meanwhile, back in the player's void, the crazed Yule kept launching devastating attacks. Yan, now covered in wounds, struggled to keep his brother back. He realized he was attacking with pure physical force alone, and tried to stab him, but the broken blade shattered completely on impact. Then the beast paused, noticing that a teleportation ticket had been used. Seeing a distant light, Yan pulled out one of his cards and said, Yule had pushed his physical power to its peak, but he was still bound by the rules of the game. The protagonist charged his brother again, triggering another huge explosion. The beast still overflowed with power, but this time Yule was left badly hurt and missing an arm. The damage came from Yan's card, Aegis Shield, which reflects physical damage back at the attacker. Still, the shield could be beaten by magic. Even with those injuries, MC's bloodlust didn't fade. He started reattaching his severed limb and growing a new helmet, then charged again. Jan would have called the attack insane if his brother could still understand him, but just as the beast rushed forward, Jan was startled by a voice from nowhere. A huge explosion swallowed both brothers. That magic puzzled player 99. It hadn't come from player 8, and none of Yuel's summons use that kind of magic. Elsewhere, after checking on her son, their mother told him she and his father were safe. She ended the call with him, but when she suggested they go meet their son, she saw her husband frozen in fear. Then insect-like creatures appeared and started feeding on people, as Yuel's parents tried to run. Right then, the protagonist's father received the ultimate dice. The two of them gained the Ankh of Resurrection, which greatly boosted their stats. It also let them cure any unit of any disease. At once, husband and wife came to the same idea. But with the citizens going on a rampage and killing, with people turning on each other and monsters pouring in, the trip was brutal for Yuel's parents. Still, the two of them reached the hospital, but they paid a price. MC's mother had been badly hurt. Her husband paused, ready to use the item to save her, but her faint smile gave him the answer, so he used the anklet on the one who truly needed it. Back in the present, the brothers kept fighting. Yan tore off Yuel's arm, then blasted away most of his upper body, but right when the player tried to cast a spell, he regenerated at once, bit through the staff and blew himself up, forcing Yan on the defensive. He then told his healing brother that beating this form was hard, but his followers were easy to kill. Yan shot back that they weren't pawns, they were human lives. Yan said it made no difference in the game and outside it, the weak become toys for the strong. So the smart choice is always to kneel to whoever has more power, even if that means living a small, meaningless life. Then the inspector called for a retreat and told the police to protect the citizens while holding the line. Dresic hurled one enemy away and warned the new recruit to keep himself in check. As a huge poison cloud spread, the user pulled it back into the orb, and Kim Chul held back so he wouldn't go against orders. Then the fallback began. Dresic said the two cities looked evenly matched, but the enemy was slowly taking control. That left him wondering how much longer they could last, and hoping their player would step in. At that moment, Krekshanen made his move. His goal was finally close, and this would be his last stand. The Greed Lord would either kill the Star Devourer or die trying. So player number 8 split himself into many cheat codes. Back to the brothers' fight. Yan grew uneasy when Yul revealed he never meant to conquer city number 99. Then the final move began. Game piece number 8 started to change as its outer shell cracked apart. In an instant, it became a giant cheat crystal meant to kill the game itself, just as Yul planned. Yun could hardly believe it. The whole enemy game piece had turned into a bug, and he realized the protagonist and the others were trying to reach the game's own files. But the player said they should have deleted him first before trying to erase the game. Then Yun slipped past his brother's sudden attack, leaving Yul stunned. After that, Yan dodged, parried, and countered every blow from the beast. He said he had finally learned his brother's attack patterns before using Soul Strike to wound MC's spirit, earning another bit of praise from him. But when Yul called forth the fallen cities, he said he'd expected nothing less from his brother. Then came his final move to decide which of them was the greater genius. Yan was disappointed that the protagonist chose such a simple human wave plan. But as MC pushed forward and restored the fallen cities to full size, he made it clear he was willing to trust a simple answer. Yan stood quietly before a wall of ruined cities and realized Yul was only trying to stall him long enough for Christina to corrupt the game. So Yan summoned his epic orb, Long Live the King, which lets him control beings below his level, with the number of servants depending on his own level. The orb activated at once. Yul knew it had two modes: automatic, where soldiers follow set orders, and manual, where the wielder controls them by direct will. Choi was pleased. He had finally pushed his brother to show his real power. The mob boss was excited to fight again, saying no human life should hang by strings, which earned him a strange look from the samurai. When he asked about it, the samurai said they were the same. Then the old man quietly thought back to when Choi asked them to join him, and how he first wanted to refuse because the game seemed like a paradise. But then the samurai looked at the children playing without a care, and drew his blade because he was set on giving his children free will, even if it cost him his life to free them from the game's control. A spear badly wounded one warrior, and the masked army started taking the upper hand. The mob boss yelled for everyone to hold fast, while the samurai was shocked that just 5 masks could drive them back. Every move was being watched and directed by Yin, who had begun manually controlling his units. The genius dodged his brother's wild charge, then drove a hand through Yul's body, and fired a spell through the wound. But the protagonist's spirit was guarded by a strong shield. Even so, MC was struggling to keep up. Yin thought about how familiar this plan felt, since Yul always falls back on it. Cut losses early, then bet everything on the endgame. Then the Spear Maiden noticed more game pieces entering the fight and ordered everyone to go on the attack, starting their counter-offensive. The lieutenant reached for his helmet to trigger a skill he could only use once per mission. It was Holy War, a skill that only works with a full set equipped. It gave every guild member holy gear and a huge stat boost. Yen watched the powerful skill take effect. Player number 99 had fully predicted how his brother would move his pieces, and when Yule was about to launch a strong attack, Yen countered first and burned the spell before it could be used. Still, the genius player felt something was off, like one piece was missing. Even though he knew his style, Yen sensed a slight change in it. He said the time still hadn't come, so they had to strike even harder. In the control room, the colonel ordered every unit to attack at full power, and called in all summoned and tamed monsters, plus every mechanized golem to draw as much of player 99's focus as possible. But Yen thought it was pointless because he could read every move the protagonist made and controlled his own forces far better than MC did. MC struggled to block the attacks even with his shield. Yen noticed his brother had deployed more units than he could truly command, so he assumed he was relying on luck, and that disappointed him. Meanwhile, the police kept doing all they could to hold the line, but player number 99 didn't care. He kept crushing his brother. Yule started thinking about how Yen had never pushed himself this far before, which meant player number 99 couldn't predict exactly what would happen at this point. But Yen would break past his limits and freeze for just a moment from that new feeling, and city number 8 could only win in that tiny gap. At the same time, Hiju blocked 2 mass specimens, and after a hard struggle beat them both, which alarmed Yen while Yule reminded himself that the real challenge was noticing that tiny opening. Earlier, everyone had opposed his reckless plan. They scolded the tactician for wanting to face and overwhelm a brother who beat him in every way, while the protagonist tried to explain that this was their only chance against him. But Yule was cut off when a soldier told him to focus only on his brother. The lieutenant said he and the others would overwhelm Yen, though MC warned that would just get them killed. The soldier answered that if they were all chasing a miracle, they had to choose the plan with the best odds. That same lieutenant was now giving everything he had on the battlefield. Yen tried to control the entire battlefield. He had to watch every single move his brother made while his allies created the opening he needed by swarming his brother. Then it happened. Yule instantly called forth his ultimate weapon, granting his body the power of Jack the Overlord. Then he unleashed the final move of the Celestial Fang Sword style, the devastating Heaven Destroyer. Yen was stunned that his brother had caught the exact instant he faltered. Yule said he never could have done this back on their homeworld, where he couldn't focus on one thing for long, but now he could finally work with others instead of using them. While Yen saw people only as pieces, the protagonist saw them as a chance to learn and become better, and with that, MC Choi finally defeated his brother. The player was confused that Yule had spared him, and smiling pointed out this was his one real chance to be himself. The protagonist explained that he never meant to kill his brother. He only needed to hold him down to reach his real goal. He also said they had a lot to talk about once the game was over. To turn someone into an overlord, one of 2 conditions had to be met. The target must either fear the book's user or share a deep bond with him. Then the book began absorbing the defeated Yan. Even though Yule couldn't predict his brother's actions, he knew one thing for sure. Yan truly cared about him and their parents. MC believed his brother wanted to use the game's power to build a utopia, but a world made by one man alone is no place for people to live. Yule was sure Yan would understand that someday. With that done, he could finally focus on killing the Star Devourer. He started walking toward the strange being, which was actually his second overlord, now larger than several game pieces put together. Then Yan's aura started to fade, freeing the original player 99. Yule told the serpent to guard their city. Then a bright red light rose from Haiju's side of the map, and the army's front too. The same thing happened on the police side. Once Yan was gone, the masked soldiers started turning back to normal. That red light was visible across the whole city. It kept moving straight for the gate. Jack asked if Yule knew what was beyond it, but he didn't. Krishna had never gone there. That made the protagonist think this might be the first time anyone had ever done this in the game. He jumped into the gate and was swallowed by total darkness. MC cast a light spell and found a horrifying zombie right in front of him. Luckily, some invisible barrier kept the creature from reaching him. Yule then answered Jack's question. These worlds were all part of the Star Devourer. Jack noted that the zombies looked human, and he agreed, though he could tell something was off. Then a huge blast hit the zombie side. The beings fighting them admitted they were the reason this endless horde existed. Those talking beasts regretted using humans to test their new drugs. Yule realized humans weren't the top species here, while Jack was distracted by how cute the creatures looked. That was when the protagonist understood the Star Devourer used these worlds to feed on emotional energy, then moved down to the next level. There, he found a world the monster had stopped feeding. Its inhabitants were frozen in time, waiting to be summoned later as mission monsters. Yule went deeper and found a heap of shattered, useless worlds, a graveyard. Jack warned they couldn't go any farther through the gate itself, so MC chose the only option left, break through the floor with his sword. A huge blast went off, and they burst out of the darkness into light with shards of dead worlds flying around them. Yule was stunned, because he and Jack had finally reached the place they were after. He arrived in a realm full of gates where Krishna was being held, so he started searching through them one by one. Even though the Star Devourer consumed worlds, it still preserved powerful units worthy of divine or demonic titles. Jack pointed out how hard it would be to find the Greed Lord, and Yule had no answer. Then he remembered the game had once mentioned anomalies, threats the system would likely seal away once it noticed them. Right then, his book flew off by itself, and Jack guessed it was leading the way. The book suddenly shot forward at incredible speed and slammed into a barrier. Yule was shocked when it cracked reality itself, while Jack worried the noise would expose them. Then the protagonist sensed something and barely dodged a storm of slashes. As he kept evading, more and more NPCs appeared to kill him. Yule had a bad feeling this wouldn't be easy. Jack warned those enemies were strong, but MC already knew that. Each NPC could copy his stats and traits. Still, he said that wouldn't be enough to beat him. The book kept smashing into the cracks while all the NPCs rushed him at once, ending in a huge flash of light. Yule knew time was against him. The game itself was trying to stop him. The Spear Maiden and the Thief were left in shock when the protagonist realized his home, now surrounded by other cities, was in danger. Across many cities, orders went out to destroy game piece number 8 for trying to break their beloved game. The blonde girl told the Dragon Champion that some people would choose to side with the game. The commander was stunned when his forces detected 42 enemy cities moving in with 5 million troops. City number 8 was being targeted by 10 city eaters and 15 players. To the inspector's surprise, his partner saw that attack as a good sign. The game was breaking its own rules just to crush them. Dasuk realized the game had no other choice, while Krasina got ready for his big return. Yule tore through the enemy line with ease, cutting down and kicking away every NPC in his path. Then the book opened a route and MC spotted it at once, before charging straight in. And with that, he entered the hidden space. The NPCs couldn't cross after him, leaving them broken and helpless. Meanwhile, the Spear Maiden warned the enemy that she'd attack if they came any closer, but the only answer she got was blades aimed at her face. She knocked the incoming weapons aside with ease and realized there was no point trying to reason with the game. The soldiers argued they should defend from inside the city instead of fighting every unit head-on, so the shield was raised, covering the entire city. The mob boss ordered an immediate retreat, but the Greek statues still charged at city number 8 to take Earth back. Jang and his battalion rushed forward to protect the retreat, and a new battle began. The lieutenant asked what the game said about them, and his enemy answered, they were people trying to destroy the game and reclaim their planet. As he sent out a barrage of sword strikes, the man called their city full of fools. The gods they once worshipped were powerless before today's players, let alone the game controlling them all. So he thought city number 8 trying to destroy it was completely absurd. A statue told the lieutenant to accept his role as a unit. He answered with a swing of his warhammer. He belonged to the human race, a race that hated being controlled and took its head clean off. A soldier then ran up and reported their first line had fallen, and more than a quarter had already evacuated. The lieutenant ordered everyone to hold the line. He knew Yule had no chance if their home was destroyed, so they had to protect it no matter what. Back on his side, after entering the breach, he was met by emptiness again before his sword suddenly started reacting in a strange way. Then a giant three-eyed face appeared behind Yule. He now stood before a being unlike anything he'd seen. This giant was the true form of the Greed Lord. Krasina felt relieved to see the unit arrive and told the stunned protagonist to break his chains. The former player explained that MC's sword was the key to freeing him, but Yule just stared back in silence, thinking it over. Before breaking the seal, he wanted to know the Greed Lord's past and his real goal. Krasina was caught off guard by that answer, so he made it clear afterward he'd destroy him along with the game. That enraged the Greed Lord, who insisted the protagonist could do nothing without him. Yule fired back that he'd only gotten here by doing the impossible, so the two were left facing each other. Meanwhile, on the Spear Maiden's side, Haiju unleashed a powerful attack while they tried to figure out how to face such overwhelming numbers. But that wasn't even the real problem, because the Golden Hand and Great Serpent couldn't handle every enemy alone. Then one player pulled out his cards and finally picked one. It was the legendary Durfrecht's magic bullet, an undodgeable shot aimed at the enemy's strongest pawn. But before he could use it, a giant sword appeared and sliced him in half. Then a hand tore through the void and grabbed the blade. The Greed Lord had arrived. The girl was confused, since their player was supposed to be helping Yule against the Star Eater. Now 3 powerful beings stood together against a sea of enemies. At that moment, Krishna remembered MC's question while the players got ready to strike. He thought about taking back what had been stolen from him and moved his sword in a flash. In the blink of an eye, every opposing player was dead. Krishna had come for one thing only, his freedom. Long ago, the Star Devourer destroyed Krishna's homeworld and turned him into who he was now. But even that had led to something. The game made him realize how many worlds it had already consumed, and that showed him what he truly wanted: to travel space freely and see the far edge of the universe. That was why the game imprisoned him when he tried to break free. Jack was shocked that Krishna didn't want to kill the Devourer alone, and Yule explained that revenge was never his goal. So the Greed Lord chose the plan with the best odds because Krishna knew the players and fallen players well. He focused on protecting the city. That left him to face an alien being with unknown powers, holding the key in his hand. He placed the final piece where it belonged. Jack said Yule was their best shot against a monster far beyond all of them, but the protagonist said he was giving him too much credit. Still, when the gate appeared, MC was ready to live up to everyone's hopes, so he started opening the gate. But the moment it opened, he was thrown back by a liquid he first thought was water. Then he understood and burst out laughing. leaving Jack confused as Yule struggled to explain. He could barely get the words out. As tears ran down his face, he realized the liquid was concentrated emotion. Then an angry face formed on it, and the protagonist understood the Star Devourer fed on emotion so dense it had turned into a physical liquid. And as he thought about what could consume something like that, a giant being crashed through the cheat gates. Its face was twisted with rage, and Yule realized this massive monster was the game's true form. Its body was covered in eyes. MC was horrified by its real shape. It looked like a whale, or maybe some strange tiny creature blown up huge. He quickly understood he couldn't read the beast as calm, hostile, or even truly alive, because staring at it felt like staring into the void. The void. Then a crushing wave hit Yule, and the emotion pool started taking over again. Jack told him to calm down, but that was easier said than done for him. He realized he had to move fast before he was swallowed by that sea of emotions. That's when Jack stared in shock, as the protagonist suddenly found an answer. He attacked the creature at once. Now in astral form, Yule explained that emotions begin in the brain, so he chose to separate from his brain and body to keep control of himself. After taking over his body, MC was amused by the Overlord's confused look, but then Jack revealed the attack had done no damage to the monster, and Yule felt like he was missing something important. A moment later, glowing points lit up across the Star Devourer. Before he could react, they struck both his soul and body. He was stunned to see the monster using magic and weapons at the same time. More spots started glowing, and the cosmic predator unleashed a storm of spells and blades at Yule's spirit and body, pounding them with attacks that seemed endless. Then a light appeared above the beast as the protagonist launched a full-force assault from above, only for every hit to pass right through it again. Yule couldn't believe it. Even attacks meant for Spectre-type foes failed, maybe because the target had no real presence. What shocked him even more was that the Greed Lord's power did nothing at all. Then MC noticed the monster aiming at them again, sending another rain of blades at our hero. He guessed the answer had to be something almost stupidly simple, so he assumed the beast existed on another plane because of that missing presence. In other words, Yule had to bring both of them into the same dimension. Right then, the Greed Lord's blade started to shake, and so did the other cheat codes, even the one supporting City Number 8. Haiju thought it was an earthquake as everything began to shake. Krishna grew alarmed. He had never seen the cheat key act this strangely. Back in Yule and Jack's fight, the two of them tried another strong attack, but it slipped through the Emotion Eater again. By now, the protagonist and Jack had nearly used every attack in the game to kill it, and none of it worked as the beast prepared another strike. Then Yule noticed his sword reacting to the beast's light. Before another storm of spells and weapons hit them, he told the old goblin he had a plan, while Jack struggled to hold the line. MC only lived through the wave because of his shield. The beast got ready to attack again, but Jack stepped in with Krishna's sword. The blade reacted the same strange way as before, confirming Yule's guess that the cheat key was responding to the game's light. Still, it was only a theory, so he decided to test it. He was left stunned when he suddenly found himself in a totally different place, then snapped back to reality, shaken by what he had just seen. Then a huge explosion went off, and the beast was finally hit, leaving a mark. Seeing that made Yule realize part of the monster had entered their dimension. The cheat key had landed a real blow, and that left Jack fired up, so the two of them pushed back. The protagonist knew they still didn't have enough bugs to kill the game, but he figured magic might hurt the monster's exposed parts. Then another vision struck him, and that caught his attention. Those visions only came when a piece of the cheat key touched the emotion parasite. That led Yule to think the cheat codes were actually fallen worlds trying to drag the beast into their own plane. He knew the cheat codes on his blades still weren't enough to kill the game. Then the monster opened its mouth and fired a massive energy blast unlike anything before. Luckily, Yule and his overlord dodged the disintegrating beam. With no other choice, MC pulled back. Jack asked for a plan, and they rushed toward the crack before quickly getting out, which alarmed all the NPCs. Then the game burst out after them and even swallowed some of the non-player characters. The beast tried to pull the units in. Yule thought about the fallen worlds behind the cheat codes, the same ones now lending him their strength. The truth was suddenly obvious. Those worlds had been waiting patiently for someone to reach the game's core so they could finally take revenge. Then countless cheat keys rained from the sky, all aimed at the cosmic whale, slowly dragging it into this dimension. That confirmed Jack's guess. They were now facing the true form of the Star Devourer. Yule then saw the cheat codes acting strangely and was shocked to find that he and Jack had returned to their original forms. Strength surged through his body. As his flesh returned, Jack agreed this new power was far beyond berserk. Then a bright blue light shone in the sky, and through the dust came Yule and Jack the Swordmaster. The protagonist reminded Jack that even if they could hurt the beast now, it still surpassed them. Jack agreed, then charged in, saying that made the fight even better. The cosmic whale answered with a storm of blades aimed at our hero, but the goblin swordsman dodged and parried them all before trying to strike the beast, only for his blades to bounce off the game. Jack was thrown back as if he had struck an immovable wall. Yule guessed the Emotion Eater would keep restoring itself as long as it stayed in the emotion pool, so he used one of his swords to hook the monster and try to drag it out. MC was set on pulling the beast away from its source of power. A moment later, the giant creature was launched through the ceiling. Yule told his overlord to keep driving it forward and cut it off from its source of energy. Just like that, the monster was yanked out of its own abyss. Meanwhile, as Krishna stabbed through an enemy's heart, the Greed Lord fought with everything he had to hold his ground. Then he saw the giant monster rising past the clouds. The game was being forced upward at high speed. Yul and Jack were doing everything they could to pull it away from the emotions. The Star Devourer couldn't endure it and let out its first roar, forcing every living thing in its domain to its knees, except the people of City Number 8, who were protected by the cheat crystals. But it still wasn't over, because it gave a second cry that drove every creature in the game mad. As that madness spread through Krishna and his troops, the lieutenant pointed out that even their allies had become enemies. Even so, the soldier chose to fight to the end. But just as he was about to attack his crazed allies, they all collapsed at once, leaving him stunned. Even the giant monster seemed confused by everyone suddenly passing out. Then Yul told the Star Devourer their plan was never just to kill him. He needed to steal that power for himself so he could restore their lost world. Since the cheat codes could bend the game's rules, he linked his blade to the beast to reach its status window. He revealed that he and City Number 8 had spent 300 years in the abandoned world, making a tool that could hack the game. For now, it could only affect units, but with enough power, it would eventually control players too. Then the whale charged straight at them, putting both on alert. Jack and Yul tried to stop the monster's huge body, and just as the protagonist thought he had reached the end of his road, a fierce blue blast slammed into the Star Devourer. MC looked around in confusion and saw the Spear Maiden and the lieutenant coming to help. Haiju told them to fall back, and Yul agreed before using the emergency escape code. He wanted to know how the two of them escaped the city, so Haiju explained that the Greed Lord had shared his power, which confused him, since Krishna was supposed to have already given away all his cheat crystals. Then the protagonist saw an enormous number of those crystals surrounding them. The Greed Lord had planned to save them for retreat if they lost, so they could live to fight another day. But in the end, he was still player number 8, so he chose to spend everything because this chance would never come again. Yul felt strangely glad that Krishna had been ready to follow them into disaster to the very end. As the cosmic whale roared, Haiju told MC to focus on draining its power while the rest of them fought it, and Jack was eager to see that plan in action. He thanked them. Now he would trust them for this final battle. The lieutenant raised his shield, covering himself in a strong barrier, only to be flung aside with ease by the beast. Then Jack and his student rushed the monster, unleashing a barrage of cuts and slashes, but they quickly saw that none of it could really hurt it. So they switched tactics and focused on keeping the beast away from Yul. Then the Star Devourer roared again, sending 4 City Eaters on the attack, but they were quickly cut down by Krishna's blade as he protected his best unit. At the same time, both the creator and the user of the tool realized the game couldn't be directly controlled. Their device could only work through the system. As gods and demons poured out, the colonel ordered the citizens to stay calm and bring the creatures down one by one to protect their home. So everyone charged forward to face the monsters. Krishna, along with the other two, fought hard against the attacking players, while Jack and Haiju kept the strongest creature busy, and the Greed Lord turned to his crystals as the cheat sword sank deeper into the monster. Yul was doing everything he could to end it, while City Number 8 burned in flames. The city was stained with fallen units. The sword was nearly out of cheat keys, and Yul finally saw the truth. He didn't have enough left. Krishna had already run out of cheat crystals, but everyone still kept attacking the monster. Then the very last cheat crystal was used up before the protagonist could finish the beast, and the Greed Lord figured his final gamble had failed. Even so, MC refused to give up. He decided to use the energy he stole from the beast to restore their world. Then, without warning, he found himself right in front of the cosmic monster, and was swallowed whole, to everyone's horror. Inside, Yul understood right away that the Star Devourer had eaten him, and that once his cheat energy ran dry, he'd be digested too. Facing death, he chose to strike from inside the monster one last time. That was when a voice from the book warned him this would be his most irrational choice yet. Then a hand came out of the book and pulled out several items. It explained that when items from different worlds crash together in the game with enough energy, they create an error. And if you study that clash, you can find the right formula. Then choose the exact item set, speed, and energy you need. That Yan revealed was the secret to making a cheat crystal. Yul was stunned. He guessed his brother had used those errors to free himself from the book, then asked if he was here to fight him. Yan answered with silence and simply set up the control panel for his brother. The protagonist couldn't make sense of it. Yan ignored the question and kept helping instead. Yan said that if they collided over half the items in existence, they could make enough small crystals, but Yul pointed out they couldn't gather that many. His brother calmly said he already had the answer. Since Yan had the starter dice, he could bend its algorithm to do it. The dice contained every item in the game. MC was left speechless. His brother had surpassed him in the game without even getting a starter pack. Yan, who had fully accepted the game, said the choice now belonged to the hero. That only made him even more confused about why Yan was helping all of a sudden. Yan said it was because he had lost to Yul. Elsewhere, Jack, Jong, and Hiju were left with broken weapons against the Star Eater. Yan didn't want to waste time in the game when he could still build his utopia. To him, the game had only been a faster path to that dream. He was just about to kill the policeman when the inspector moved to protect his partner and blocked the huge blade. then froze in shock. Both of them had suddenly been moved somewhere else. One thought it was a trap, but the other wasn't so sure. Then Dusik used his umbrella to rise into the air. What he saw left him speechless. They were back in their original world. Everyone was stunned as the status windows vanished and phones started working again. Relief spread through the group, though the lieutenant still wondered if this was all part of Yule's plan. Hiju then noticed that neither the protagonist nor Jack was anywhere in sight. As his plan started coming together, MC thanked Yan for the help. Now only one thing was left. Backed by his brother, his two overlords, and the Greed Lord, Yule would try to destroy the Star Devourer once and for all. Krishna warned everyone to stay sharp, and Jack reminded them that wounded beasts are the most dangerous. The monster then got ready to unleash a massive attack. Everyone braced themselves, but instead, the game itself turned to stone and cracked apart. Yule could hardly believe it. Two tiny Star Devourers appeared, the giant creature's children. The newborns started gathering energy, and everyone expected a deadly strike. But Yule soon realized the attack wasn't meant for him or his allies. A bright flash burst out, and just like that, all that remained was a giant, empty egg. Krishna was stunned when he realized the creature had spent all its power to send its children away. He quietly wondered where the stolen energy had gone. He guessed the Star Devourer died after using its last strength to save its offspring. Yan, though, thought the beast might have sent them away for revenge later, but the protagonist shook that off, saying it was only protecting its children. That made the young genius think of his own parents who gave their lives for him. To Yule, this had never been a story of good and evil. It was just the story of Earth surviving a natural predator. After that, the heroes agreed it was time to return home. Since every part of the game had gone back where it belonged, and after all the changes made inside the game, they needed to move fast to keep order from breaking down. Yule assured them he already had a plan. According to New Earth News, 2 years had passed since the deadly game ended, thanks to MC and the rest of SIG-8, who were now honored on the Wall of Heroes. The reporter added that SIG-8 had been renamed Asidil. One former member explained that the game had redrawn the borders of cities and nations around core cities, with Asidil becoming the most important one. The reporter also noted that some people hated the heroes for winning, and the man called them the outcasts of paradise, people who mistook the game for a utopia. They believed people could be reborn inside the game, but that rebirth was only code, not real life. Even so, some people didn't care, and the arguments were expected to continue for a long time. After that, the pair decided to check on the other SIG-8 heroes. Meanwhile, in the first felony division of the solar system, the man complained that the outcasts of paradise were getting more and more violent. Even though Kim Chol understood their pain, he knew violence wasn't the real answer. Turning into a dragon, he gave the order to move in. Then the police charged into the riot. The Black Bear of Storms, Iljun Suk's CEO, warned that anyone who refused to obey would be attacked. At the same time, in the tallest building in the city, the voice on the call told the chairman that 16 legendary pieces of equipment were being transported with the lady's approval. Hearing that, the chairman relaxed and wished him a safe return. After the call, he thought about how the lady was still at her peak, and he still couldn't believe she had refused his offer. No one could match what he proposed. He was Dusik Choi, the Golden Hand, chairman of the solar system's biggest corporation, Hamik. Elsewhere, KJU was shocked to hear that the lady had turned him down. Jia said she preferred working alone, and the worried spear maiden thanked her and her helpers anyway. The former thief comforted her friend, reminding her that she was the Divine Eye, Jia Kang, an elite item evaluator. Then the evaluator asked where she was. KJU turned out to be on Mars. Jia realized her friend was trying to help that person again, which KJU admitted she wanted to keep up with Jack and Yule. But KJU suddenly hung up and cut the call before Jia could finish. Elsewhere, two tribes were about to face each other. Earth wasn't the only world saved from the beast. Most trapped planets were restored to where they belonged, but some were too damaged and had to be merged with other worlds. The dwarf said the orc didn't deserve the mine, since they would only turn its ore into ugly weapons. The orc shot back that a weapon's only value was its power, so looks meant nothing. Then the avatar of the dragon stepped in. It was Haiju Go, the system's second son, also known as the Dragon Master of the Blue Flames. But when she tried to calm them down, she got a very strange reaction. The dwarf was enchanted by her spear, while the orc was taken by her strength and instantly fell for her. So she chose to run from her bizarre admirers. Meanwhile, in outer orbit above Earth, aboard a ship carrying the Sambi Ultra Unit, an outer space emergency force of the Intersolar System military, the White Comet, Chief Commander Jaelm told everyone to stay alert, while escorting elves to their new home beyond the solar system. Then the interdimensional warp began. At the same time on the moon, Yul stood with the Choi brothers and the Greed Lord. He asked if the entity was planning to leave. Krazina said that even though he loved this universe, he was chasing a greater purpose. He wanted to see what lay beyond the Star Eater and study the ecosystem of the universe itself. Yul still didn't understand why he had to go after helping free so many universes. But the entity simply said he wanted to explore the unknown. He even mentioned that there could be something out there that hunts the almighty game itself. As he returned to his true size, he begged him to stop saying creepy things. Krasina repeated that his hunger for knowledge was what drove him. The protagonist couldn't really argue with that. But one big problem remained. Jan had chosen to leave with the Greed Lord instead of staying. Then Jan asked whether MC thought he could stop him if he came after his land again. Jan told him that wasn't what he meant. Jan said family meant everything to him, and he had wasted his chance to bring their parents back. The protagonist answered that he had tried to revive everyone who died in the game, but he simply couldn't. Jan then said that was exactly why he was leaving, which only confused MC more. Jan explained that if there really was a creature stronger than the Star Devourer, he would use its power to bring back their father and mother. The girl was left stunned as he went on, while Yule tried to explain that their parents had already passed on. Jan said hope still remained. Before the game ended, he saved their parents' data inside that orb. Then he asked him to wait for him, promising he'd come back with their parents. He even challenged his brother to face him again someday, this time for control of the universe. After that, Jan stepped through the portal with the Greed Lord and vanished. That left Yule worried he might have unleashed something even worse than a celestial devourer on the galaxy. Jack pointed out that the protagonist would have plenty to deal with now, and he agreed. Still, he made it clear their plan hadn't changed. They still needed to get ready, improve their skills, share info and items, and grow stronger together. Our heroes will keep going. Even if something beyond the game is out there, they'll survive to face it. At the same time, all of this was being watched by beings even greater than the game itself. The system stated that the humanoid creatures had gathered enough material to make the seed. Then the crafting began, and before long, the seed of creation was complete. This seed could bring new life to a chosen galaxy, leaving the entity with a choice much like the gods once had.